All right, guys, listen, I'm going to be frank with you instead of Dan. Um, this looks interesting. Donald Trump's on the Joe Rogan podcast. I don't really know what it's going to be about, but I'm looking forward to it. So let's just kind of get this started. Oh, Joe Rogan, you're a handsome guy.
There we go. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about, I wanted to play this, but we decided
I saw a little bit, and it sounds like he asks him some fair questions, so that'll be cool.
we shouldn't play it because it could get copyright strike, and we don't want to get the episode. We don't want anybody to have any sort of way to get it down.
Sure.
But it was the episode of you when you were on The View, and I think it was 2015 or 2006, like when you were running for president.
Right.
And you got introduced as our friend Donald Trump.
That's right.
Whoopi Goldberg gives you a big hug and a kiss. Joy.
Ooh, are we going to talk about a little bit of the shift in the media had from liking him to not liking him anymore? That'll be interesting. But what just happened? Okay.
Behar gives you a big hug. Barbara Walters gives you a big hug. They all loved you. They were all talking about how you might be conservative in your financial positions, but you're very liberal socially. They were talking about you in such a favorable light. The audience was cheering. And then you actually started winning in the polls, and then the machine started working towards you.
Yeah.
But there's probably no one in history that I've ever seen that's been attacked the way you've been attacked and the way they've done it, so coordinated. And so,
I mean, listen, dude, Donald Trump is unironically the worst president like we've ever had from an American perspective. We don't even have to talk about policy. January 6th was a mess, okay? It just was, and if he had called them together and he did his little speech and everybody attacked the Capitol, but he said, hey guys, we need to stop and called in the National Guard, I would have said it was an honest mistake. But we've had 8 years at this point of Trump just systematically speaking in like a non-dignified way with terrible everything. I mean, he said he was going to fix the Obamacare, couldn't do that. Said he was going to do a deal with the border, he couldn't do that even though he had a stacked, Senate and House. Then he denied a border wall bill at the end of his presidency so he could try to run on the border again. He didn't. His economic policy was, hey, I had a really good economy from Obama, and then he did a bunch of tax cuts that weren't sustainable. Like, he really is not a very good president, and he doesn't speak with any level of dignity, and that is a problem. You're the most powerful man in the world. The way that you speak does matter. When it comes to everybody speaks differently, so if I was on the presidential stage the way that I speak on my stream, obviously people are going to be upset about it because of the way that I speak, but I'm not the president of the United States. And I think it's very telling when I see so many conservatives that are like, oh, so you don't like Trump, but you guys will honor George Floyd. It's like we're talking about somebody killed by a police officer versus the literal president of the United States, the most powerful man in the world. So it's just so bizarre. I will say, I guess I kind of can feel bad for Trump. Towards the beginning, it seemed like he was just speaking ignorantly and he wasn't necessarily malicious. And it was probably a lot for him to go from getting really positive media attention, even if it was just tabloids, to getting very negative attention. But I mean, he has to blame himself for part of that, and that lack of ability to take accountability. I mean, that's problematic, no?
systematically, when you see those same people in the past, very favorable to you, like Oprah, when you were on Oprah's show,
very.
choosing.
I mean, sure, but then you look at the fact that he's shifted his positions on policies, like abortion. He's just decided to be basically anti-abortion now, just to win as a president. So. And I understand he's just well, I just want to kick it back to the states and they can do whatever they want. But he's pushing, he's running on anti-abortion legislation because he doesn't care. I don't think he really cares about most of the positions that he takes. If he could have run as a Democrat, I genuinely believe he would have.
Encouraging you.
Last week I did one of her last shows. I think maybe Thursday or Friday. That was a big deal being on Oprah's show, the last one. And I was one of the last shows in that final week.
Yeah, the whole good guys on both sides when it came to the rioting of the Nazi protesters or whatever. Yeah, I mean, I think that some people interpreted that as oh, some of the protesters weren't bad people, but some people interpret that as a dog whistle saying that maybe anti-Semitic pieces of shit aren't so bad. So.
And I said, boy, we've come a long way since that.
What was it like?
Well, the concept, it was really like two different lives. I had a very wonderful life, but I wanted to do this. The Apprentice was still going very strong. We had 12 seasons, and we had actually 14 seasons, 12 years over. We had a couple of them.
They canceled The Apprentice when you were running for president, correct?
No, they had Arnold Schwarzenegger do it. I was involved in that, and I had enough of it, and we did great. It was doing great, but they wanted me to stay. They all came to see me. They said, we're going to give you a contract. They wanted to extend my contract. Mark Burnett is a great guy. Then they wanted to extend the contract. Mark said, you're crazy. Don't run. No. Nobody gives up prime time, they said. It's one of those little things, which is probably true.
Nobody gives up prime time, though, for being president?
For running against 20 some odd people, turned out to be 18 professional people, mostly politicians. They said, who would do this? I mean, it's a long shot. Actually, the heads of NBC came over, the Paul Telegny, all the top people came over to see me, try and talk me out of it because they wanted to have me extend. The Apprentice was doing well. So it was 14 seasons. It was 12 years. We had 2 seasons where we had a double, which rarely happens. It was just a hot show. And I said, I want to do this. What happened is previously, like 4 years before that, they did a poll. They had Mitt Romney, and somehow they put me in a poll, and I blew everybody away. I blew him away, which isn't that hard, frankly. But I blew everybody away, and I said, that's interesting because I never really gave it that much real thought. I thought about it, but never real thought. But I saw these polls were very good. And so I was thinking about doing it then, but I had a contract with The Apprentice. Plus, I was building 2 big buildings at the time, and I wanted to make sure they got finished up properly. And it was one of those things. The kids were just sort of getting involved. They're very capable kids, but they were getting involved early on. So I did that. I got them done. I had some very good successes. And I came on, and then I thought about it for the next one after the Romney disaster. And I ran and I won against Hillary. And it was quite an experience. But it was a different life because you're right, The View. I was on The View many, many times. And they loved me.
Just the way people would talk. I mean, even if people had criticisms about you, people that didn't like you, there was always feuds and stuff like that. But the reality was the thing turned.
I mean, yeah, when he was just like an internet media individual, it wasn't, he wasn't trying to represent the country. You're going to be treated differently. Donald Trump, who was part of The Apprentice, is going to be treated differently than Donald Trump, who's trying to be the most powerful man in the world. The only thing I don't like is this whole idea that there's some kind of like manipulative conspiracy machine out to get Trump, which is not true. Obviously, people are going to be much more aggressive onto you, which they're going to be much more aggressive onto you once you're running for president and you're saying things that are not exactly done in the most cordial way. But as if there's just some kind of manipulative media machine that's trying to take down Trump. I mean, it's a constant conspiracy theory when it comes to the media or stolen elections or A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z. It's just like it's obnoxious.
Turned on you when they found out that you were going to be president. It was very coordinated, and some people are catching on to that now.
What was coordinated about it? It's interesting that we live in a world where people can't just go like, oh, maybe people just don't like Trump. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's an asshole. Like, what if there was that?
There's a lot of people that were longtime Democrats, like Elon and Bill Ackman, and all these different, very intelligent people.
And they support me now. Bill Ackman supports me. He's been very supportive too.
This is what I wanted to ask you. What was it like when you actually got in? Because nobody really can prepare you for that. When you're running for president, you don't really know.
I mean, is it coordinated when, like, how many of the people like in his cabinet disavow him now? Like, overwhelming majority of the people that have like worked with him do not like him at all. He's not even running with Mike Pence. I mean, is that all a coordinated media attack too? It's interesting how everybody around Trump hates him, but somehow it's a conspiracy. But it's Democrats, it's Republicans, it's everybody, and it's insane. Especially considering the fact that like he can just apparently destroy Republicans' careers, just by basically calling them rhinos with absolutely no evidence, really. I mean, like the fact that any Republicans would speak out against him is actually fucking. I mean, it's very telling that clearly he's not a particularly good guy. So,
what it's going to be like when you actually get in.
I mean, he had the ability to stop the border bill. That's the border bill when he was running for president, or excuse me, at the end of his term, because he could destroy the careers of those Republicans who were absolutely on board with supporting that bill before he forced them to stop supporting it. Like, that's how much power he has in the party, and yet there are still people, conservatives, like, wow, I really hate this guy.
Into office. What did you think it was going to be like?
In office, or when I decided to run?
So when you got in.
When I was in. So when I was in and won and was in the White House, essentially. Yes. Well, first of all, it was very surreal. It's very interesting. When I got shot, it wasn't surreal. That should have been surreal. When I was laying on the ground, I knew exactly what was going on. I knew exactly where I was hit. They were saying you were hit all over the place because there was so much blood from the ear. You would know that better than anyone. When they get the ear torn up,
ears bleed a lot.
They bleed. Anyway, so and I was thinking the other day. When that happened, I really knew where I was. I knew exactly what happened. I said I wasn't hit anywhere else. With the presidency, it was a very surreal experience, okay?
Like, what's day one like? You win, you get inaugurated, holy shit, I'm the president.
Yeah, that's what happened. So I'm driving down Pennsylvania Avenue. I just built a building on Pennsylvania, the hotel, the old post office it was. We called it Trump National Hotel. And we sold it to the Waldorf Astoria. And it was a wonderful thing. But I'm driving down, I'm passing the hotel. You've never seen so many motorcycles, police, military. It was a major thing. I got off really the first time I used Air Force One. Landed. and we're coming down, and it was very beautiful. I mean, it was incredible. And we're going down Pennsylvania Avenue in the opposite direction. You know, normally you're used to going one way, and all of a sudden you're going the other way. The street was loaded up, and I wanted to go out, and I wanted to wave to everybody, but that wasn't smart. You know, that gets a little bit dangerous, right? I mean, when you watch like Kennedy and some others, right? But I really felt, I don't know, the love was so crazy. And so I did get out of the car for a brief, you know, just for a very short walk. I thought it was very important to do. And Melania got out with a beautiful dress on that became sort of a staple. It was, people loved it. And Barron, and we're walking down the street. But where it really got amazing, we get to the White House, and now it's a little bit before dark, beautiful. And we went up to the president's quarters. They call them the presidential quarters. And I'm standing in this beautiful hallway. You know, it's funny, nobody ever talks about the White House as being beautiful inside. You know, you think it's going to be, everything's going to be all metal doors and stuff. It's not. It's so beautiful. I made my money.
I mean, don't we have a bunch of videos of the inside of the White House?
Largely on luxury. The hallway is like 25 feet wide. The ceiling heights are, you know, it's so beautiful. But I was standing there, and I said to the guys, I want to see the Lincoln bedroom. I had never seen the Lincoln bedroom. I'd heard about the Lincoln bedroom. And I was standing with my wife. I said, do you believe it? This is the Lincoln bedroom. I mean, it was like, it was amazing. Because it's, look, if you love the country, but here you're, the Lincoln bedroom.
He's just fucking yapping, bro. Like, that's cool. Like, it was a beautiful experience. Oh my God.
And the bed, you know, it was very tall. He was 6'6", which then would be like Barron.
Right.
Would be like Barron Trump. He's 6'9". But
is he 6'9"? I don't believe that, but I'm pretty sure he's very tall. How tall is Barron?
6'6". He was very tall. Then on top of that,
There it is.
He wore that. Yeah, there it is. It's a long bed, elongated bed, and because people were shorter than you.
Dude, he's a 6'9". How the fuck is this kid 6'9"? God bless him. How tall is Donald Trump? Hey, I'm curious.
See, some of the chairs are very, very low to the ground, actually, but he had the long bed. And they had, you had the Gettysburg Address right on that, right under that. You can't see it here, but right there, the original version of the Gettysburg Address. And this is the original, and I'm looking.
I did. Oh, apparently he's 6 foot. Oh, wait, I can't get a list of how tall. Oh, 6'2". Apparently he's 6'2". Okay.
And I just looked around. I said, do you believe this? Because I was never a politician. First of all, even if you were a politician, but I was never a politician. I sort of just started, right?
Right.
And all of a sudden I'm standing in the White House. And it was very, very surreal. That room was so beautiful to me, much more beautiful than it actually is. You know, to me, when I looked at the bed, and the bed you could see it was a little bit longer, had to be a little bit longer. He lost his son, and they suffered, the two of them suffered from melancholia. They didn't call it depression.
Yeah.
They called it melancholia. And they suffered from it. He was a very depressed guy, and she was a very depressed woman, more so than him. And on top of that, they lost their son, whose name was Ted. And it was just seeing it in the little pictures, a little tiny picture. I mean, you can't see the details there. Little tiny, everything the way it was, a little tiny picture of Ted, who he lost. And it was devastating. And he was, he was... look, he was in a war. He was having a hard time because he couldn't beat Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee won like 13 battles in a row, and he was getting like a phobia, like a fighter. You know, not about the fight stuff, but like I went to a UFC fight, and it was a champion who was 14-1 about a year ago. You would know the names, 14-1, and the only guy he lost to was this one guy, but the guy that he was fighting was like almost just an average fighter. He lost numerous times, but he beat this one guy. So I said, okay.
I really don't know who you're talking about.
I will figure it out.
Okay.
But about a year ago. But the point is that he lost. He wasn't nearly the fighter as the one. But the one who was not nearly the fighter had beaten. He's the only guy that beat the champ like 5 years before. Okay. And I said, I'll take the guy that won the other fight.
Wow.
And that's what happened. He beat him a second time.
Sometimes
Lincoln,
psychological advantage.
Yeah, what is this crazy thing? Lincoln had I don't know, I've never read this. I heard it from people.
I'm pretty sure this question started with like, hey, like what was the experience becoming president, going into the White House? And what the fuck is happening right now? He's like legitimately just yapping.
On the White House, who really understand what was going on with the whole life of the White House. But Lincoln had the yips about, in a way, as the golfers would say. He had a phobia about Robert E. Lee. He said, I can't beat.
He's like legitimately rambling. You know, when it was him versus Joe Biden, I think it was like obviously he's more capable than Biden, right? Like we all know that. Like obviously that's a fact. But when he's just by himself, dude, he cannot stop talking. Like it's actual fucking insane. Like holy shit. Oh, I'm gonna get it. Shut the hell up.
beat Robert because Robert E. Lee won many battles in a row. He was just beating the hell out of him. You know, they tried to get Robert E. Lee to be on the North, but he said, no, I have to be with my
Dude, I'm questioning if this guy's mentally capable of being a fucking president.
state. You know, the state was his whole thing, and he went to the South. And he was, I've had generals tell me, we have some great generals, the real generals, not the ones you see on television, the ones that beat ISIS with me. We defeated ISIS in record time. It was supposed to take years, and we did it in a matter of weeks.
Wow.
These are great generals. These are tough guys. These are not woke guys. But their favorite general, in terms of genius, was Robert E. Lee.
In terms of strategy, you mean?
Strategy, strategically. He took a war that should have been over in a few days, and it was, you know, years of hell, of vicious war. And so here I am standing there, and again, I had never really done this before. You know, I ran a number of months before I won. I probably, I guess if you figured max it out, it would be a
Oh, Jesus Christ.
year, something like that. So I had never run for office. And I did well. I mean, I went into debates. We had 18 people, including me, and then slowly but surely they started to disappear. We had debates.
Yeah, and I think that part of the thing that turned people off too is like Donald Trump, as entertaining as he might be, it was a lot of him just making fun of his opponents. And again, like that's something that's also going to. Not everybody likes the shit throwing for the president of the United States.
Debates, good debates.
Everyone's aware of all this stuff. But what I want to get to is like, what was the experience once you got inside?
I didn't even answer the question. Oh
What
my
did you
God.
think it was going to be like in terms of like your ability to govern?
Yeah.
Like this is your first experience governing anything. You never been a
Yeah. It was
governor.
always
You never been a
private.
mayor.
Yeah, private stuff.
Business.
Yeah.
But now all of a sudden
Well,
you're inside the White House.
The biggest thing was just that first moment of being in this hallowed. It was really a hallowed place to
Right.
me. It was
Surreal.
It was beyond. To me, that was the experience. It was a surreal experience. And then with time, that wears off. With time, it becomes your place where you stay. And
Right.
I was doing a lot of. I had two things that I really focused on: governing the country and survival. Because from the moment I won, before I got to office, all of a sudden, they came down. I mean, nobody has ever been treated that way. And you see that. I mean, you see where in the Washington Post very early on, they said,
Well, first of all, everybody gets treated very aggressively, especially by the opposing media. But second of all, dude, like the way that Donald Trump acted, even in the beginning, when I thought like, I'll say that like when I think that a lot of it was just him adjusting to the attitude, right? Donald Trump is an obnoxious New Yorker, but he's not very cordial, and that's difficult. You're going to get scrutinized for every little thing that you say and do, and he spoke with no level of decorum, so people shit on him for that. Like, okay. Sorry, then this was going to happen.
well, now the impeachment stuff starts. And it did. I mean, it literally started from the beginning. So I had survival and run.
Well, yeah, because Russia helped you become president. So there's a huge lawsuit. Russian, like how many indictments came out of that lawsuit by itself? Like people around him. I mean, obviously, there's massive misinformation campaigns. I'm not saying Trump engaged in the misinformation campaigns, but clearly Russia wanted him to win.
the nation. I had a combination. Most people don't have the survival they get in.
What did you expect though in terms of like once you got inside, you had to appoint all these people?
Yeah.
Like, how many appointments did you have to make?
Well,
in
you
a
have
very
actually
short
you have
amount of
actually
time?
10,000 appointments. Now they're different. You have big ones, and then they appoint
Right.
100 people and 200 people. But the president really is involved with approximately 10,000 appointments. So you'll appoint a secretary of state, and he or she
Right.
will appoint a lot of people. So it's a lot. But in terms of major ones, you probably have like 100. But they're big ones: Treasury, state, military.
And how did you know?
Oh yeah, I've totally. Like, it's almost like I forgot about that. Like one of the biggest things he was running on was that Barack Obama wasn't American, and he was like constantly questioning Barack Obama's birth certificate. He's sitting here acting like the media is coming after him. That's fucking racist. I don't know how I forgot about that. Yeah, people were. That's why people didn't like him, because he was sitting here pushing insane conspiracy theories from the start. This guy was always like this. Talk about how fucking Obama wasn't a real like American and shit. You give $2 from Mason. You forgot to say it, but I know you wanted to say poop.
Who to appoint?
Well, I didn't. I had no
You didn't.
experience. You have
Right.
to understand. Joe.
So
I
are
was
you
there
going-
17 times in Washington, and I never stayed over. According to the press, which I think is probably right. Over the years, I was only there 17 times. I never stayed over. So now I'm sitting there. I'm saying, this place is gorgeous, but I don't know anybody. It's like you go to certain areas, and other areas they may be great. Washington was great. Washington's not so great right now. We got to fix it. We got to make it better. A very dangerous place, very badly maintained place. We're going to make it great. We're going to make it better. We're going to bring it back. But
I mean, how does Trump do any of that? He didn't do anything during his presidency. So
I wasn't a Washington guy. I was a New York guy. I was a New York builder, and I built buildings in New York, and I knew that whole world, but I didn't know the Washington world too well. And all of a sudden, you're supposed to be appointing top people. So,
What did you think it was going to be like? Versus like, did you have any ideas of what it was going to be like, and what was different?
well, I was always involved in politics, but usually from the standpoint of a donor. I was
Right.
a donor. I was a big donor. I gave money to politicians. I enjoyed
Mostly
politics.
Democrats, right?
Both, really, pretty much both. I have actually pictures of Ronald Reagan and
that's probably mostly Democrats. But he feels like he has to say it was both.
me when I was very
But you
young.
were a Democrat until like what year?
I was a Democrat I could get you the exact, but the early 90s, I switched over eventually. Actually, they had a reform party. I was thinking about doing that for a little while, but then fortunately I didn't because it's very hard. You know, it's a two-party system. And anytime you hear third party, I know you like RFK Jr. and so do I. He's a fantastic guy.
I do, but I thought that
whole
being
thing
in
is
I guess it was in the 2010. Oh, he changed to no party affiliation in 2011. When did he say?
They had a reform party. I was thinking about doing that for early 90s.
Early 90s. I'm like, it literally says that he changed from a Democrat to in August 2001. Trump changed his third party affiliation to Democrat. In September 2009, he changed his back to Republican. So he's been flopping. He's been flip flopping the entire time. So he was Republican, then Democrat from 2001 to 2009. Then it went back to Republican. Then he went to no party affiliation in 2011. And he returned to the Republican Party in 2012. This guy's like a flip-flopping all over.
90s. I switched over eventually. Actually, they had a reform party. I was thinking about doing that for a little while, but then fortunately I didn't because it's very hard. You know, it's a two-party system. And anytime you hear third party, I know you like RFK Jr. and so do I. He's a fantastic guy.
I do, but I thought that
whole
being
thing
an
is very
independent
tough.
was nonsense.
It doesn't work.
Well, you really can't. I mean, that is one thing that could be changed. I wonder if somebody could change it. I wonder, a third party would be great. It would add more competition and give people the ability to actually do a little bit, like vote in I think, a more meaningful way. If we force like 3 to 5 parties, maybe even a ranked choice voting system.
It doesn't work because even if you do great, you're not going to get Congress. In other words, you need now to say, okay, now I'll get half of Congress. They're never going to vote for you. So even if you got there, which is very hard, and I know how you feel about Bobby, and I feel the same way, and he's now with us. But it doesn't. It's pure and simple. It's a two-party system.
Right.
And somebody, I won't mention his name, but somebody spent $250 million trying to get the nomination as a Reform Party candidate or whatever, and they got just nowhere. You get eaten. You just get eaten. The system eats you alive.
Right.
So.
What a weird thing to say. Y'all can hate Trump, but he's winning. I'd hate to be on the losing team. That's just a weird thing to say. Hopefully he doesn't win because he's anti-American, tried to overthrow the government. But like, why say something like that? Just because somebody's winning or losing, why is that something that's going to make you feel like that person is better? Like, I don't understand. He's anti-American.
It was really somebody that...
God bless Mike Pence, though.
Not only was new to Washington, but was new to politics. So in the office of the presidency, over the years, all those presidents, you've had 92% were politicians and 8% were generals. General Eisenhower, General Washington, right? General George Washington. You had generals. So it's 8%, no admirals, 8% generals and 92% politicians. You know, they're politicians and they go on. So they never had a business guy or they never had a guy that wasn't elected to an office. They were all like Ronald Reagan he was a movie actor, and but he became the governor of California for, I think, 2 terms, and then he ran. So you never had a thing like this. But in terms of me, and sometimes I'd use it as an excuse, and I don't like having excuses actually, but I'd use it as an excuse. I had to rely on people that I respected or liked, but that I didn't know that well because I didn't know them that well. Some of those people I campaigned against because, when you have 18 people, we had mostly politicians running in the election, running in the primaries, and they got knocked out one by one, but I got to like some of them. Some of them I didn't like at all, and I don't like them now. And I'd rely on them, and I'd rely on other people. So all of a sudden, people would come in, I'd like to recommend so-and-so to be Secretary of State, and I'd have 3, 4 people recommend. One thing I can tell you, everybody wants the position.
Of course.
No, but sometimes I'll hear a lot of people don't want to work with Trump because Trump is tough to work with, et cetera.
Yeah, because he's bad. I mean, Trump is an idiot. That's why they don't want to work with him. That's why people that he chose are leaving his side. Like Mike Pence decided to leave his side. Like everybody tried to overthrow the government, dude. Of course, he's not just difficult to work with. He's a fucking moron.
Let me tell you, everybody wants to be any one of these positions. They die for it.
Of course.
Now, they don't want to be known. I mean, there's a particular guy in New York, primarily, very big, very successful, very strong, very political, although he's not a politician. He'd give anything to be Secretary of State, but if they ask him, no, I don't think I would do it. But in the meantime, begging for it, okay, begging. I believe you. Everybody wants it.
But by the way,
no matter what you do, but it's very dangerous to pick somebody outside of a politician because a politician's been basically vetted for years.
Right.
You pick a business guy, and they've never been vetted at all, and they're the head of a big company or something, but they've never been vetted. You know nothing about his personal life. You know nothing about where he's been. When you put him in, it's a little bit dangerous because all of a sudden they get checked up, and you hear things that you say, wow, this is not going to work out too well. So it's very dangerous. Picking people that are outside of politics is somewhat dangerous.
So you're kind of stuck in a position where you have to pick established people. And then the problem with established people is established people are already indoctrinated into the system.
And they're stiff.
Bro, he picked people that weren't establishment people, and they still turned on him. What are you talking about?
In many cases, they're survivors.
Like everybody's turning against him. What the fuck is he talking about? This is one of the things that bothers me a lot. Because one thing I hate a lot, is victim complexes. Like they bother the shit out of me. I hate people with a victim complex. And when Trump first became president, one of we had a lot of people who had a victim complex go. We had a lot of people on the left that had a victim complex and were like sitting here crying and like doing all this just like cringe shit because Trump won, you know. And when Trump first won, I was like, okay, whatever. But like, and I hated that, and it was so obnoxious. So I didn't really like Trump. I never voted for him. But like, you know, I was like, I get it. I understand why he won. He won because, I mean, realistically, I think one of the biggest reasons that he won, was because jobs were going away, or not going away, but there were conversations about like coal mining jobs, and they were asked like, "Hey, what can you do about it?" And Hillary's like, "They're kind of just disappearing." And Trump was like, "No, I can do something about it." And you know, he did, even if his tax cuts were bad because they long term were not sustainable. He still did something about it, and there was something to respect about that. Right? So I get that, but now everything's a victim complex. He loses an election. Oh, everything is like a fucking conspiracy theory. He's sitting here. We're talking about how like everybody was always so mean to him. It's like, Jesus Christ, like, grow the fuck up. It's fucking obnoxious. It just pisses me off.
I find that, you know,
What do you mean by stiffs? When you say stiffs?
a stiff, they don't have nothing. They have nothing. Or
Like people
They're
just
smart
don't like
and
him
survival.
because he's not a good president. He didn't really do anything. He wasn't good for the country. Like that's why people don't like him. He's terrible.
one little thing. So there was a congressman years before I ran, and I was very close to him. And I needed a license on something, and he was very important in getting the license. But it was a little bit controversial, the license, this particular thing that was being licensed. But I was close to this guy and helped him and everything else. And I went to him, I said, I'd like to have your help. And he said, let me take a look at it. I said, oh, that's not too good, but I really hope you can help. Anyway, he tapped me along for a long period of time and ultimately didn't do it. And I said, you are a stiff. You could have done this thing so easy, et cetera. But it was controversial. He was in Congress for many years, like 28 years. And, you know, there's a reason when somebody's there for 28 years, you got to be sort of smart.
Right.
You know, you have
A
all the
survivor.
scandals. And I realized he was a survivor.
And so they never do anything controversial. They never take any chances or speak their opinion. It's outside of the. Yeah.
Sometimes. And yet I don't disrespect him for it.
So-
I actually respected the guy more in a certain way. I said,
'Cause he
you know,
did survive.
You know what? He's been there like for 28 years, and he made it through. A lot of people don't make it through.
It's a good way for non-exceptional people to survive.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly is.
So you're in there. You have 10,000 appointments you have to make. Like, so you're getting advice from people. And at one point in time, did you have a moment in time where you realized like these are bad choices? Like some of these people I shouldn't have had in there.
Oh, yeah. I think so. The one question that you'll ask me, that I think you'll ask me, that people seem to ask, and I always come up with the same answer. The one mistake, because I had a lot of success, great economy, great everything. Everything was.
They're not really. He really did not have a lot of success. Just to be clear, like the economy was already good because of Obama beforehand. Like he didn't really do anything meaningful other than do unrealistic, unsustainable tax cuts. It's not a good idea, right? So he wasn't really that good. Like it's nice to have a nice economy, but half of it was Obama. The other half was really irresponsible tax cuts we could never pay for. It never made any sense. I mean, he was not very good. He couldn't do anything about the border. He couldn't do anything about the Affordable Care Act that he talked about how horrible it was. He couldn't do anything to stop that. Like he was an ineffective president that couldn't get both sides to work with him. Then Biden gets in, and like yeah, he might be fucking old and senile, but he was able to get bipartisan support for an infrastructure bill. Trump turned down a Republican proposed border wall, border wall bill, just so we can run on it. Like, what are we talking about? He was not successful really at all. Like the chips were stacked in his favor, and he still failed as a president. He handled COVID like shit as well. He's not very good.
It was great. The military, we rebuilt it, biggest tax cuts in history, all this stuff we did.
There was nothing unbuilt about the military. It was a waste how much like he invested in the military. It's another problem too.
3 Supreme Court justices. Most people get none. You know, you pick them.
Yeah, because they blocked Obama from getting a Supreme Court justice unfairly.
Young. This way they're there for 50 years.
And that's why there should be, everybody should get one Supreme Court, like every election, the president should be able to, one of them retires and one, they should be able to propose one instead of getting a bunch, because he was able to stack it like unjustifiably. Insane. Like Trump had a stacked Supreme Court. I mean, excuse me, he stacked his Supreme Court. He had a stacked House, he stacked Senate, and he couldn't do anything. He didn't do anything. He even he greatly exacerbated issues between Israel and Palestine. Like he decided that he was going to go do he was going to meet with Israel and other Arab countries for peace, and didn't include Palestine, but still enacted certain restrictions on Palestine. Was way too easy on Israel. Declared Jerusalem the capital of Israel. Put the fucking U.S. embassy there. Pissed off Palestine. This is one of the reasons why we have the problem we have now, and why it's difficult for Palestinians and Israelis to work together. Like it's fucking crazy. It's just fucking ridiculous.
Right? So, you know, even if a president is there for 8 years, oftentimes they never have a chance. I had 3. It was sort of the luck of the draw. But I will say that it always comes back to the same answer. The biggest mistake I made was I picked some people. I picked some great people, but you don't think about that. I picked some people that I shouldn't have picked. I picked a few people that I should
like Mike Pence, that your followers were saying were chanting "kill Mike Pence" because he wouldn't steal the election for you, or
have picked. And
neocons.
Yeah, neocons or bad people or disloyal people or
people that were just
people
bad.
that were into
people who wouldn't do anything that you wanted and overthrow the country. Yeah, true.
Was people bad advice?
Yeah, I mean, look, you.
Thank you for the $3 from Melissa Boomer of the night. Thank you. I appreciate you putting capitals in your name so it was easier for me to read. I'm not kidding.
About him a little bit today. A guy like Kelly, who was a bully, but a weak person. You know more about bullies than anybody probably around because you deal in a certain sport where the bullies are exposed very quickly.
Yeah.
But he's bad. Bolton was an idiot, but he was great for me because I'd go in with a guy like a John Bolton. You know John Bolton. A friend of mine called me up. I was picking Bolton, and he's a very smart guy. His name is Phil Ruffin. He's a very rich guy from Las Vegas. He's a great card player. He doesn't play cards, but he's a great player. He's just a natural. Got poker sense, right? Good old poker sense. And Phil Ruffin is a very, very wise kind of a guy, and one of the richest people around, and has had great success and understands people. So it was in that I was picking Bolton, or I picked Bolton. He called up. He said, "Don't pick him. Why? He's a bad guy." Now he wasn't in politics at all. He's in various businesses. He said, "He's a bad guy. It always works out bad with that guy." And I said, "Oh man, I wish you told me this 2 weeks ago. I already hired him. He's here," and he was right. But he was good in a certain way. He's a nut job, and every time I had to deal with a country, when they saw this whack job standing behind me, they said, "Oh man, Trump's going to go to war with us." He was with Bush when they went stupidly into the Middle East. They should have never done it. I used to say it as a civilian. So I always got more publicity than other people. And it wasn't like I was trying. In fact, I don't know exactly why. Maybe you can tell me why.
Oh, I could definitely tell you. You said a lot of wild shit.
Maybe.
You said a lot of wild shit, and then CNN.
Yeah, and you were pushing a whole fucking conspiracy that Obama wasn't American. So it wasn't just wild shit. It was fucking insane.
In all their brilliance, by highlighting your wild shit, made you much more popular.
Yeah.
And they boosted you in the polls because people were tired of someone talking in this bullshit, pre-prepared politician lingo. And
I don't think that has really anything to do with it. I mean, the cards were stacked against Hillary. She would have been the first woman. She's already annoying. It's almost unheard of for the same party to win an election 3 times in a row. And then on top, that's pretty much what it comes down to. And then part of it's because he said there's something we could do about jobs, and that's pretty much it. If this had been a second election cycle with a Democrat, he would have lost. The cards were stacked so heavily in his favor. It's actually insane. It's fucking wild.
And even if they didn't agree with you, they at least knew whoever that guy is, that's him. That's really him. Yeah. When you see certain people talk, certain people in the public eye, you don't know who they are. You have no idea who they are. It's very difficult.
Trump lies every other day. He hasn't done anything as the president.
You see them in conversations. They have these pre-planned answers. They say everything. It's very rehearsed. You never get to the meat of it. One of the beautiful things about you is that you freeball. You get out and you do these huge events, and you're just talking. And you're making. We've highlighted you on the show many times. When you did this Biden impression, where he's walking around, he doesn't know what he's doing. It's funny. It's stand-up. It's funny stuff.
Yeah, but that's the problem, no? Why? We shouldn't be championing politics being interesting. That's not a good thing. Politics shouldn't be interesting. What?
But it's you were making fun of Elon one time. You were doing an Elon impression. It's great. You have comedic instincts. When you said to Hillary, "You'd be in jail." It's great timing.
Yeah.
Okay, that was specifically a what they're talking about is there's usually some kind of ceremony that's done after the presidency, and that was the context of that. But that one makes sense. It was basically a roast. That's the kind of the whole point of that.
But it's that kind of...
But doing this every single day on stage, bullying and harassing people, it's just not the way a fucking president should be acting. It's
stuff was unheard of as a politician. No one had done that. And I think...
It's funny. You need at least the attitude of a comedian when you're doing this business. This is a very dangerous business. So it's a very tough business.
It's the most dangerous business.
For a job?
Yes. Other than going to war and being a firefighter or being a cop, it's the most dangerous business. It's the most dangerous.
Being president is the most dangerous.
Especially you. You haven't even got to the election. There's been 2 assassination attempts. And they've...
Yeah, that's what happens when you try to fucking... We try to overthrow the government. People that's the problem. That should never happen, but that's what happens when you try to overthrow our government.
Rush those out of the news like it was nothing.
Yeah, they'd rather not talk about them.
Imagine if there was assassination attempts on Biden. How hard?
Yeah, Biden hasn't done anything to draw that type of attention. Unfortunately, Trump is insanely he's a conspiracy theorist who tried to circumvent the peaceful transfer of power.
People would be attacking the right. How they would be trying to get guns taken away from people. They would try to ramp up gun laws. They would try to figure out some way to blame you. If there was attacks if Biden got shot in the ear, we would have never heard the end of it.
But I think he's in good shape because it's only consequential presidents. If you take a look at what's happened, look, I'm for having countries pay us billions and billions and trillions even dollars. I took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China. Nobody took in 10 cents, not one other president. I do things that...
We had I'm pretty sure that under Trump, we had a much bigger trade deficit. Like we weren't even doing very well when it came to that.
Make it. I mean, that don't necessarily make me so popular. I just do what's right. And when you do that, you're more look at Iran.
Talk about he fucking denied a border wall bill just so they can fucking run on it. How is that doing what's right?
Would have never had the attack on Israel at all. Iran was.
Yes, we would have.
China, if you buy.
What are you talking about? He caused like fucking like a substantial part of the problem. What?
You can't do business in the United States under any circumstance. We're gonna go cold turkey with China. Some people think that would have been a good idea anyway. But if you buy any oil, 1 barrel of oil from them, you're not doing business. I said that to many countries. Iran was broke. They had no money for Hezbollah. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money. But I make myself, I understand what I'm doing. You make yourself a target, and it's a very dangerous business. But if you just look at statistically, so I sort of think, I don't know if it's right, but 1/10% for a race car driver. That's pretty dangerous business, right?
Yeah.
1/10% for a bull rider. I tell you, to me, these guys that ride the bulls is worse than UFC. It's worse.
Yeah.
These guys, you see these big monster bulls, and you see it in slow motion where the foot is like, an inch away from the head. If it hits him, the guy's gone. But they die. They die.
So 1/10% die. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, 1/10% die.
Right.
And they certainly get hurt badly. Really, they can't walk after a certain period of time. But with a president, if you
going cold turkey with China is not a good idea. I mean, we have a world economy, and that would be pretty disastrous.
look at
The amount
and attempts too.
Yeah.
And attempts. No, it's a very dangerous position. I never thought of that, by the way, when I did it.
I thought this was going to be more of him pushing him on shit, not like a cum guzzling session.
You don't tend to.
Did you just assume because people loved you on The Apprentice, they were going to love you as a
I
president?
figured it would be so easy. It's
well,
very
it probably
interesting.
would have been if the media didn't attack you the way they did.
Attack? Okay. You're okay.
If they didn't conflate you with Hitler. I mean, even today, like
Well, he tried to circumvent the peaceful transfer of power. What do you... sorry. He's not quite Hitler, but I mean, like, if you're going to do that, people are, you're a fucking... That's dictator behavior. So...
Kamala was talking about you and Hitler. They're going to take what you said about Robert E. Lee. Oh, Donald Trump wishes the South won.
That's right. He loves Robert E.
They
Lee.
love to take things out of context and distort things.
But they don't even have to take them out. They make them up entirely. Okay,
They do that too.
But, it's interesting when you mentioned the...
This is the guy who said that that Biden ignored the FEMA calls. This is somebody who delayed aid, by the way, to fucking California. This was just Trump. It was talking about how they denied Biden didn't do anything when it came to the response to the hurricanes. When Biden instantaneously responded, gave all these states everything that they wanted and needed, and they all came out. All the governors came out and said yeah, he was great. And Trump makes shit up all the time.
I was very popular, and all those people loved me. I mean, some of these...
Trump didn't win. He didn't even win the popular vote in any of his elections. How was he popular?
These women, they're so stupid. And Joy, she would, every time she'd see me, I'd be in the theater or something, and she'd, you have to be on the show again. Come on, let's go.
She loved you.
She loved me.
That episode,
By the way,
people should watch that episode just to see what we're talking about. Like I said, we don't want to get a copyright strike, so we're not going to put it up. But if you watch the episode, it's bananas. It's like an alternative universe. And it's only
but Whoopi
9 years ago.
Whoopi loved me.
you. Gives you a hug and a kiss.
And how about that other one?
Well, we're at that time where you're saying that Obama wasn't a fucking... At the time, were you saying Obama wasn't a real American and pushing conspiracy theories?
One on there, the one from my administration. She writes me a letter. You're the greatest president. She leaves. She worked as an assistant press secretary. I hardly knew her, but she leaves and she writes me this gorgeous letter.
I mean, one of the biggest things Trump was doing was questioning Obama's birth certificate. Of course, people are going to think you're a racist piece of shit if you're going to do something like that.
What's her name? She was, I don't even know. Anyway, she was in the administration. She's on now currently. Sits in the far right-hand side, whatever the hell her name is. And she writes a letter, the most beautiful letter. She's quoted in the paper. He was the greatest president, blah, blah, blah. Then all of a sudden she goes in the View. She started hitting the hell out of me because they won't hire her unless... I've had many people go on CNN and they call and said, I don't know what to do. They want to pay me a lot, but I have to be negative. And I said, be negative. That's okay. There are guys on CNN. They won't hire them. Sean Duffy is a congressman, and he retired. He got a good job with CNN, but he was only positive about Trump. So they kept him, but they would never put him on. I mean, I respect what he did. He could have gone, negative. I tell people, go negative. Let my friends make the money. Well, it's just so crooked. The press is so crooked.
It's crooked, but it's also they're diminishing themselves. They're killing all their credibility, and it's opening up the credibility to new media. It's opening up the credibility.
I mean, Tucker Carlson literally had to be let go from Fox because he was admitting to pushing stories he did not believe in. I think it was about the fraudulent voting machines, whatever bullshit story they were coming up with of that. What are you talking about?
The independent media.
Dude, Joe Rogan's a fucking idiot. It's just so funny.
The worst I've ever seen, though, and I've seen the worst. I mean, I've been a part of it. I've seen the worst. Kamala goes on 60 Minutes, gave an answer that a child wouldn't give. It was so bad. And 60 Minutes took the answer out. They took the whole, and they put another answer in.
They edited it deceptively.
Which didn't make sense either, but it was better. They took it wasn't editing. It was fraud. This was not editing. Editing is where I'll give an answer and they'll take a couple of words and change them around, or they might even take a sentence or two off, which is very bad. But it's sort of bad. I'd give an answer which was a very good answer. I always talk about, I like to give long the weave. You know, I like to
Yeah, you like to weave things in.
But when you do the weaves, and you have to be very smart to do weaves. When you do the weave, look at this. Just in this one thing, we're talking about little pieces all over here, but it
Gotta
always
get
ends
back
up.
home.
No, it comes back home.
Yeah.
For the right people, for the wrong people, it doesn't come back home, and they end up in the wilderness, right? but they can take my answer, and you know what? They may take a little piece of it out or something, and they use the term, "Yes, we wanted to save time." Well, it's not. But I've never heard. I think it's the biggest scandal in broadcast history. What happened to CBS? So you have CBS 60 Minutes. That's a news program. It's not an entertainment program. It's under their news. It's the head of their news thing. She gives an answer that shows that she's essentially incompetent. And they took the answer. Could you imagine them doing that?
We can show it if you want people to see it. Can we
Go
show
ahead.
it? No?
Sure.
We get in trouble? We'll get copyright strike? Okay.
Listen,
I don't know, when it comes to like news stuff, you don't usually have that problem.
Find
indemnify
it,
you.
but it's drastic. But what was interesting was
I wouldn't doubt that Kamala, is it Kamala? I have to get that down. I want to be say it the right way, and I've never internalized what you're supposed to say. I wouldn't doubt that she says something stupid. Like, I wouldn't doubt that. But comparatively, she's a fucking genius. Jesus
the
Christ.
other full version was available initially. It was like a preview.
Somebody made a big mistake.
Somebody put that preview out
Some
there.
kid
and
put
then,
the preview
exactly.
out. And then the bosses did this or that. And then all of a sudden they
Exactly.
said, we got a problem.
Exactly. And then
They got caught
became-
by mistake.
Well,
But don't you think that's a bit, to me, and don't forget, this is election interference and fraud. And it's 60 Minutes. It's their news division. So
It's a big deal.
They give those licenses out, Joe, for free. They should pay a fortune. They're worth a fortune. They give them out for free because they're using the public airwaves. With cable, you don't have that. Cable's different. But, you know, it's just a different deal. But with the networks, they give those licenses. They're worth billions of dollars. They give them out free, but you have to be honest and all. That was bad. I think that David Muir and that woman that was aside, I never even heard of her, but they kept interrupting me. It was like, I said, how many people am I debating here? I got this one and I got you two. But he went after me 11 different times. You know, it's interesting. I always thought he was a nice guy.
I mean, Trump was lying the entire time, so. I mean, okay.
But he's just like the rest of them, you know?
Well, that's his job, unfortunately, and I'm
but
sure
not when
what
they're
they
wrong.
want. You're right. Well, the problem was they fact-checked you and they didn't fact-check her. And
Not
one of the
at
most
all.
egregious examples
What did she lie about?
of that was when she said that there are no troops right now deployed in
Yeah,
war zones.
yeah.
There's a very famous viral video that went online of troops in a war zone saying, well, what the fuck are we then? Because there's thousands of them. Dan Crenshaw, the congressman, posted on his Instagram all of the various examples of
Too many.
troops that are deployed, thousands and thousands of troops that are currently deployed.
Stupidly deployed.
But the point is, if this is going to be an actual real debate and not a propaganda exercise, if it's going to be a real debate,
Oh yeah, well they should have. They definitely should have called her on that. Then, if that's true, they should have called her on that. They should have kept it consistent, because there wouldn't have been so many. There would not have been nearly as many things to fact check for that. So I get that. In general, they should have fact checked her too. So it would have been. They should have fact checked her too, so that it would have been more fair. I absolutely agree with that, and it would have worked out anyway because there's so much more shit that Trump says that's fucking false. So it wouldn't even have looked bad.
you have to fact check everybody.
So
Like if
they
someone says
never went
maybe she
after her?
thought there was no,
Right.
which is also a problem. So it's one of two things. It's either it was not true, it was a lie on purpose, which is terrible, or it was the opposite. It was ignorance, which is also terrible.
Well, Joe, when I said crime is soaring, he said, no, crime has gone down.
Well, crime has gone down. Like crime has gone down, and it generally goes. Yeah, crime has gone down.
I said, where did you hear that one? Crime has gone down.
Like statistically,
I mean, I'm debating with this guy, but I've
crime has gone down. Okay.
had that.
Well, there was amended FBI statistics that came out after that
Yeah.
showed that crime had gone up
and
substantially.
by the way,
What? What are you talking about? The FBI's report shows remarkable decline in murder, down 13.2%, violent crime down 5.7%, and property crime down 0.4%. What amended FBI statistics is he referring to?
the statistics were a fraud. Because
What?
when they put out the statistics, they didn't include some of the worst places. They didn't include some of the worst cities, some of the most deadly places. But
And
when the
there was
real
also a
numbers came out,
problem-
I turned out to be right. But I haven't gotten...
What the fuck are they talking about? What amended? I looked up amended FBI statistics. There's nothing. There's been a decline the entire time. The reason why these fucking psychopaths think that the crime has gone up, well, first of all, whatever Joe Rogan's referencing is probably something that he saw on Twitter, and Twitter's just full of misinformation. Number two, the reason that these people think that everything is getting more violent and dangerous every year is because all they do is look on Twitter. That's it. That's all it is. They go on Twitter and they think that like, this is how a lot of this information will work. People go on Twitter, they'll see violent shit happening, they go, see, the world is so violent. But you're being beamed information that's riling you up, and you think that the world is so bad.
You turn out to be right, but then there's another problem. Unreported crime is way up because people have lost. Look, the morale that the police department has in a lot of these cities where they've done this defund the police bullshit.
Right,
The
right.
morale of these
It
poor
is.
cops, it's fucking horrible.
Yeah.
It's the dumb.
Sure, I agree with that, but crime is down. Like, I agree that defund the police was an idiot idea. I think that if anything, we need more money for the police so that they could reform and like get more really body cameras. I think body footage, or like the body camera footage, helps tremendously in holding cops accountable, or helping cops in cases where they didn't do anything wrong. But crime is down across the board, Trump is just making things up, saying, well, no, actually, that's not really true. It's like, it is true. The police is stupid, but like crime is down objectively. So what are you talking about?
Dumbest idea
So
of all
bad,
time.
so bad.
But what they've done is they've made these cops feel terrible. They're like good cops. I think cops are just like everybody else. Most of them are great. It's like everybody else. But if you run into
Sure.
one carpenter and he does a shitty job in your house,
Right.
you say carpenters fucking suck. But they don't suck. Most of them are great. And
Police
that's the
have
key
been-
thing with cops. But the point is
Yeah.
like they did all of these things in this very foolish way.
Right.
And these cops are suffering the consequences of it. And so subsequently what happens is a lot of crime is unreported. A lot of crime, like you call the cops, they're too busy, they can't even get to you. Oh, your house got broken into?
Oh, so now it's that the cops can't even do anything. They can't even do anything.
Sorry. You know,
That's how it's always been. Cops only immediately respond if there's something like an active thing going on. If someone breaks into your house, it's always been, oh, okay, we take some information, we'll see what we could do. Like, that's just kind of how the system works, because there's only so much they can really do. Things have not gotten worse.
it doesn't even make a report. There's a lot of people that they just give up.
It's so sad what's happened. And I'll tell you what, I go to
Okay.
police funerals, and we went to one in Long Island. I visited the family in Long Island. A very big deal. It's so dangerous.
Thanks for letting me know it's a big deal, man. I appreciate that.
People don't realize. The car, dark windows, pull over. He's a gentleman. Please pull over. Door opens. Guy comes out firing. Even if they were allowed to pull
terrible.
out their gun, which they're not, they can't. Pull
Do
out
it in
their-
time.
Oh, sorry. Oh, my God. What is happening here?
gun, which they're not. They can't. Pull
Do
out
it in
their-
time. Yeah.
They still wouldn't have time.
It's every cop's worst nightmare.
They open a door.
Yeah, I was too busy and they're not reporting things. Because Joe Rogan's just saying things because he's Joe Rogan sits on Twitter all day. He's legitimately like Twitter brain, misinformation brain. That's literally what it is.
And he was killed, and his partner was hurt. He
That's
was killed.
terrible.
And you don't. You don't even have an eighth of a second to think. And it is such a dangerous job. That in particular, think of it. You go up to a car, you don't know who's sitting there with a gun, and if they have a gun, you really don't have a chance. You're not allowed to have your.
Just to be absolutely honest with you, that's horrible. And whoever did that should be punished, capital punishment. But I just want to be very clear. Long Island police officers, I live in Long Island, are overpaid. Generally, Long Island, if this is what they're referring to, Long Island cops are like overpaid. I think the top pay is like $140,000 or some shit on Long Island for, and I'm not trying to be an asshole, an entry level position. So like Long Island cops are overpaid. City cops are underpaid. I think top pay in New York City is like $90,000 a year. Top pay in Long Island is like $130-something thousand a year. So like, and it's much like Long Island cops are like a retirement job. It's much easier out here. Same thing with fucking it's crazy. I'm not trying to be an asshole. I'm just saying like police officers on Long Island don't have these problems. City cops for sure. I feel bad for city cops. That's a tough job.
You're
But
going out, by the way. Yep, they have very strict rules.
and I respect like Long Island cops. Like I live on Long Island. I'm just saying like let's not pretend that they're fucking so horribly underfunded out here.
So
They are not.
Number one, but even if you could have your gun out, the door opens and bullets start firing out. And especially where they have the dark windows, where they have the darkened windows, it is such a dangerous profession, and it's very hard to get cops now because they're not giving.
It is not difficult to get Long Island cops at all. That's not true. That's not true.
any backup. And you're right. You can, they have like an eighth of a second to make a decision that's going to change their life. If they make the wrong,
That's true. Sometimes it can be very dangerous to be a police officer. I agree with that. But there's no struggle finding Long Island cops. In fact, it's difficult for people to become Long Island cops, especially. City cops, I could see that. But you're talking about Long Island right now? It's fucking insane.
decision, they're going to end up on the front page of every newspaper in the country, and they're going to lose their house and their pension and their job, and their wife is going to be gone, and everything's going to be
Absolutely.
gone.
And here's another thing that people don't talk about. How many of them have PTSD? Probably most of them.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, it's not like Trump cares about that. I know how many, or like, at all. You know how many, I think there's like police officers who killed themselves after January 6th. They got PTSD from fucking, a bunch of insane conservatives breaking into the Capitol building. So
These guys are seeing people shot all the time.
Yep.
I've talked to a ton of cops about it, and a lot of cops commit suicide. A lot of cops are deeply depressed. A lot
But
of
we have to
cops
give them
seen-
back their
Yes.
dignity. We just have to give them back. You said it so good. You never hear anybody say that. You're never going to have it perfect. You're going to have a bad apple.
In everything, in every
Right.
profession.
But every time there's a bad apple, that gets massive publicity, and it taints everybody
But
else.
it's also this very irresponsible thing where people say defund the police, get rid of the police. Even
that's really not something anybody's saying right now. This is something that was happening like fucking how many years ago during fucking lockdowns. This is really not a narrative people are talking about at all. So I don't know what the fuck you keep going on about it for.
Kamala Harris was a part of that. It's a very stupid way to look at it. What you should do is
This isn't something that anybody said for years. I admit it was dumb as shit when they were first talking about it. You know what I mean? It should have been like reform the police. I agree, but this isn't something that's been an issue at all.
fund the police. You should have better training. You should have cops that feel more appreciated. You should have something that helps mitigate this PTSD that all of them suffer through.
So she was a big part
Well,
of
not all of them
defund the
suffer
police.
through
That was a big thing
PTSD.
for her. Defund the police. Always defund the police.
Well, it's a
Well, not really, but
political
Yeah,
idea,
but
right?
I wouldn't doubt that she said like she said it or something. I wouldn't doubt that, but she's like a fucking career police officer, like or rather like in the criminal justice system. I don't believe that's not true.
Anybody with that political thought, I don't think should be running for president. And I think people are getting wise to it. You know, we're doing pretty well now. I don't know. Maybe in a week from now, say, sorry about that. I was wrong.
Like there was a moment, especially in 2020, where they were pandering more to like a very far left idiot morons. I agree with that 100%. But people realize that politicians realize that's really not the way to go. Democratic Party is mostly like reasonably moderate left. However, for Trump, the entire party is just fucking psychopath shit like that. So,
But we're leading everything. And I think we're going to have a very good election. But I tell people, because people are starting to get to know her. But she was defund the police. She was all these transgender operations. You know, if you wanted to...
what the fuck? When is she transgender operations?
sex change and you were in detention and you demanded a sex change, they would give you a sex change.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Well, the wildest one is this idea
What?
of giving free sex change to illegal immigrants.
That's right.
What the fuck are they talking about?
In detention.
That is the wildest
But
thing.
she
Like,
was-
is that the biggest problem you have?
Yeah.
You just walked here for Guatemala. You need to become
That's
a
right.
girl.
But she was in favor of it.
Yes.
So think of it. Now she changed. She changed 15 policies.
Oh, so apparently in an interview in 2020, so we're talking about 4 years ago, Kamala Harris voiced support for defund the police, which I think is stupid, and she said that they should take money away from cops and put more into services and education. That's that's not like a horrible idea necessarily, but you need to put more money into education and then reduce money from cops as the budget would not need it as much anymore if things got safer, right? That's an idea. The fuck is she what are they talking about? Transgender operations and surgeries. Who am I voting for? Obviously not Trump. This guy's a fucking moron. What is this immigrant sex change thing that they're even talking about? It's like the same thing as calling one of the boxers a trans person when they weren't fucking trans.
In fact, I'm going to send her a MAGA cap.
She stole your idea about no tax for tips.
I came up with this idea that honestly nobody ever heard of. And now it took her 2 months, but you know what? All of a sudden,
Well, it caught fire.
and she just put it into a little speech.
Yeah.
Well,
Who cares? Nobody pays fucking tax on tips anyway.
It became
but
popular.
I think we still have that issue. I think that issue is a good one for us. But no, we have a lot of good issues. You know, we had the other day. Think of how simple some of these things are. We're trying to get cars built in the United States, Detroit.
Dude, nobody cares about fucking trans people. I'm not trying to be rude. I mean, like, trans people are cool and all, but like, it's always just this weird obsession with trans people in the Conservative Party. This is not like an issue. I don't know what you're talking about. Trans surgeries for fucking what?
It has been really tough. It's been a disaster. They have a huge factory, a huge car auto plant being built by China in Mexico, make cars, sell them in the United States, put everybody out of business. Right, here we go again. I said, if that plant is there when I'm president, I will put 100 or 200% tariffs on every car. They'll be unsaleable in the United States. And they just announced they're not going to build the plant because they think I'm going to win. Think of it. They're not going to build the plant. This was the biggest plant in the world. It would have more than all of Michigan makes. So that's how big. You know, this is what we get
What plant is he referring to? I don't even know if this is like a real thing.
heading to. And I said, if that plan goes up, I want them to understand if I win, I'm going to tax those cars at the rate of 100 or 200% apiece so that you won't be able to sell them in the United States. They just announced they're not going to build the plant.
Yeah, I read this.
I did a big
Okay, so yeah, China put electric vehicle manufacturer BYD is planning to build a plant in Mexico. I don't know the specifics about this. Here's the thing. China does like regularly subsidize their businesses that come out of their country so that they can reduce costs when selling to other markets. This is something that they absolutely do to try to undercut the market, and the idea is basically to monopolize the market. So it's the same thing that Amazon did when they put like lots of bookstores out of business by taking $3 billion losses in books years ago, so that they could put other competitors out of business, and then they can again eat up the market. This is like a real thing. And so like there are instances where I don't know about 200%, but you need to tariff China. This is like something that's regular for a lot of countries to put tariffs specifically on some Chinese imports because they'll engage in this type of shit, right? This pretend idea that the Biden administration or the Harris administration wouldn't tariff things like that we've been doing for decades is stupid. Like there would probably be economists saying like, yeah, you're gonna have to tariff this like 10%, 15% just to keep it competitive because they're going to subsidize the price cuts through the Chinese government. This isn't something unique to Trump. This isn't like a magical unique thing to Trump. What?
big favor for our country by doing that.
Oh,
and I'm not
Jesus.
even there yet. To me, the most beautiful word, and I've said this for the last couple of weeks, in the dictionary today, and is the word tariff. It's more beautiful than love. It's more
Tariffs aren't bad if implemented correctly, but he's proposing like just a flat 10 or 20% tariff on. He has no policies. Trump hasn't given us a single policy. He just says we're going to tariff stuff, which is not good for the economy. You need a healthy world economy to exist. Tariffs can be good, depending. You can't just like recklessly throw tariffs at everything. It's a stupid idea.
beautiful than anything. It's the most beautiful word. This country can become rich with the proper use
We already are the richest country in the world.
of tariffs. It'll
Did
keep
you just
companies-
float out the idea of getting rid of income taxes and replacing it with tariffs?
Well, okay.
Are we serious
Yeah, that's a stupid idea.
about that?
Yeah, sure. But why not? Because ready?
So getting rid of income taxes is the worst idea ever. The flat taxing things is stupid, right? Rich people benefit from that. We should be taxing the rich in technologies. We're not at a point where we need to cut taxes. We're at a point where we need to raise taxes on technologies and redistribute that wealth in a productive, positive way.
Our country was the richest relatively in the 1880s and 1890s.
It still is the richest, relatively. What are you talking about?
A president who was assassinated named McKinley. He was the tariff king. He spoke beautifully of tariffs. His language was really beautiful. We will not allow the enemy to come in and take our jobs and take our factories and take our workers and take our families.
I don't even know if this is true because Trump lies constantly, but this is 2024. Things are massively different. Like we're not in the same place that we used to be.
Unless they pay a big price, and the big price is tariffs. And he'd speak like that, but he was right. And then around in the early 1900s, they switched over stupidly to, frankly, an income tax. And you know why? Because countries were putting a lot of pressure on America. We don't want to pay tariffs. Please don't. Believe me, they control our politicians. If you look at the kind of numbers that these guys make then and now. But we had a commission meeting in I think it was 1887. Think of this problem. We were so rich. We had so much money. We didn't know what to do. So they set up a blue ribbon commission on tariffs. And the sole purpose is what to do with all the money we had. We were so rich because we were taxing other people for coming in and taking our jobs.
I don't think any of this is true. I don't know. Our debt wealth ratio is a lot worse now. Yeah, because of Trump. Like Trump is the biggest reason why our debt wealth ratio is, well, excuse me, every Republican president that we've had in like the past 2 decades. Just to be clear, okay? This started when the stock market just crashed out, right? The Great Recession under Bush, who engaged in reckless cuts to particular protocols when it comes to the way that Wall Street operated, destroyed our economy. Obama came in, inherited a $1.2 trillion annual federal deficit, which means that we were spending more, $1.2 trillion more than we were taking in. Okay? By the end of that, Obama turned the economy around, got us down to $650 billion. We were in a good spot. When you get into good spots, is when you start to try to cut reasonably, get your deficit down, and get to a surplus. Trump came in, inflated the deficit pre-COVID back to $1 trillion through idiot tax cuts that we not only didn't need, were never a good idea, were never sustainable, and mostly helped the rich people. And then COVID hit again. And during those times, obviously what's going to happen is you have to spend more money to get through that, because that's another issue going on. So Biden didn't cut the deficit, but you wouldn't expect somebody to cut the deficit like recovering from COVID. So we're getting fucked every single time there's a goddamn conservative president, and then things are getting better, and then people are like whinging and crying about it, and then they're voting a fucking moron like Trump in, and then we're just getting fucked again. And it's ridiculous. It's actually insane. Throughout Trump, like we should have had, our deficit should have been getting closer to zero under Trump pre-COVID. We would have been in a much better spot now, but like of course not.
And China does it. That's what China did. If you want to open a factory and sell cars, if you build a factory here or have a factory, they don't take our cars. They wouldn't take our cars. But if you build a plant in China, you can do that. Elon did that. By the way, Elon is great. That guy is such a great guy. I think you're a fan of Elon. He is from a different planet. He's the greatest guy. That rocket coming in.
Yeah.
I told the story once or twice. So you may have heard it because his speeches have been good. Did you see the one last night?
Yeah,
29,000 people. That was it.
Yeah.
And the one the night before was the same thing. We are rocking and rolling. But Elon, and I'm talking to this very important guy. I said, wait a minute. I'm looking at something. The television's unmuted, right? And I see this rocket. It's all brown from the heat. It's like 10,000 degrees pouring down at thousands of miles an hour. And I see this thing. It's like a 20-story building.
And it catches.
And I say to this guy's an important guy. Wait a minute. Let me just put you down. Hold it. I got to see this. And I see this. And
of course, Trump loves Elon. It's the only platform that disinformation can get pushed so regularly on, too.
Crash. I say it's going to crash into the gantry. They call it a gantry. I said, oh man, that's going to be a disaster because it's starting to get very close. And then all of a sudden you see the flames in the bottom, and it boom, and then you see the two arms grab it,
Crazy.
And I forgot the guy. I had him on the phone. I forgot. No, I said, the hell with it. No, I called Elon. I said, was that you? He said, that was me. And I said, who else can do that? He said, nobody. Russia can't do it. The United States, nobody can do it. You know, I set up Space Force. That was me. And that's the first time in 82 years that we opened another branch since the Air Force.
Wow.
And that's going to be one of our most important things. But think of what Elon does. And he did one other thing that I never heard of it. It's Starlink. I went down to North Carolina, Georgia.
It's actually so surprising because you'd think that like fucking boomers would be afraid of things like Starlink. Like I'm pretty sure Starlink is like is about putting computer chips in your fucking brain. Like conservatives would be the ones that were like the most fucking skeptical of that. Which, by the way, I am too. But you know, but Elon's doing it. We love Elon, so we'll let him do anything to our fucking bodies. Isn't that crazy?
The different places, right? I followed it right down, and they had no communication. The poles were all knocked down. Everything. And one of the guys in North Carolina said, "Could you do me a favor? Do you know Elon Musk?" Yes. He endorsed me. By the way, he gave me the nicest endorsement, too. The toughest. He said, the country's going to fail. You should do the same thing, Joe, because you cannot be voting for Kamala. Kamala, you're not a Kamala person. I know you. I've watched you. I know him better than he does. You know what? Without speaking to you, I think I know you maybe almost as well as your wife. I have watched you for so many years. You're not a Kamala person. You're a Khabib person, but you're not a Kamala person. No, nobody's going to know who Khabib is, but
they know who
he was not bad, right? That guy.
Oh, he was phenomenal.
But that's your kind of
Your
person.
weave is getting wide. We're getting wide with
my
this
weave.
weave.
But isn't it
I want
much
to bring it
better?
back to tariffs.
But wait one second before we finish with tariffs. So they said, could you get him? We need Starlink. And I call Elon. He got it for him so fast, saved so many lives. And I said, how was it? They said, better than the wires. You know, they couldn't put them in. They were all gone. So
I used it recently in Utah in the mountains.
Did you find it good?
Oh, it's phenomenal. It's the size of like an iPad. And you just set it down on the ground. You get high-speed internet. It's incredible.
We're spending, just to show you, we're spending $1 trillion to get cables all over the country, right? Up to.
Oh, am I thinking of something different? Oh, Starlink is a satellite system. I'm thinking of like it's a fucking. What is the thing that Elon's talking about putting chips in people's brains and shit? That shit is fucking wild. I mean, the Starlink thing sounds interesting.
Upstate areas where you have like.
It's funny. Like Elon is great at buying other people's companies, pretending that he did anything, and then having other people do everything for him and then taking the credit for it. I think it's fantastic.
2 farms and they're spending millions of dollars to have
He's also great at getting government money from Democrats and then implementing Tesla chargers that only work for Teslas, because that's definitely fair, right?
About the
Elon
$42 billion that was wasted on this internet access program. The United States, they didn't get anybody.
They haven't hooked up one person.
Not
yet.
one person.
Bro, I'm not just again like you guys are acting like these people don't get massive subsidies from the government. Like, what are you talking about?
It's been $42 billion. They could have gotten Starlinks to everybody with that kind of money
For almost nothing.
Yeah.
For a monthly charge.
And it would have been incredible. And it's high-speed internet everywhere you want to go.
And he wanted to do that.
How
about this? They
because he gets government money. Of course he wants to do these things. You're acting like it wouldn't be government money. I mean, that's cool. Starlink sounds interesting. I doubt it's that cheap, but
built the charger stations, right? In the Midwest. They built 8 of them. They cost $9 billion. That's like a gas pump, right? They built 9 gas pumps, except electricity comes out. They spent $9 billion. 3 of them don't work. The whole thing. There's so much waste.
there definitely are governmental issues with that. Like, I know that there's I went to the DMV the other day, and they have like electric chargers. I have like I now have a hybrid vehicle, and it's pretty cool. There was 4 chargers there. Only one of them worked. It's definitely like a fucking issue. Like, for sure, absolutely. But then there's also like government subsidized chargers for Tesla, exclusively Tesla chargers that don't work for other vehicles.
I could sit here and tell you about things that there's so much waste, abuse, and fraud.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, I think everybody's aware of that.
Let's get back to tariffs.
When you're talking about one of the criticisms of your administration was with tax cuts and with tariffs, you increased the deficit. So what was the strategy behind that? And did you think
he had no strategy? He had no long-term strategy.
He was going to increase the deficit?
Am I thinking of Neuralink? Okay.
By a substantial amount?
Okay, we were ready to rock. It was all, I had a bad system. We had a horrible tax policy. I made it great.
We did not have a horrible tax policy at all. He made it worse.
With a much lower tax rate. So I took it from almost 40% down to 21%.
What is he talking? That's not a good thing.
Now I'm bringing it from 21 down to 15, but only if you make your product in the United States, which is great. People call me, they said, what a great idea. Nobody ever heard of that before. I don't care if they make the product in Japan. Why should I give them? So it's at 21. At 21, in the first year, we took in much more revenue than we did at almost 40. Think of that.
Just to be clear, what are you talking about? Our revenue we weren't taking anything in.
It inspired. Now we had other things too. We were able to get people to bring back their money. You couldn't bring back your money if you had money in Europe, like Apple. Apple had many billions of dollars outside. They couldn't bring it. There was no way to bring it back in. The bureaucracy, the documents, the whole thing, and also the tax was too high. They wanted like half of it or something. Nobody's going to do.
Is that a good thing that they can't bring their money back into the United States? I don't understand.
So they leave their money in Japan and they spend their money there. That was part of what I did. The money came pouring back in. Apple took in hundreds of billions of dollars. They brought it back from overseas. They brought it in.
So how does the deficit increase because of that?
So what happened?
Yeah, the deficit went up $350 billion. He increased the deficit drastically pre-COVID.
We were ready to rock and roll, and then we had the COVID thing.
No, you were Dude, nobody was ready to rock and roll. Things were worse before COVID when it came to the deficit. What is he talking about?
We had to focus on that. And
you did a bad job because you pushed conspiracy theories, which made the recovery worse.
Didn't give some businesses a hand. You would have had a depression like in 1929. But we were ready to start. We would have very shortly been paying off debt. We have $35 trillion in debt.
He didn't pay any debt off. He's lying.
And I'll never forget it. It was talking about from the standpoint of being in office. I'm in the Oval Office, and I have John McLaughlin and Fabrizio, the two very good pollsters, probably, I don't know, I would say the two best, who knows, but very good pollsters. And we're starting to think about running for a second term. And we had the greatest economy in history.
Yeah, so the deficit went up under Trump. That's just a fact. Him cutting taxes was a stupid idea that never should have happened. No, they got worse because of COVID. I just want you to, fuck, I forgot I'm talking about idiots. The annual federal deficit went up $350 billion due to Trump's irresponsible tax cuts pre-COVID and then obviously inflated post-COVID. Trump inherited a good economy and made it better in a way that long-term increases inflation because there's too much money in the market and drastically increased the annual federal deficit. Substantially increased it by like 50% for needless tax cuts when we needed to start cutting down on our spending because we just came out of a recession. Obama got us out of a recession. Trump had a good economy. It was his responsibility to lower the deficit further, not increase it by over 50%. But he increased it by over 50% so that he could say, hey guys, I have a good economy. He was stupid. It was irresponsible. It was the equivalent of you going to the fucking bank and taking out $100,000 and going, look guys, I made $100,000. It's dumb. And then COVID hit and things got even worse. But it was bad pre-COVID. 3 years of his presidency was pre-COVID, and he drastically increased the deficit needlessly. Like, this is a fact.
Never has there been an economy like
And you attribute that to lowering taxes
a lot
and
of
tariffs.
Two things. And also I cut regulations more than anybody else. And if I asked many of the businessmen, from the big companies, the guys running the big companies, I'd say, so if you had your choice, you've had it now for a long time, what's more important to you?
So Trump was like a multiplier to how it would have been. Anyway, I don't know what that means. Anyway, post-COVID, I don't really understand what you're saying.
Tax cuts, you paid less tax, or the regulation cuts. Every one of them said the regulation cuts meant more. Who would think that, right? Because you don't equate it to dollars, but it actually is more dollars.
It wasn't more dollars, so he's lying.
We had it going, and then we just had to focus on something else. But
No,
there was
so
these
he did not have it going. This is all this is just a lie.
two pollsters were sitting there, and they said, sir, if George Washington came back and Abraham Lincoln was his VP, as opposed to Waltz. How bad is he, by the way? But
He's really not that bad at all. Oh.
If Abraham Lincoln was his VP,
How's it going with your vice president not wanting to be with you anymore? How's that going?
they couldn't beat you. And I'll never forget it. The following day, they said, something's happening in China, sir. Could we meet? I said, what's happening? People are dying. And it was all around the Wuhan lab, by the way. There are pictures with little lines, their body bags, all around the Wuhan lab. And I always said that from the beginning, Joe. They tried to say, first they said it was France, and they blamed everybody.
Right.
I don't think that they did.
But then they say it was bats from a cave 2,000 miles away. So we got hit with that. Despite that, we had the best economy. And when I gave it over, the stock market was higher than it was pre-COVID. I mean,
I don't think that was true at all.
nobody could even believe it. But we saved it, and we were helping businesses. They were dying. They were
So
dying.
it's your belief that if you had a second term, given the policies in place, the way the economy was booming, that you would have been able to pay off a lot of the debt?
No, of course not. He inflated the debt pre-COVID. He's literally useless when it comes to this.
If we didn't have COVID, we would have been paying off debt, and we would have
No, we wouldn't have. There was nothing indicating that ever.
had. And don't forget, by growth, the word growth is actually more important because you could have the same debt, but if you double your growth, all of a sudden
We didn't double our growth. Our GDP went from like 3%. Like our annual GDP went from like 3.4% to like 4.3%, which is a nice boost. We would have had to hit 6 points. I forgot what it was exactly, but we would have had to hit like 6% in order to break even for the tax cuts. What he's saying is false.
Underlevered. But still, we should pay off debt. If you viewed this $35 trillion right now, it's a lot. But if you look at the asset value, if you looked at it purely as an asset value, we have oil underground, we have water, we have mountains, the assets are so enormous. But regardless of that, we've got $35 trillion in debt, we should pay it off. And we would have started paying off debt. And
we wouldn't have.
Probably even given further tax reductions. I want to get it down to 15%.
This is never going to happen. He's fucking insane. He's such a moron.
15%. We're going to do more business. But when you get hit with a COVID, everything stops, and you have to keep these businesses alive. The businesses were dying. They were just dying. This country was going to die.
Are there influences outside of environmental that keep people from wanting to drill for oil and frack and do those sort of things outside of the environmental concerns, which are legitimate, of course.
No,
But
Yeah, it's that we'd rather use other people's resources before using our own. It makes more sense. It's smarter to do.
But are there other influences that maybe over accentuate or over exaggerate these environmental effects? Are people being influenced in a way where they're trying to keep us from producing American oil?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it makes more sense to use oil from other countries first, so we can stockpile our oil. It is a limited resource. It doesn't come from trees. You know, like it's a limited resource. You know, unless we could figure out a way to, you know, ferment a bunch of dogs like they ferment the dinosaurs to get oil, then we could do that maybe.
Yeah.
So the environmental is the biggest tool for stopping growth, the biggest tool. The other is regulation.
I mean, we should concern ourselves with our environment. I don't know if it's a hot take.
And if you speak to Elon, he said the regulation now to send a rocket up to anywhere, even if you do everything, it's becoming impossible.
Oh, no.
But they use environmental in order to get people not.
The environment's real. We have to acknowledge this, yeah? Like, we acknowledge the environment's a real thing?
To do anything. And sometimes I say, you know, I look at some of I know the environmental stuff better because I had to build buildings in New York. I
know the environmental stuff better. Okay.
And I would see some of these guys that I'd hire for a lot of money, environmentalists that would get you through the process, and they'd be up in.
I have no doubt that there are infrastructure issues when it comes down to this. I wouldn't doubt that at all. But the environment is like a real thing. And Trump just decided, we're not going to care about the environment anymore. Instead of saying like, hey, we should be more reasonable in our environmental concerns, he's just like, no, we're just going to pull out of different climate accords and whatnot, and not give a singular fuck and cut pretty much everything just for the sake of it. It's not smart.
Albany, that's the capital of New York, and they're up there trying to make it tougher for guys like me that were builders because they get paid more money. In other words, I had one guy, highly recommended. You know, I was good at getting permits. I was one of the kings I was always very good, but the environmental stuff was always horrible. They could slow a project down 10 years, 15 years. I had a project in Louisiana, built big LNG plant. It was for 14 years. It was going to cost $18 billion, one of the biggest, like the Empire State Building, laying down on its side times 4, massive in the coast, on the Gulf Coast. And they said, sir, they're going to give it up. I said, they shouldn't give it up. What's the problem? They can't get their environmental. They had environmental permits that would fill this whole room up to the ceiling. And they said there was one mistake on one little line. They wanted to do it all over again.
Okay, why do we continue to feed our enemies? Because we don't want to use our own oil? What you're saying, I think, is just too simple. All right? Engaging in worldwide trade and economic policy is a good thing. First and foremost, when we have trade partners that are relying on to us, we have a level of say on how they conduct their business. Even with Russia, if they know that if they decide to attack Ukraine, we're not going to buy oil from them, it might be difficult for us when it comes to our inflation, but it is going to royally fuck Russia. That's why Russia is getting absolutely anally fucked by Ukraine. They're getting destroyed by them every fucking day, right? Second of all, the idea isn't to just not be enemies. We don't live, 100 years ago when we can start world wars, okay? So right now, engaging with trade partners, we should try to be friendly with Russia within reason. It's hard to be friendly with Russia because it is a literal dictatorship that constantly tries to, push misinformation to have influence on the election to get some people elected to think that they believe will guzzle their cum like Trump, which is why they had an impact on the 2016 election and why they wanted Trump to win. But we still need to try to be friends to the best of our abilities. It's a very delicate balance. We can't just be like, oh, fuck them, let's just not do. Why? So why, like, it doesn't make any sense. It makes sense to try to be friendly with other countries, even if it's a very tentative peace, and just kind of operate every day and move forward in a positive way. Right? We're not really feeding our enemies. We're just trying to have a solid world economy. So
it's not going to happen.
How well? I know Trump is going to Trump, but how do you think Joe has done? Joe Biden did pretty well. He passed infrastructure bill, bipartisan infrastructure bill. I mean, he codified gay marriage. He did a decent amount. He got us out of COVID. He did pretty decently. It was a wet noodle account. Like, it was wet noodles because it wasn't anything interesting. Joe Biden was not exciting, but that's what you want in the government. Things really weren't that bad. I mean, yeah, we had a couple of wars, which were rough for the economy, but we did better than any other country. When it comes to our economy, our inflation wasn't as bad as every other country. Oh, how do I think Joe has done in this conversation? Joe Rogan loves Trump. It's pathetic. It's weird. He's not pushing back on anything meaningful at all. He's just like, yeah, the media does hate you for no reason from the start. Even though Trump was going on in unhinged conspiracy theories about how fucking Obama wasn't really American. He was born in another country. So of course people aren't going to like him when he's saying dumb racist shit.
And I got them their permit instantly. And they built a plant. It's massive.
So when you're saying that, so there's people that are making money by making it difficult.
Yeah.
Are you talking about lawyers?
No, I'm talking about environmental consultants and lawyers.
Environmental consultants profit off of dragging out the process.
Absolutely.
And how do
make
they
the
profit?
process worse.
How do they profit
And I'd
off
probably do the same thing if I were them, to be honest with you.
As
I want to be
businessmen?
honest with you.
How do they do that? How do they make it?
They
how
go,
do
let's say New York, they go to Albany.
Okay.
And they convince people that if you have a certain type of plant on the ground that's this big and in theory valueless, that it's a rare plant and you cannot ever even touch it. You can't go near it. You can't put a building on it. You can't do anything. Or there's a little puddle and they call it a lake and you have to go by the standards of a lake. I said, no, that's a puddle. Oh, you have no idea. You guys are
I'm sure that environmental concerns can be a little overbearing sometimes, but Trump's interpretation of any of these things is obviously just like ridiculous.
little puddles. You have no idea what they do.
And so-
and they use it as a way to stop you.
They use it as a way to stop you, and also as to
Everything's a conspiracy theory, guys. Just to be clear, everything's a conspiracy theory.
to generate money. I'm curious how are they generating money that way, though?
Well, they get fees,
They get fees.
massive fees.
And
you pay these guys.
people rely on them as experts because they're the people that they go to when they have to run these studies in the first
But
place.
some of them are just bad guys, and they're trying to make it more and more difficult.
And they have a lot of power.
Yeah, I think they maybe had more. They didn't have as much with me because I would get through them, and I understood it. Look, I've done so many. They call it environmental impact study. I did so much to build a building. To build a building in New York is very tough. You got to be you got to deal with. Think of it: financing, unions, all the municipal stuff, environmental. Of all of it, to me, the toughest thing was the environmental, because they could stop you cold with the environmental impact study stuff. And you hire a so-called expert. They say, sir, he's the one guy he can get you through the morass. It's a morass. It's horrible. They use it as a weapon. They use it all over the country.
Right, but there are legitimate concerns about environmental
There
impact,
are,
correct?
there are,
Like, look about the BP oil spill. There's a lot of things that do happen that are environmentally devastating.
There we go. Some of this finally get some pushback. Holy fuck.
Yeah.
And you want to mitigate that as much as possible.
You do. Look,
Trump doesn't.
I had, during our 4 years, we had the cleanest air and the cleanest water. I viewed
I love this. I love this statistic because he's referencing COVID when there was nobody was on the road. Yeah, we had the cleanest air during COVID. It's the same thing as when he says like we had like some of the highest level of signups onto the Affordable Care Act under Donald Trump, so that it'll be like, oh, we were great. Yeah, the air was better under Trump because COVID stopped vehicles from driving on the roads. People were signing up for Obamacare more because people didn't have jobs during COVID. This guy's fucking, he's insane.
it differently. I say air and water. Remember this: it costs much more to do things environmentally clean. China doesn't do anything.
Right.
When Kerry goes to see President Xi of China, which he probably doesn't even get to see him, but they look at him. Oh yes, we will do. Oh yes, we're going to do that. No more coal, no more coal. And then they approve 58 coal plants for the next. They build a coal plant a week. Okay.
They build a lot of coal plants.
But let me just tell you though. So here we are cleaning and scrubbing everything, and everything's got to.
I wouldn't doubt it. I understand that, and we should pressure other countries to have be better for the environment, but we shouldn't decide to relax ourselves just because of that. That's pathetic.
The air's got to be pure. But in 3.8 days, that stuff floating over China is right over the top of us.
Right.
Same thing with the oceans. They dump their garbage into the Pacific Ocean. If you take a little cork and put it there, in about a week and a half, it'll be in front of Los Angeles. We're picking up their garbage. So nobody ever talks about that. But in a way, the bigger one is even the air. It's the currents. It's an amazing thing. It's been flowing that way for 1 million years, or long before.
We
long
share
before
air
we
with the
were
whole
there.
world. Yeah.
No, if we're
We get the
cleaning,
Sahara dust clouds over here.
Absolutely.
We get dust clouds in Austin from the Sahara Desert.
but we get the China, the China curse. We get the China curse. They're bad, and their air is dirty. When I went there, I had a great relationship with President Xi. We got along very well. And they treated me better than anybody's ever been treated. Same thing with Saudi Arabia, a number of them. But they laid it out. And I said, this air is good. Do you know they closed every factory 1 week before I got there from within 200 miles?
That's like what Gavin Newsom did when Xi Jinping came to San Francisco.
He cleaned it up.
He cleaned it up. He got rid of all
Isn't
the
that
homeless
terrible
people.
in a way? To think, he cleaned it up and then it became a pigsty.
Well, the
He
dumbest thing is he said when your friends come by, when you have visitors, you clean up your house. Like how
I mean, that's typically what they do. That's like a typical thing, even when there's different Olympics. Like I think fucking Paris had to do the same thing. Like, yes, of course. I mean, China's not good. I'm not saying China's good, but like that's a pretty typical that anybody would do that. Thank you for $10 from Z King. Isn't strange how Trumpers will think Hurricane Milton was made by some esoteric group, but they think climate change is a natural process. They literally concede humans can affect climate change. Yeah, that's true. Well, their argument would be that the Democrats are just making the atmosphere worse. And so they don't have to care about it.
How about just keep your fucking house clean?
Can you imagine?
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard anybody say ever as a governor as to excuse to why you finally cleaned up your homeless problem.
And the day
Like, yeah, they should deal with their homeless problem in California. Like, California's not perfect. Absolutely. Like, I would like to see a Democratic president and probably more conservative leadership in states. I would probably generally seems to be like a better idea. But just not. Unfortunately, the Republican Party right now is fucking psychotic.
he left,
Right back to
it went right back.
Yeah.
But in a way, that was a bad thing that he did because he showed
Showed it could be done.
what a disgrace that
Yeah.
was. What a disgrace.
Well, this is the thing that like shows you how foolish a lot of these people that are running these cities think. A lot of these people that are running these states think. It's foolish. Like you're insulting the intelligence of the people that live in that city that are impacted by these people just camping and needles and human feces. There's an app that you can buy. There's an app that you can get rather that will show you where the human feces has been documented in San Francisco. It's a poo app, and it's just everywhere. It's just bum crap everywhere.
But let me give you one.
Yeah,
that
it's definitely
you
a
may not
problem.
know.
I mean, really, what we have to do is get our technology issue under control, because that really is where all this comes from. Is technology displacing jobs and driving down wages? It's like a huge problem that nobody really deals with correctly.
Okay.
Which I think you know everything actually as
That's
a
not
student,
true.
as a student of yours. but water, you know, in Los Angeles you can't get proper amounts of water,
Right.
And it's unbelievably expensive. And you might have a house in Beverly Hills, and they're actually thinking about rationing water. Could you believe it?
I can believe
And
it.
I was in the farm court country with some of the congressmen. We're driving up the highway, and I say, how come all this land is so barren? It's farmland, and it looked terrible. It was just brown and bad. I said, but there's always that little corner that's so green and beautiful. They said, we have no water. I said, do you have a drought? No, we don't have a drought. I said, why do you have no water? Because the water isn't allowed to flow down. It's got a natural flow from Canada all the way up north, water, more water than they could ever use. And in order to protect a tiny little fish, the water up north gets routed into the Pacific Ocean. Millions and millions of gallons of water gets poured. You got to see this. We're driving up, and I had never seen it before. It's like Iowa. It's the most fertile land. Iowa's blessed with great land. Idaho for a potato, right?
Yeah.
But they're just, by the way, you know, some land is good for potatoes, some land is good for corn. It's the craziest thing. I love the farmers. They're great. They're the greatest. And by the way, they're getting killed right now.
They are.
They're getting killed because of the stupid administration. But so I see this, and I said, you got to be kidding. I said, you mean you have water? And I looked at it. It's like a valve in your sink, except it's massive. The thing's 5 times taller than your ceiling.
Did you know the center of California was a giant lake?
They have so much water.
You ever see what it looks like before
No,
they rerouted
I never
it?
saw that,
The
no.
center of California, like, what was it, 200 years ago? How long ago did they do that, Jamie? The center of California had a fucking enormous lake in the middle of
So
California.
they dumped it into the Pacific.
Who knows what they did? But whatever foolishness that they did led to the situation that they're in now.
Think of those dry forests that burn down all over the world. You know, the head of Austria said,
Here
you
it
know,
is, Tulare Lake or Tachi Lake. It's a freshwater lake
Freshwater?
in the southern San Joaquin Valley, United States. Historically, Tulare Lake was one of the largest freshwater lakes west of the Mississippi. Show a photo of what it looked like back then.
it's a great system.
So that's what it looked like. Look at that image. Another one. Go to the one on
wow.
the third from the right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That
Oh,
was an
wow.
enormous
What a
lake in
beautiful
the
thing.
middle of California. Imagine that.
That'd be much more valuable
How
property.
crazy is that?
Oh,
How
wow.
crazy is
So
that's
what
what it
did
used
they
to look
do?
like? And human beings screwed that
No,
up.
they let it go into the Pacific, and then they.
I don't know
it's
what
out
they
there.
did. What did they do? How did it go
Wow.
missing?
They said they drained it in 83.
Yeah, they drained it.
19?
What the fuck are we talking about?
1983. Oh my God.
It went dry a handful of times.
Oh, went dry a handful of times. Well, you know, lakes do go dry, but that's a big one.
But think
It's
of
a big one to
it.
go
You
dry.
could have all of the water you need. All of that land would have more water. The whole thing could be like that little patch.
Yeah.
Literally, I'd say I was with Devin.
So my understanding is the reason that we don't turn to that water is because it could have serious environmental impacts and destroy like tons of species that would have a massively negative impact on the environment, which could end up hurting us in general as well. So
Known as a congressman and other congressmen
I
were
don't-
going up. I was visiting that because they asked me to go up and visit their territory, and I did. But I kept saying, look at this land, it's beautiful, but it's so dry. And I thought they were going through like a desert, like a drought. They said, no, we have water, but it gets... So I looked into it.
What is the
And I
fish?
got it done. I could have water for all of that land, water for your forests. You know, your forests are dry as a bone.
Yeah,
Okay?
dangerous.
That water could be routed. You know, you could have everything. Oh, not only dangerous, billions of dollars a year they spend on forest fires. And, you know, there's a case with the environment. They're not allowed to rake their forests because you're not allowed to touch it. When a tree falls down, after 18 months, it becomes very dry. It's like, you know, like real firewood. It's bad. You know, a tree that's up, these are all things
dude, I don't know what level of credibility I'm expected to think of with Trump. I mean, like, like I don't believe anything that he's saying. He lies constantly. He's just fucking rambling about how bad California is supposedly.
learned the hard way, the easy way. But when a tree is up, it sucks water. It's wet. I went to they had a couple of horrible forest fires in California, and I said, you know, you had a lot of trees standing. Yes, they were healthy trees, sir. I said,
Yeah, he also didn't give them any relief money. He delayed it politically.
with this intense heat, that you could see they were charred a little bit on the bottom, but they were going to be all right because they're soaking wet because they suck up the water, right? But when they fall,
Right.
they're like, you know, it's like lighting a match.
Yeah.
And you got to be able to clean. They call it maintain your forest. So I was
Yeah.
with the head of Austria. He said, you know, it's a shame. I see all those forest fires in California, and all they have to do is clean their forest, meaning rake it
I
up.
don't think it's that simple. I don't think that Trump has cracked the code on why there's forest fires in California.
Get rid of the leaves. Get rid of, you know, leaves that are sitting there for 5 years. And
We'll
they-
certainly
you
get
know,
rid of the dead fall.
and get rid of the trees that are falling.
Yeah.
That, you know, are like so many things. This country. By the way,
Could you
I
really
had
rake
it
the
all
whole
done.
forest, though? I don't think you could rake the whole
Well,
forest.
no, you could-
I think you can get rid of the dead fall, but raking all
You
the
could
leaves.
certainly get rid of the dead. Okay,
Yeah, I think that's the real issue
You know,
is the deadfall.
environmentally, they don't want to do that. They don't. They
I don't think any of this is true. What the fuck is he talking about? Like, there are laws against cutting down certain trees. He's just making shit up. I don't even understand what he's saying. like clean the forest. Like, yes, I understand. Like, there are generally like concepts of what you do is that you actually start small forest fires to clean up some of the debris in the forest so that it doesn't catch into big forest fires that become uncontrollable. But this idea that like California is engaging in like massively reckless behavior when it comes to their maintenance of their trees is just like ridiculous. It's a very hot place that sometimes they need to monitor their water consumption. I just don't understand. He's just lying to speak negatively about California.
He said, it's got to be nature and all this stuff. But in the meantime, this is exactly right. But you could have, so it was the Department of Commerce that needed the approvals, but Gavin Newsom had to sign them. I got it all done. Nobody could believe it. It was all done. I said, I got it. You got so much water. All you have to do is sign. And that guy didn't want to sign.
Did he not want to sign because that would be a political victory for you?
I think, no, he didn't. No, I don't think so. He used to say, he's a great president, and we got along. We did. We actually got along at that point. But I think somebody said, you just can't continue to call him a great president. They do say that. But we had it all done. He didn't sign, and then we got on to other things. And
what is he referring to? What? I don't even know what he's talking about. Like, what is he referring to where there was this magical bill that would have given California more water and Gavin Newsom said no?
Every time I go to
all I could see when I looked this up is that Trump threatens to hold disaster money for California. Like, what is he talking about?
California said, you have so much water. They don't know it. I'm telling you, people living in Beverly Hills, they turn off the water. Same thing with the electric. They want to go to all electric cars, but they have brownouts every weekend.
Well, right after they made the announcement that as of 2035, you're not going to be able to buy an internal combustion engine in California.
Yeah.
Like within a month, they had some announcement asking people to not charge their Teslas.
All right. So former President Donald Trump on Friday threatened to withhold. This is not this Friday. This is from earlier. His Gavin Newsom's position on water deliveries to farmers. What is he referring to?
Because the grid couldn't handle it. Well, how are you going to handle
I will terminate the mandate immediately. This
Good,
mandate.
thank you.
That will be.
Gavin Newsom is going to send these papers, Trump said, seemingly referencing 2020 federal decision to increase water deliveries by weakening endangered species rules that Newsom sued over. If he doesn't sign the paper, we won't give him the money to put out all the fires. If we don't give him the money to put the fires out, he's got problems. So apparently there are particular protocols in position that would have endangered certain economic or economic, what the fuck am I saying? Economic, environmental, that would have negative environmental outcomes. And Gavin Newsom said, like, we should not do that. So Trump was like, oh, well, then I'm not going to give you disaster relief. What the fuck? I don't understand. This is, like, it makes sense. We have to protect some of the environment. Different, like, there's ecological was the word I was looking for before. Like, we have to protect in the environment. We have to protect some of these species of animals as well, because it could drastically shift everything. It could drastically shift everything. That's why you try not to introduce new things into your atmosphere. Like, there's lanternflies around here. That's going to have negative impacts on our local, our local environment. Shit like that. Like, you don't want species to die because then other species might get inflated or deflated because those things that eat the one species aren't going to be there. It's a very complicated dance. Like, it makes sense. I don't understand.
Be done, I would say, in my first day, maybe 2 days, because
Let me ask you about nuclear. One of the things that when I've talked to people that have a real understanding of nuclear power, what their position is, it's probably the cleanest, safest form.
Yeah, it's probably
of electricity that we could.
It probably is. It's clean. It's not just, well, I mean, like, the cleanest form of electricity would probably be like solar, but it's also, you can. Jesus Christ, my wife's went downstairs. You could also get it in like high amounts. It's very efficient, right? And so it's probably a good thing to turn to, but people get scared of nuclear power. Thank you for the $5 from your mom's a cum slut. Hey, white daddy, hope you and white mommy are doing well. Thank you, I appreciate that. And somebody donated before. I don't know if I read it. Oh yeah, I did read it. Sorry. Okay.
Generate, and that the fears of nuclear power are really about a few disasters. The Fukushima, 3 Mile Island. These are old systems, and that they're much more capable now, and they're capable of making even better systems. But it's a difficult political issue because you think nuclear power, you think Chernobyl. That's what everybody does.
Well, I mean, not for nothing, but like, that's not even difficult politically. I would say that the people that would be most against nuclear power would be conservatives. Like, honestly, those people read as like the most afraid of that. So
they have this connection. There had the potential
or
disaster.
Fukushima, where you're not supposed to enter the land for 3,000 years or something.
I think it's worse than that. I think that area is like going to be radioactive for probably longer than you can imagine. But the point is, they're better at it now,
right? And
that they could do it now, and you can generate power in a way that you don't have to worry about these. One of the most ridiculous things is electric cars being powered by coal-fired plants. It's a ridiculous thing.
So what's happening?
Well, sure, but I would imagine that the electricity is still more economically or environmentally feasible. So, but like, yeah, for sure, we should try to get electricity from other means, like solar. So a big solar initiative is probably a great idea. But then again, there's like waste from like the batteries and stuff. There's a lot of stuff there. Thank you so much for this small gut from your mom's cum slut.
Yeah, that is what's happening. And people want to think they're being green, but it's
Well, if you look at the way the battery is made. But here's the other thing: we don't have.
Well, okay, just because. Okay, so it's about damage reduction, not about damage deletion. So electric vehicles are still better than gasoline, just to be clear. But okay.
Well, we do actually. It's being held. We have certain areas where we have great raw earth material, and we're not allowed to use it because of the environment. And we have areas in California that have incredible raw earth, and they're not allowing. And I'm going to open it up. I'm going to let them use it.
But how do you do that?
China.
How do you do that and protect?
Okay, so what's the reason why there is all this raw earth material? Like, why is it there? I'm assuming that it's there for a reason. Just getting rid of whatever protection sounds stupid as fuck.
Environment.
Because the environment's going to be protected. You can do it. You can make a lake out of it. Okay, we'll put back a lake. I mean, something nice about lakes. You can do things magnificently.
You just have to do it carefully and responsibly.
Absolutely.
Trump just doesn't do that, though. He doesn't do anything carefully or responsibly. He can't even hold rallies carefully and responsibly without calling for the fucking destruction of the government.
Do it carefully. But the problem, China has all of those areas, most of those areas. And yet, when they say go electric with the cars, China's going to be the one that gives us the cars. All of those guys in Detroit are going to be out of business. You're going to make your electric cars over there. We have a thing called gasoline, and we have more oil and gas under our feet than any other nation. I had, in Alaska, there's a find. It's called Anwar. I got it approved. Reagan couldn't get it. Nobody could get it. I got it all done. It was amazing. They were getting ready to start drilling. The equivalent, they think, of Saudi Arabia, one of the biggest finds in the world. It was all set to go.
Why do we need to do that right now? Wouldn't it make more sense to use, it doesn't make any sense to start drilling around here for absolutely no reason. We might as well hold on to that in the long term.
And Biden comes in, one of his first orders were, we're not going to use it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to not use it.
Would have been so good we could have supplied all of Asia with oil and gas.
Why would we need to do that? It's better for us to hold on to that. What?
And you talk about money,
right?
The negative was politically they didn't think it was good for them. That's all.
That's all it was. So you don't.
The negative is that it would be a stupid idea.
You think that it's environmentally dangerous?
Taking it from way down deep in the earth, environmentally would have been fine.
So it can be done.
I mean, first of all, I don't know if that's true because Trump is a dishonest person. But then on top of that, again, it's good to hold on to that for now. That makes a lot of sense.
Responsibly.
Absolutely. Oh, otherwise,
we're
let's
protect the environment.
Well, I think windmills. Okay, so they talk about windmills.
Point.
I think windmills are really disruptive. When you talk about the environment, they kill the birds.
They can be disruptive, absolutely. I mean, that's why I think it might make some sense to go into the direction of solar. Yeah, for sure.
See a bird cemetery? Go under a windmill someday that hasn't been cleaned out with all the bird carcasses.
Good, you could put some fucking rednecks down there and they can get something to eat. How's that sound?
You want a massive amount
Basically
of
also a massive eyesore. I went to a ranch in South Texas. We had to drive past this enormous windmill farm, and it's gross. It's dystopian. You're looking in the left and the right, and all you see is these big spinning machines that aren't even that effective at generating electricity.
Correct. Most expensive form of electricity is a windmill. And then they start to rust and rot.
And you have to
then they get
them?
abandoned by the people that built them.
Well, you have to get rid of all that material, too. When you replace those blades, now you have a problem because you have to dispose. Yeah. Right, you have to dispose these enormous windmills. And
by the way, they say you can't bury them. So I even question that, but I'm not going to get into it. But they say you...
Wait, do you want to bury them? That doesn't make any sense to me. What the fuck?
You can't bury them. So you have the blades, and you can't bury the blades. You can bury the blades. It's not going to matter. You can bury them. You'll find...
It doesn't make any... Why would you bury the blades? Wouldn't you want to repurpose it? They say you can't bury the blades, but you can. Why would you bury the blades? What the fuck?
Areas you can bury. But they come up... This is what I mean. They come up with this. But the environmentalist dream is windmills, everyone. You know what happens to them? After 5 years, they start to rot. After 10 years, you have to replace them. Did you ever look at certain parts of California where they have heavy windmills and they've been abandoned and they're all different manufacturers and all different companies? And I
haven't seen that.
It is the ugliest thing. It looks like a graveyard almost, a graveyard of windmills.
It's pollution.
It's so bad.
It's
and
no
in the
more,
oceans.
It's no
Yeah,
different.
it's just bury the pollution, guys.
Different than leaving garbage on the ground.
How about in New Jersey, off the coast of New Jersey, they want to build. The people are going crazy not to build them. But we have them. The whales are washing up on shore.
Right.
So in 50 years, they had one whale come ashore. Now they had like 18 come in the last year.
What is happening with the whales? I've read about this.
Well, they say that the wind drives them crazy. It's a vibration.
You've read about it. Why are you asking him about it then? I don't understand.
Because you have those, those things are 50-story buildings, some of them.
Right, and they're
50.
super sensitive to vibrations
They have
and
those,
sounds.
the wind is rushing, the things are blowing, it's a vibration, and it makes noise. You know what it is? I want to be a whale psychiatrist. It drives the whales freaking crazy. And
Yes.
something happens with them. But for whatever reason, they're getting
The
washed.
conversation could have been like, yeah, you know what? Nuclear power as well as solar is probably the best way to go in the future. Wind doesn't seem to be particularly productive, blah, blah, blah. Great. Good conversation.
Up on shore. And, and yet the environmentalists...
Conveniently ignored by the
but the
environmental people.
environmentalists, they don't talk about it.
Right.
I think there's nothing uglier. I see it in Scotland. I see it all over the world. you have this beautiful valley. It's been there for, in civilization, thousands of years, but millions of years. And all of a sudden you have these ugly windmills up.
Would your
And the
plan to be
environment-
replace that with nuclear? What would you do?
Well, nuclear is better. I mean, I think there's a little danger in nuclear, but, we had some really bad.
He can't say yes to nuclear because his audience is unhinged as fuck, and they'll like shit come and cry about it.
Nuclear. They did one in Alabama. They did one in, I think, South Carolina. They do them wrong. They build these massive things. Then the environmentalists get in.
He just wants to complain about environmentalists and not get any pushback, so he's not going to answer that question.
I don't want to go into a long story because it's too long for the show. This show is too valuable to talk about concrete. But they have hardened concrete. It's number 12 concrete. It's harder than steel. It's incredible. They put up a wall, and an inspector comes along and goes, nope, you're a quarter of an inch. The wall might be 8 feet wide. You're a quarter of an inch too short. I'm sorry, you got to rip down the wall. Because it's got to be poured contiguously, right? You're 1/4 of an inch. I'm sorry, rip down. You can't rip it down. This stuff you can't put a hammer through it. You can't. It's incredible. Concrete technology is unbelievable. What's happened? You think of concrete.
So you think that's an example of overregulation?
Yeah,
Pointless
well, you have an
overregulation.
inspector that comes along and he says, take down a $25 zillion wall. These things ended up costing $25 billion. And one of them never got opened. But here's the story. So France does it. France is largely nuclear. And they build small, little, compact plants. And if they need more, they build the same thing and they hook it up. And they hook it up because they get too big and too complex and too expensive. And it is very clean. They say it's absolutely. My uncle, I had a great uncle who was a great genius, just like
Jesus Christ.
other members of my family. But he was a professor at MIT for, I think, 41 years. He was the longest. When I was in the White House, the head of MIT, Princeton, and Harvard came down to meet me. And the MIT person said, I have a book on your uncle, Dr. John Trump. He was our longest-serving professor. He was a great genius, sir. Do you know how? And he knew everything about nuclear, from math to chemistry to nuclear. He knew it. And he said, someday it's going to be the way to go, but the problem is it's so dangerous in terms of war. He said,
Right.
Donald,
Thank you for $2 from Tinkle My Pinkle Hip Hop, a long-time viewer, first time enjoyer. Thank you. I appreciate that.
someday, this was a long time, Uncle John, Dr. John Trump, he said, someday you'll have a little satchel at your side and you'll go into a building and you'll be able to blow up New York City. I said, Uncle John, that'll never happen. He's right. He's right.
Well, that was part of the
power is so
problem with
crazy.
giving nuclear power to other countries, right? Like that was the problem that happened with India and Pakistan. They got nuclear power, and then they were able to weaponize it.
The biggest problem in the world today is not global warming. It's nuclear warming. And we have idiots that are negotiating for us. We have a guy that doesn't make it past 4 o'clock. And it's not because of age. I know so many guys in their late 80s, and they're better than... I said to one guy the other day, I think you're smarter than you were 25 years ago. I've known him a long time. He's 89 years old. He's sharp. He's great. Biden gives people a bad name because that's not an age. I think they say it because I'm 3 or 4 years younger. I think that's why they say it. They say his age. It's not his age.
Trump is already rambling like a fucking demon. I don't know what he's talking about. He's also old as shit.
He's
got a problem.
2 major brain
Operations,
surgeries.
yeah. He did. Those are not good operations.
And do you see what he did today? He went running towards the camera and made some apology to Native Americans, and he said that's why he's headed out west. Like he's off the reservation, so to speak.
Yeah, it's a good thing he's not running anymore, huh? The fuck? Jesus Christ.
For lack of a better term.
It's interesting because during the debate, I was looking
that's
over.
fine.
I'm saying, this is strange. It's just sort of like strange things were happening.
Yeah.
But
Well, he couldn't keep it together. But do you think they knew he couldn't keep it together?
I think
do you think
so.
that they wanted that? Is that why, like, historically, that debate was earlier than they've been in the past, right?
I think they wanted to. Well, there's a lot of theories. A lot of people said, do the debate now and we'll get him out.
Right.
I think that maybe could be.
Well, that is what happened.
But that's
So
what happened.
it's logical.
I think they
to
also
assume
said,
that's
do
what
the
they
debate now and get it over with.
Right.
I don't think anybody thought he was going to get out. Really, I don't
didn't
think
make any sense,
The
did it?
debate got him out, but I think it's very unfair. Look, you have a bad debate. His numbers went down, but I think she's not doing very well right now, and I think she looks.
Well, I want to get to that too because it's hard to know. Like the whole poll thing is very bizarre for most people because most people don't answer polls. So they read the polls and
Were
they're
you
like,
ever called
"Who's getting
from a
polled?"
poll?
I never did. I'd hang up.
I was never called by a poll.
If I did, I wouldn't answer. I'm busy.
You know how
I-
polls are done? I'm going to get myself in
Please.
trouble, but so I really don't believe too much in him. So
Well, 2016 taught a lot of people about the ineffective.
well, they were very
use of polls.
ineffective because
Yeah.
I thought I was doing well.
Not really.
I-
I mean, what really got Hillary Clinton is like, what was it? I forget all the specifics, but like that fucking lawyer decided to come out with the email shit again right before the election started. Was it James Comey or something? Forget all the specifics. And then they think James Comey like went back out like after Hillary for the emails like right then, and that twisted people's minds like very like right. That was a pretty big part of it as well.
To a place and I'd have 30, 40,000
For this conspiracy machine, it's weird how many things acted towards Trump's favor.
people. Hillary would go, they have 500 people, and they tell me I'm going to lose. I said, why am I going to lose? I had 40,000 people. She had 200 people. But, I have a theory.
Thank you for $2 from Jay. Just got off work. This is a circle jerk. Hell yeah. Actually, he said this is a circle jelk, like jelking my penor.
These pollsters, they charge you a lot of money, too. They charge you $500,000 to do some stupid poll, and they interview like 251 people. I don't think they interview in many cases. I don't want to get myself in too much
You
trouble.
think it's
'cause-
bullshit?
No, I think they sit there, they make a deal, they get $500,000, and they say, Trump's leading 51-49. They announce it, and everybody says, oh. Do you understand?
Yeah. So you
I
think
don't think they.
Oh, he admits that later in the interview that Comey was a big reason why he won.
I think in a lot. Look, I'm a
That's
very
funny.
common sense person. I think that
Yeah, incorrect.
they probably don't always poll. Some of them probably never poll. What's the difference between 49 to 51 and 47 and a half?
Well, it's also a tiny percentage of the population. I don't think it's representative of the overall population. I just don't think
I don't
it
know
is.
of one person in my whole life that ever got called by a pollster.
Exactly. That's my point. So
Okay.
here's my question.
But I shouldn't say that because I'm doing very, really well in
I
the
appear in the Oompaville video about Wore T-shirts. Oh, cool. Maybe I'll take a look at that later.
polls.
But I
now.
think that's-
so. This week I happen to believe in a verse. I only believe them if they're good. No, I like them this month. But no, I honestly believe that there's probably a lot of fraud. I had a poll, Washington Post, ABC,
A lot of fraud in the poll. Holy fuck.
in the Hillary thing.
Why would it be fraud? It could be inaccurate without having to be fraud. That's fucking insane.
Wisconsin. They had me down 17 points the day before the election. I knew it was wrong because I had a rally. I had 29,000 people at a racetrack, and it was like 0 degrees, Wisconsin. And they had me down 17 points. In other words, you had no chance. And I won. And I called up my pollster, who's a good guy, good guy, and I believe he's legitimate. And and some of them aren't, some of them aren't. I said, "Tell me, why did they have me down so much? I mean, nobody's going to believe them."
And I don't even know if this story is true, but if it is, an inaccurate projection. Like sometimes that's just going to happen when they project things.
The next time they said they don't care. When you're down 17 points, people are going to stay home. They're not going to vote.
Right.
Polls are probably generally decently accurate, but like there's probably some things that are just not going to be accurate. Like it's a projection, right? Like that's the idea. Doesn't mean it's perfect, but it's a projection.
Because they're going to say, "I love Trump, but I'm not going to waste my time. It's cold out." I said, "But what do they make at 4 or 5?" He said, "At 4 or 5, they're going to go and vote. At 17, they're not going to go and vote."
So
But
it's
think of it. I was
manipulative.
this is a Washington Post ABC poll. I was down 17 points in Wisconsin, and I won. It's crooked stuff.
There's a lot of crooked stuff. And I wanted to
How is it crooked? You won. Like it's not crooked. I don't understand unless the idea is that it's crooked because those polls are supposed to, like some people look at those polls and go, oh, that person's probably going to win. I might as well hive mind to vote for them. I don't understand how it'd be crooked. Like you still won, so it's not crooked. It was just an inaccurate poll.
talk about that too, because one of the things that people talk
There's
about
probably some kind of outside factor that wasn't accounted for.
with you is the denial of the results. And I think J.D. Vance did a brilliant job the other day when he was being interviewed, and they asked him, did Trump lose the 2020 election? And he turned it around and said, was there legitimate election interference in suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story on social media? And was that a concerted effort?
Well, they say
to
they
hide-
I don't really give a shit about the Hunter Biden laptop story, which was just Hunter Biden doing cocaine and buying prostitutes and showing his dick off. I don't really give a shit, and I don't compare that to trying to overthrow the election. I don't care. It's fucking ridiculous.
point difference, and I lost by one tenth of a point.
Well, it is-
They say it was 22,000 votes, but look, it was much more than that. And I appreciate J.D. Vance saying that. And by the way, I think he was a great pick. Do you like J.D. as a
I like
pick?
him a lot, yeah.
You're allowed
Isn't that the guy who like hated you until you decided to choose him because you have no one else that wants to be your fucking vice president?
to say that.
No, I do. I like him
No,
a
I
lot.
think he's
I think he's a brilliant guy, and I think his
He
ability.
seems to be a pretty like a smooth guy, a decent talker too. It's a shame that he's running with Trump, a fucking liar and an
to
insurrectionist.
talk like a normal human being. You did my friend Theo Vaughn's podcast,
Right.
and he just did it.
How did he do
He
with
did
it?
great. He just talks
Is that
like
why
a
you
normal
called me
human
to
being.
do this? Is that why you called me to do this?
No. I was.
He was a nice
once they
guy.
shot you, I was like, he's got to come in here. It's all about timing. It's all about the timing.
Timing's
I think
good.
timing's perfect. Do you even have a scar on your ear? You got anything on there?
I do.
Let me see. What do you got there?
So right over here.
Oh, it's a tiny little
See,
mark.
it zicked right there.
Yeah. It healed up pretty fucking good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, it's little. It's not like some of the wrestlers, some of the UFC fighters.
No, you didn't
It's
get
a little bit.
cauliflower
No. It was sort of like a top shot. Mm-hmm. The point of the bullet was a little of the ass, but you see the thing's taken off a little bit.
You for the 23-month medium guy from Triforce Bit. Incredible. That's what I'm saying, brother. Definitely incredible.
But it makes me a tougher guy. The fighters. The fighters love their. Bo Nickel. He's a great
Yeah, I
fighter.
love Bo Nickel.
How's he going to do? I think he's
He's
terrific.
great. He's a fantastic.
He was
fighter.
almost like undefeated in college.
He's a fantastic wrestler and one of the best mixed martial
When is
artists.
he fighting again?
He's fighting in Madison Square Garden in November.
Oh, that's going to be after the election.
Yep.
So I'll either go as president or I'll be depressed and I won't bother going. I think they're having a fight right now.
One of the things that was fascinating.
Oh, I didn't think that you would ever admit to fucking that you lost. I thought that you were just going to commit to it.
Also was the denial of the election results is a pretty common thing. Hillary Clinton famously denied
Oh my God.
that
Yeah.
she called you an illegitimate president, and she said that Russia put you in place.
Even though she conceded.
Dude, so first of all, it was a fact that like Russia had an impact on Trump getting the presidency. Okay, this is just a fact. Doesn't mean that Trump worked with them, but like literally we found this out. Number one. Number two, it's okay to say you're not really the president. Trump didn't just contest it. He went to these courts, and every single one of them, like what is it, 24 different courts rejected him. Said like you have no fucking proof of any widespread voter fraud that had any impact on the election. And then after that, he decided to fucking attack the January. He fucking called for people on January 6th to attack the Capitol building. And when they were doing it, instead of calling in the National Guard to stop it, He was on the phone trying to delay the election and try to delay the vote and get faulty electors to take over. What are you talking about? These aren't the same things. To even say that they're comparable is just like Joe Rogan is just like a fucking Trump cum guzzler. This is so pathetic from Joe Rogan.
Yes.
You know, she conceded the night of the election because she was beaten.
Yes, and it was a thing that was pretty common for people, especially Democrats, that deny the elections. There's been many of them. The Bush administration, the
but
the
that one
Chads.
it made sense in the Bush administration because there was a huge fucking issue with the way that Florida counted their votes. That's a totally different situation, and it went on for so long because there was actually credible evidence that things were kind of fucked up. And then Gore, what did he do? He said, "Oh, I lost once the Supreme Court said so." Like he took the L. What are you talking about?
I mean, all that stuff.
Well, look at these guys in Congress. All these sleazebags in Congress that are Democrats, they're still denying 2016. But now they don't so much because, they try and pin it on me. You don't hear them say,
But here's my
they
point.
denied it
Oh
right
my
up until
God.
the end.
My point is-
here's my point. You're an idiot,
This
Joe.
idea of election fraud is a forbidden topic, and you get
That's not the idea. It's no problem that he said that there was election fraud. The problem was that after he got a no from every single court, conservative or otherwise, he fucking tried to overthrow the government. Oh, we
labeled
lost 64 court cases. Sorry, that's what I say, 26.
an election denied. It's like being labeled an anti-vaxxer if you question some of the health consequences that people have from the COVID-19 shots. Oh my God, you're an anti-vaxxer. If you say, and what I say publicly, and I've said this a lot, it's not 0%. So if you ask me what is the amount of election fraud in this country, is it 0%? No one thinks it's 0%.
No, but there was no impact on the last election.
I've never met one person.
There is sometimes voter fraud on both sides, but it's not enough to shift the outcome of the election.
Not a super liberal, progressive, far left person or a right wing conservative. Not one person thinks it's 0%. They think when you have human beings, and also you have a lot of weirdness that was going on during the 2020 elections, particularly with mail-in ballots.
And you had legislatures that had to approve, and they didn't approve, and they went out and did it anyway. And you had old-fashioned ballot screwing. I mean, you have people going up and dropping in phony votes. You had unsigned ballots, et cetera, et cetera.
There's certain people that
Remember,
think that they have. And
Okay.
the rhetoric is also that you're Hitler, and that
Yeah, because he tried to overthrow the government. Holy fuck.
in order to stop Hitler, you have to do
Give
whatever
the $2 in the unknown drinks. Watch out for E. coli in the McDonald's burgers. True.
it takes.
That was okay, yeah.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, you're hearing this now. Kamala compared you to, said your love of Hitler yesterday.
Kamala's a very low IQ person. She's a very low IQ. I'm for taking tests, too. I think anybody that runs for president they should give them tests. And it's not an age thing. It's not based. If you look back on history, 70s and 80s, some of your greatest leaders in the world history, long-time world history,
Jesus Christ.
they were in their 70s and their 80s. But I think you should take cognitive tests. I think they say it's unconstitutional. But I think Kamala should have a test because there's something missing. There's something wrong with her.
Well, I think it's pressure. I think the pressure and the scrutiny. You've been a celebrity for a long time, and you understand what this is like. But for someone who's in her late 40s, who becomes the vice president, who runs for president, becomes the vice president, and then all of a sudden the weight of the world is on your shoulders, and there's all these people paying. A lot of people clam up.
But you either have it or you don't.
What the fuck are you
Correct.
talking about? Trying to overthrow the government.
Look, this is an interview.
Oh my God.
We've covered a lot of territory, right? And it's fine. I don't care. I want to. I think it's much more interesting. To do an interview with Anderson Cooper, a crazy softball interview. She took 2 days off and she studied all day long, and then she comes out with a result that was a real embarrassment. That was a really bad interview. She couldn't answer a question, and every question's not answered. I mean, like, what would you do your first day in office? Okay, I'll build a wall. I won't build a wall. There's 100 things you can say. Just say anything, right? There's something off with her.
Well, I also
we're dealing with the smartest people. They hate when I say, when I call President Xi, they said, he called President Xi brilliant. Well, he's a brilliant guy. He controls 1.4 billion people with an iron fist. I mean, he's a brilliant guy, whether you like it or not.
Wait, who are we talking about?
Well, I also
We're dealing with the smartest people. They hate when I say, when I call President Xi, they said, he called President Xi brilliant. Well, he's a brilliant guy. He controls 1.4 billion people with an iron fist. I mean, he's a brilliant guy, whether you
He's a dictator. What? Was he a brilliant guy? China and Russia are running dictatorships. What? Why are you glazing them so hard?
like it or not. And they go crazy.
Right.
Say,
It doesn't mean he's not evil, or it doesn't mean he's not.
Yeah,
I find it so funny when Trump sits here and talks about how Kamala Harris is getting fucking softball interviews when every single mainstream media interview he gets is softballs. Nobody pushes him on insurrecting the government ever. It's pathetic
of course not.
Dangerous.
because he won't take them if that happens. And she's been getting pressed in different interviews. There was some fucking black guy, I don't remember the specifics, but that was pressing her, which they should press her. But Trump gets fucking special baby treatment.
But actually, we have evil people in our country.
Yes.
If you have a smart president, he can deal with Russia. He can deal with all of it. Russia would have never gone into Ukraine if I were president.
Yeah, because you would have fucking folded and you wouldn't have actually given Ukraine any means to help fight back against Russia.
How would you have stopped it?
Automatic, two things. I told him. I said, Vladimir, you're not going in. I used to talk to him all the time. You're not going in. I can't tell you what I told him because I think it would be inappropriate, but someday he'll tell you. But he would have never gone in. But you know why else he wouldn't have gone in? Oil prices at $40 a barrel wouldn't have allowed him, wouldn't have given him the money to prosecute that war, wouldn't have given him the money. I said it with I was with President Xi. I said it was almost the same conversation. With Vladimir, it was Moscow. With President Xi, it was Beijing. It was almost the exact same conversation. I said, don't do it. He would have never done it. The day I left, they flew 28 bombers over the middle of Taiwan. 28 bombers. And it's the apple of his eye, and the same thing with Russia. It's the apple. Ukraine is the apple of his eye. I used to talk to him. I had a very good relationship with him. He wouldn't have done it. He would have never done it. But he also wouldn't have done it because of the. You know, one of the reasons that what happened is, number one, he doesn't respect Biden at all, not even a little bit. And who the hell would? But he doesn't respect him. But when he saw what happened in Afghanistan, how horribly that was handled. Number one, you take the soldiers out last, not first. Okay, that was it.
I mean, number one, this was the pullout plan was your plan, so could have been executed better, but it was your plan. Let's just be clear. But okay,
big mistake. And we had that thing charted out, and they weren't obeying us. They weren't. Abdul is the head of the Taliban. Boom, boom. He had to do all these things. Some he didn't do. I said, nope, you're not doing. You got to do them all. This guy he immediately took all. He left the equipment behind. 13 soldiers did, but he took everybody out. He took his soldiers out before. A child would know. That's where Milley was so stupid. He was such a stupid guy, Milley. Okay, those generals should have all been fired. The people that were involved with Afghanistan should have all been fired. Then they'd be writing books about him, how stupid he was and bad he was. But you take your soldiers out last. I had a big rally, and I saw a child in the front row about a year and a half ago, and I called the child up. I said, do you mind if I borrow your child? Oh, yes, please. And they came up, kids 5 years. I gave them quick details, you know. I said, we want to get out of this place, and we have this, and we have this, and we have the equipment. I gave them a little thing. I said, do you take your soldiers out first or last after everything's done? You take them out last, sir. A child would know that. We took our soldiers out first.
What was your plan?
And we left Bagram.
Well, not only that, we left billions of dollars worth of equipment and military vehicles that they use for parades now.
The best equipment, to embarrass us, the best equipment in the world.
The Taliban parade where they've got tanks rolling down the streets and Blackhawks flying is the craziest thing I've ever seen.
We left
all that stuff there.
The best equipment in the world behind.
What would you have done differently?
Well, number one.
that was his pullout plan. There's nothing he would have done differently because that was his plan to pull out. He got lucky he didn't become president because people would have realized he was a fucking like a nut job.
We would have taken it out. Just so you just go back a little bit further. I had a couple of conversations with Abdul. And from the time I had those conversations, because they were shooting our soldiers, you know, with the sniper stuff, they were shooting a lot of them. They were shooting a lot with Obama, much less with me, but they were shooting them. And I said, get this guy on the phone. The press went nuts when they heard this. I had a great conversation with him. It was a tough conversation. 18 months later, there wasn't one soldier that was ever shot at. And even Biden admitted it in a moment of stupidity because he shouldn't admit it. His people went nuts. He said, yeah, well, I will admit, no soldier. We didn't have a soldier killed in 18 months in Afghanistan. Not one soldier was killed because he understood what was going to happen if that happened. I didn't have one soldier. Then when I left, after having gotten more votes than any sitting president in the history of the country and much more votes than I got in 2016.
Yeah, I love how he will sit here and talk about how he got all these votes, but the reason he got them is because people could vote for a whole week and mail in ballots. So like he will sit here and say like, oh no, there was fraud, yada yada yada, because of the mail in ballots. But then the only reason that because of COVID, then the only reason that you got these votes was because of COVID and mail in ballots and people able to vote for a week instead of just a day. So you can't really have it both ways.
When I left, they started shooting our soldiers. But more importantly, what they did is they did that whole thing with, leaving. He shouldn't have left. Number one, should have left from Bagram because Bagram's this massive base. It's got tremendous acreage around it. Tremendous.
Dude, this was your pullout plan, bud. I don't know what you're talking.
Very big. It was built many years ago. And part of the reason you wouldn't have taken that is because it goes to China. 1 hour from where China makes its nuclear missiles. You should have never left Bagram. Number one, they should have left from Bagram. They should have left last. They should have got, we have Americans that are still there. They should have taken all their equipment out. Everything, every plane, every screw should have been taken out, every tent. And I said that's when I realized that Milley was a dummy. I said,
I mean, listen, I don't really
get everything.
I don't really know the specifics. Is there a reason they left some of the shit there? Like, is some of it just too financially burdenous to like take out in the first place? I have no idea how any of this works.
Sir, it's cheaper to leave it. I said, what do you mean
cheaper to leave
Yeah,
it?
he said it's cheaper to leave it. That was
cheaper.
Oh, well, that makes sense. I mean, you shouldn't leave it because then it gives our enemies access to like our military infrastructure. But I mean, I guess that makes sense.
Cheaper. He said it's cheaper. Sir,
Not more dangerous.
He just said cheaper. I said, I want every plane. I want every tank. I want the goggles. They have night goggles. They have all this stuff that these guys now have. He said, sir, it's cheaper to get out and leave it. I said, so you think it's cheaper to leave a $150 million brand new airplane in there?
So just to be absolutely clear, I want to be very clear again. This is Trump's pullout plan that Biden engaged in. So we sit here and like, if you want to criticize the execution, that's fine. But like the details of what was left behind was because of Trump. So, okay.
Than it is to fly it out with a tank.
So it sounds like they listen to military professionals and say like, listen, it's more economically feasible to leave stuff there. Again, there are issues with that. Of course, like I said before, giving our enemies access to some of our military infrastructure. I understand that. Not a good thing. But this was your pullout plan.
Of jet fuel and put it in Pakistan or just fly it directly back. It's cheaper to live. I said, this guy's nuts. I'm telling you, he was so stupid. He was so unwise. He was like an unwise
It was your pullout plan.
man. And there were a number of them. But I defeated ISIS with the greatest generals. I had a guy
I believe that was the Afghan government's equipment the U.S. sold them. Oh, did we sell some of their stuff on the way out? I mean, that would kind of make sense too.
It was so great. I flew to Iraq, and I met the real generals, not these idiots that we deal with. And we
could not
knocked out,
find
I
this
defeated
stuff.
100% of the ISIS caliphate. They said it would take 5 years. I did it in a matter of literally a few weeks. And we hit them hard. And he said, so we're going to hit him here, we're going to hit him there, we're going to hit him here, there. And I said, this guy's great. I like this guy. I was told it would take 5 years. That's why I went. I said, how could it take 5 years? We have brand new fighters. We have the best planes, the best weapons, the best guns, the best bombs. How could it possibly take that long? And I flew in, left at 3 o'clock in the morning. Nobody knew I was going. I got on Air Force One and we started
I
flying.
don't know why he keeps getting where this 5-year thing from. Like he's just making this up. It's like that was going to take 5 years.
And when we reached about half an hour away from Iraq, that was where the airport was, big airport, about a half an hour away, they said, sir, I'm sorry, you'll have to turn off all your lights. Why? We're getting close to our site, our land. I said, you mean we spent $8 trillion and we can't leave the lights? So think of this, 20 years, $8 trillion and we can't leave the lights on in a plane. I said, that's okay, turn the lights on. I'm not going to fight them. That's
Well, this is because it's too dangerous?
Yeah, too dangerous, because they see the light up in the air
shoot
and
at
they'll
it.
shoot at it, you know? So I said, turn the lights off. Then they said, sir, we're going to also pull your shades off. That's okay. So that's okay. The plane was pitch black, all the lights out.
What the fuck are we talking about?
You know, the blinking, they call them the blinking reds. They were all turned off. And I like to sit with pilots a lot of times, and these guys are specimens. I always say they're better looking than Tom Cruise, okay? And they're even taller, like perfect specimens. These guys, like for a fighter, you know, you have some guys that are perfect specimens. These
Right.
guys- and, you know, they pick the best pilots in the Air Force, United States Air Force, to fly Air Force One. And I get up there, and I'm sitting, and I'm feeling my way up. You know, it's up on the 747, so you go through the stairs, but I sort of knew my way up. There wasn't a light in the plane. I'm saying, can you imagine? We spent trillions of dollars, and we're trying to fly in blind. But I got into the plane. The cockpit is dark black, little tiny light. You could see the pilot, a perfect-looking human being. His co-pilot, everybody was perfect. They were all like movie stars. You know, it's like I could have cast a movie with these guys, and nobody would believe it because they were too good-looking. So I said, how are we doing, Captain? Sir, we'll be landing in 10 minutes. And I look outside. There's not a light. And I'm saying, you know, I've landed a lot of planes. And you see like little lights at least. There's nothing. It's just pure desert. And I said, okay, Captain, good. But I'm looking. Now you've been in many planes where it has the computer sign saying 1,000 feet. Nine, goes 1,900. 800. It's a computer voice, but it sounds like, but it's an incredible voice. 700. I said, Captain, are we okay? I'm looking. Are we okay, Captain? There's no lights. And I'm looking, you know, normally when you land a plane, because I sit with pilots a lot, I think it's great. I think it's a great profession, everything. They're incredible. These machines are incredible. He said, sir, we're fine. No problem, sir. I said, you know, I don't see the lights up there, Captain. Sure, we're okay. You know, so, I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit. You know, problem with exaggerating, they'll tell the story. They'll say Trump was a coward. So I'm sitting with him, he goes, 500. And I'm telling you, there wasn't a light on the runway, nothing. And we're going in. You okay, Captain? Everything good? Yes, sir. No problem. We'll be down in about 1 minute, sir. And I'm telling you, Joe, you know, there's always a light. There's not a little pin. And all of a sudden, psh, and you hear, wah, wah, perfect landing like glass.
Thank you for the King Gut. Thank you so much from Trowa Jakurid. Am I saying that right, dude? There's no way I said that right. Trowa Jakurid? Dude, tell me your name, please. Tell me your name, please. Tell me how to pronounce that.
That's how good. I mean, these guys, between the equipment and it's genius. It's pure. It was so dark, you couldn't see a thing. There was no runway. You wouldn't know where the hell you are. You're in the middle of a desert. And then I got out of the plane. I said, thank you, Captain. That's a great job. And then I got out of the plane, and I'm going down, and I see a general and another general. And I see a staff sergeant, a drill sergeant, and various guys, all central casting. Central casting. They said, sir, would you like to rest? I said, I don't want to rest. I want to figure out what the hell are we doing with ISIS. I'm hearing we can't. It's going to take years. No, sir, we can do it very quickly, sir. And anyway, we go into the room. I mean, Biden would have taken a nap for 4 days and then left without
Jesus Christ. How can you get through a fucking story?
So we go into the room, and they have these guys.
Troa correct. Jackard. Troa Jackard. Okay, I got Troa correct. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Say, how long can you do it? How long?
Thank you again for the King God, brother. That's incredible.
Do it in a couple of weeks, sir. I said, wait a minute. They told me 5 years. We can do it in, I don't know, he gave me a number like in no time. I said, why?
I wonder what
haven't
Trump
you done
sounds like in normal speed, just for a moment.
it? Because the orders came in from Washington, sir, and they would come here and tell us what to do. Don't you challenge us? We're not allowed to do that, sir. That's not the military way. They tell us what to do, and we have to respect them.
So do you think that it was incompetence why they didn't go after ISIS?
I think it's a bad system. You know, when Mattis goes there or when Milley goes there who's stupid, and they tell these guys that are actually smart what to do, and the guys that are smart are saying, we don't like what they're doing, but they're not allowed to sort of counteract. Plus, the guys that went there are arrogant. You know, they're arrogant fools. They're like stupid fools. The way they pulled out of, the way they, as an example, the way they pulled out of Afghanistan with the people falling off the planes. It was worse than Vietnam with the helicopters falling. It was so bad. There was no reason for it. Anyway, so we knocked them out. And, I mean, we have great military. We have great people. But not the television guys. And I rebuilt the military, and then they gave a chunk of it. Now, you have to tell, as much as it is, it's a tiny little piece. Believe it or not, we have an unbelievable. I rebuilt the military. I rebuilt our.
He didn't rebuild the military. He gave unnecessary increase in military spending that we did not need and nobody ever called for.
Nuclear. And in a way, I hated to redo it, but I got to realize how powerful that nuclear is, Joe. One bomb, Israel is gone, but forget. One bomb could take out the entire East Coast. It's so bad. And I watch these poor fools talking about our oceans will rise 1/8 of an inch over the next 500 years. I mean, we have people, we have countries. Right now, you have 5 countries. And don't underestimate North. If you take a look at North Korea, I was there. I mean, I was with Kim Jong. I had a great relationship. I got along great with him. You know, the press, she got along great. That's a good thing.
You got along great with him, and you did nothing. You wasted time, energy, and effort trying to fucking suck off Kim Jong-un, and it didn't go anywhere. So that was another one of your failures.
It's not a bad thing. It's a great thing. Obama thought...
Love your streams recently, man. Thank you. I appreciate that, brother. I really do. Thank you.
We're going to go to war with North Korea. When I met with Obama just prior to the...
We would have never have gone to war with North Korea. North Korea can't go to war with us. They're literally a nothing. They're pathetic.
Takeoff. You know, you meet, you have a sort of a ceremonial meeting. But it lasted a long time, a lot longer than it was supposed to last. I said, what's the biggest problem? He said, North Korea. By the time I finished, we had no problem with North Korea. We were really... It was a little tough at the beginning, remember?
Mm-hmm. What problem did we ever meaningfully have with North Korea? Like, what are you talking about? What the hell are you on about?
He said, I have a red button on my desk. I said, I have a red button also, but mine's bigger than yours and mine works.
I liked how you called him Little Rocket Man.
I said, yeah, Little Rocket. I said, Little Rocket Man, you're going to burn in hell. And it was a rough, so rough that people were worried. This is crazy. And then one day I got a call.
Who was worried?
Sort of like a fight. I got a call. You know, you ever see one of that pounding, then all of a sudden, but I got a call. And it was from him, meaning his people. They wanted to meet. They wouldn't meet Obama. He tried to meet. They wouldn't even talk to him about it. And I think he expected to go to war. I actually do. I believe he expected to go.
What war would we have ever gone? So not for nothing, but North Korea is like a little bitch boy area that's basically controlled by China. Like they're under Chinese protection. There was no war we would have gone to with North Korea. They're worthless. What are you talking about? They're a joke.
And we checked their nuclear stockpile. It is substantial. I mean, it's not. I said, you do anything? I got to know him very well. I got to know him better than anybody. He's
got really
and I said,
nothing.
You don't do anything else. Why don't you go take it easy and relax? Go to the beach. You have beautiful beach, nice beachfront property. You know, kiddingly. I said, You're always building nuclear. Just relax. You don't have to do it. Let's build some condos on your shoreline. They actually have gorgeous stuff. And he said, I just have to do it because I need it for my safety, etc. I got to know him very well. We had no problem with him. If you have a smart problem, you
should have a problem with this. This is somebody who like killed his like fucking uncle so that he can contest him politically. Like you should probably have a problem with this guy. But okay.
Really, the right president, the smart president, you're not going to have a problem. And I say it to people. We have a bigger problem, in my opinion, with the enemy from within. And it drives them crazy when I use that term. But we have an...
well, it's because you're pushing divisiveness and like a fucking some kind of a conspiracy theory that like other Americans are enemies while guzzling the cum of every other fucking country. So
enemy from within. We have people that are really bad people that I really think want to make this country unsuccessful. When you
try to overthrow the government, so I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
What's happening at our border, Joe, when you have people coming in that when other countries are allowed to empty their prisons into our country with murderers, we had 13,099 murderers.
So then why didn't you sign the infrastructure bill that was ready to go? The Republican introduced infrastructure bill when you were president. Why'd you pass on that? If it's such a big problem, why didn't you do something about it? Trump hasn't done anything. He's the problem. He's sitting here playing pretend.
Dropped in our country over the last 3 years.
And 15,000 rapists convicted.
Rapists?
Yeah.
Drug dealers? Drug lords?
So why didn't you do anything about it when you were president? I don't understand. You knocked the bill down.
That's the ones that have been accounted for.
Correct. People from mental institutions.
What do you think the strategy is?
Hundreds of thousands of major criminals, tougher and worse than anybody we have.
We're seeing the consequences of it in San Antonio. They've taken over apartment buildings. In Aurora, Colorado, they've taken over apartment buildings. These Venezuelan gangs.
Just the beginning.
Yeah, it's definitely a problem, and there needs to be something done about it. But why didn't you do anything about it? I mean, why is Biden needs to do more about it? He finally did implement a pretty strict border, border wall shit. But why didn't Trump do anything about it? He doesn't believe this is a problem. I mean, my question is, why didn't Biden do anything? Why didn't Biden try to pass the same bill? I have no idea why. But like, I don't understand. Like, Trump pretends that he cares about the border, but he doesn't. He wants this to happen so that he can run again.
What do you think the strategy is? You know, one of the things that they've said is that you stopped a bill from being passed. But didn't
thank God, yes.
That bill also include amnesty for the people that are already here?
Joe, this is years after the fact. The damage was already done.
Who cares? Who cares if there were concessions inside of the bill? First of all, it makes sense to give amnesty to people who are already here because they're part of our economy. You can't just kick out all the fucking illegal immigrants here. It's going to hurt our economy, unironically, whether you like it or not. Second of all, it was Republican-backed and Trump squashed it. He pressured Republicans to not go along with the bill that they were ready to go along with. It's called a compromise. Who gives a shit if it wasn't perfect? I keep hearing like, well, it wasn't perfect. Are you all children? Are you all fucking children that don't know how to engage with different, like, with any of these policies? Like, you're a child. Trump literally did it so that he could run on the border. It had nothing to do with any negative he thought. Congress had already settled this out. They were already working this out. They were ready to go for this bill, and he decided to push it out to say, no, fuck that, because he wanted to run on it. It has nothing to do with any. There's never been like, yeah, I squashed it because A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z. He just ignores it.
But what was the bill?
Well, the bill was nothing.
with
It
the
allowed
bill?
2 million people in. They were going to get amnesty. It was a horrible bill. It didn't protect us at all.
But we should just tell people what the strategy is. So one of the things
Well,
that's
I'll
been
tell you
very,
what their strategy
one of the things that's been very clear is that they've moved a large percentage of these migrants that are coming across the border illegally. They've moved them to swing states. Like, this is what's going on with Springfield, Ohio, right?
They're in swing states. Well, that's not a swing state. I'm going to win Ohio by a lot. So that's not a swing. But it's called Springfield, Ohio, to be exact. And
Yeah.
Springfield, Ohio is this very nice community of 52,000 people that just had 32,000 migrants that don't speak the language dropped into their community. You can't get into a hospital. You can't get into a school. It's gone from a beautiful little place to a horror show. And the mayor is a nice guy. And the mayor says, we're looking for interpreters. I said, no. You've got to remove them and bring them back to their country. Mostly Haitians in this case, but they speak no language. They speak no
English. You mean?
In fact, even the language they do speak, they can't get interpreters. They can't do anything. And the mayor's trying to be politically correct. They're all trying to be. In Aurora, Colorado, you have the worst, probably the worst gang. MS-13 might even be. Those two are the worst gangs. These are Venezuela gangs. They have taken over apartment complexes, and they're going to want to take over the whole thing. And you have a weak governor, pathetic governor, who's a radical left Democrat. He doesn't know what the hell to do. But you have it in many other communities, but they don't like.
I mean, listen, there might be some level of truth to this. How are you supposed to trust Trump based on him trying to, insurrect the government?
To talk about it because it's bad for the community to talk about it. These people have been let in here by this imbecile.
Nobody was let in here. Just to be clear, there was a big backlog of people who wanted to come over, but because of COVID, the border was shut down, and now they have the opportunity to come in. That doesn't make it right what's going on. I'm just saying that this has nothing to do with his massive conspiracy that he wants to push.
And I mean it. She's a low IQ person. Low IQ.
Right, but it's obviously not just her. There's a strategy that's involved in letting these people in.
She was in charge of the border.
Well, she's in charge of the border, but they also they utilize that app. The app that used to be used. It used to be used, I think, essentially, wasn't it for shipping? Wasn't it when people were in this country?
It was used for shipping. And
it's an app that expedites the process. And if anything, when we keep talking negatively about this app, so basically there's this app that exists that helps you seek asylum in countries, which is your legal right to do if you feel like you are justified in it. Now, under the bill that Trump shot down, that asylum seeking process would be expedited. So if you had an unlawful claim to be able to seek asylum, you'd be knocked out of the country quicker and easier because, again, the process was expedited, which I think is a great idea. Okay, the app is a positive thing, specifically because right now one of the things that gangs will do is they'll take a bunch of people that want to seek asylum and they'll dump them at the border, and then the Border Patrol agents are distracted with these people and processing them while the gangs are able to go across the border. If you provide the app, which it helps you not have to go to the actual border to be able to start the asylum seeking process, that will reduce the gang's ability to dump people there and clog up our infrastructure. So it's like you guys don't really know what the fuck you're talking about.
And now it's used to deal with the cartels. The cartel, heads of the cartel, rich people, by the way, these are loaded. These people have so much money. They would call up, think of this, they call up the app, and the app tells them where they should take their load of illegal migrants from the Congo. We have a lot from the Congo, prisons in the Congo.
Where to go? What are you talking about? This is like well known where you dump them. You just there isn't where to go. This is not even true. This is not true about the app.
I made a little bit of a sarcastic joke. A man named Dana White, who you love, who I love. I assume you love him. I think he's in a class by him.
He's probably the reason why you're here.
I don't know, maybe.
He's one of the big ones.
He is the greatest guy.
I
always say nobody's indispensable. Everybody can be replaced. Maybe you can't be. You might not be. But Dana White, truly, I don't think. The things he sold it for $4 billion. I said, what the hell? Who the hell is going to pay $4 billion? And they made like a great deal.
It's
because of him.
Hey, they used so much for the small guy. 12 months from Brion. What's going on, brother? It's fucking 1 year, baby.
Came out. I think it's a whole different.
No, he's the best.
And he's also the
of all time.
greatest guy. He spoke at the whole thing with I had just been shot, and he got up and he spoke so better than anybody. I mean, who would be better to introduce you? I asked of all the people, and I know the biggest people in the world, and they all would have loved to have done it. I said, Dana, would you do it? It was interesting. He was away. And he said to the people that, one of my guys called, he said, I won't be able to do it. I just left with my wife and family. I said, he said, no, yeah. I was a little surprised, even though I knew he was very far away. He was in someplace, and he deserved it with his family, the whole thing. And then I said, all right, and so we're looking who we're going to get. And all of a sudden she comes in. Sir Dana White just said he's going to do it, and he's coming back in tonight. He's taking it. You know, the guy is just an incredible guy, and he's like a tough champion, but loyal. Yeah, he's got to be one of your favorite people. He's one of my favorite
I love him to
people.
death. I've been friends with him for 23 years. I love him.
So would you have, because what you're doing here is incredible. I mean, everybody tells me. All I know is today I'm going, you know, you're on Joe Rogan today. People tell me, like, I say, how the hell do you know that? But it's sort of, what you've done here is amazing. Where would you be if you didn't do the UFC stuff? Would you have this show, do you think?
Yeah, I would still be doing it for sure. Yeah.
Would it be at the same? Would it be at the same level?
I don't know.
But you would have.
It's hard to know. I think one of the things that works for this show, I guess, is that I'm involved in so many different things. Stand-up comedy, UFC, and all the interests that I have that lead to the podcast.
Will you always want to do you? First of all, you love UFC.
I love it. Yeah.
You love the fights. I mean, I watch
yeah.
you. You are loving it. They could pay you nothing. It'd be very.
They didn't pay me anything for the first 13 shows. I did it for free because they were hemorrhaging money, and I became friends with Dana. And my position was, you're going to give me the best seat in the house. I get to sit cage side for the fights. I'll do it, and I wanted to help. I was like, I think these are the guys that we'd always hope for. In the early days of the sport, I started working for the company in 1997. I was before the UFC was purchased by Zuffa, which Dana worked for.
Wow.
So I was a part of the previous owners, and I only did it for a couple of years. It was just too much, and I was losing money, and it was banned from cable because of Budweiser and John McCain, and you could only get it on DirecTV.
And then I came along and I gave him the sites.
And he loved you for
never
that.
forgot it.
He loves you for that. He talks about it all the time.
Just to interrupt you for one second. So they couldn't get a site because it was too dangerous,
Right.
and everybody was against it, and they couldn't get a license. And I gave him the first 2 or 3 sites,
Yep.
and they were great. And by the way, I went to the first fight. I said, I never saw anything like this. It was crazy. It was so good. Take the best fight you've ever seen. It was like that fight, right? It was so good. Then I gave it to him again, and all of a sudden it caught on. But when I wasn't in vogue, I've had time. You probably never had a time, but I had times when I wasn't exactly in vogue. Dana, they called him. He said, he's the greatest guy. There's nobody like. He said, I'll never say anything bad about that guy because when I needed, because they were having a hard time at the beginning. They almost pulled the plug a couple of times, right? He said he stood up and he gave us stuff that nobody else gave us and nobody wanted anything to do. And he said, I will never. And there was a time where it would have been very popular for him to say bad stuff about me. He said the greatest stuff about me. He said, you're going to try and get me to say bad stuff about Trump? I'm never doing it.
No,
So
he's a very
an unusual
loyal guy.
Yeah,
very unusual guy.
I mean, that doesn't really seem like a good thing. He'll never say any bad stuff about you, even if it's justifiable. It sounds like a class act there. Okay.
Fantastic.
A perfect guy to be at the helm of something so controversial as the UFC.
Less controversial now. I mean,
Well, now it's huge. Yeah. Well, this was always the thing that I would hope that it would be. I always knew that it was unbelievably entertaining, but I just didn't know if maybe I was crazy. Maybe I loved it because I've had this long history of being involved in martial arts, and maybe like other people just think it's too violent. But
Can boxing make it?
yeah, boxing's still a great sport. I love boxing.
But it seems to be so unimportant now by comparison to UFC, don't you think?
I think, well, Dana is working with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. They're going to
bringing
start
some
promoting
fights, yeah.
boxing now. And with Dana at the helm of it, I think boxing can return because the thing is they want to make fights that other people, maybe, promoters don't want to make because they want to protect their fighter. Controversial fights where, it's dangerous. Like, you don't know, this guy could lose. And so the Saudis, they're smart. They just offer a tremendous amount of money and they're putting together fights that no one else could put together. They're doing that in boxing.
If Dana's involved, he'll probably make it good. You know the amazing thing, though, in fighting, no UFC fighter, they say, has ever died. And it looks to me much more violent than boxing. Many boxers have died. Isn't it interesting? And Dana tells me because they take so many shots to the face.
Yes, and there's also no other options to preserve yourself, to protect yourself. So if you get hit in a UFC fight, you can clinch. You can try to take the fight to the ground. You have options.
Yeah.
Also, you don't get allowed to get knocked down and then get back up. When you get knocked down, you're concussed. And generally, if a guy's really hurt, they can be finished on the ground and the fight's over. If it's boxing, you have 10 seconds to get up. You get up, your head kind of clears, but you're still in real bad trouble. And then you can kind of run away and survive until the bell rings.
Yeah.
They're only 3-minute rounds, and then you start again. So you're getting repeated punishment to the head.
Yeah.
And then there's also the issue of guys weight cutting, which is a problem with the UFC as well. But weight cutting in boxing has led to, if you look at deaths in boxing, there's very few of them in the heavyweight division. Most of the deaths in boxing are the lightweight divisions because when guys dehydrate themselves to lose weight, to make weight, their brain is the last thing that gets rehydrated. Like, it's very difficult to completely hydrate your brain quickly. And you only have 24 hours between the weigh-in and the fight. And it used to be the weigh-ins were the day of the fight. Like when Boom Boom Mancini had a fight with Duck Kim and killed him in the ring, which is one of the last ones on television that we've seen.
That's right.
That was a crazy event for people and heartbreaking. And it led to a bunch of different changes. And one of them is day before weigh-ins to allow people to rehydrate better. And the other one is they dropped it from 15 rounds down to 12.
Which, look, they should do that again. I'm not the fighter, but those 15-round fights were unbelievable.
They were unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yeah, you go back to the golden age.
Yeah, in terms of entertainment.
Oh, yeah.
Those were the championship rounds. Those were the greatest fights
Those
ever.
last 3 rounds were crazy.
That was brutal.
I mean, it's such a war of attrition. A lot of people think even like a 5-round UFC fight. The UFC is 5-minute rounds. It's so much energy you're burning out. And those last couple of rounds, those 5-round fights, the 4th and the 5th round, unbelievably brutal.
Who's the greatest UFC fighter? Are you allowed to say, in your opinion? It's tough for you to say because you do this, but who do you think is the greatest of the fighters?
There's a lot of arguments for who's the greatest of all time. John Jones, most people would say is the greatest of all time. Never lost. There's certainly a really good argument for that. There's another argument for George St. Pierre. I always leave in B.J. Penn in his prime, Anderson Silva in his prime. Mighty Mouse. People forget about Mighty Mouse because unfortunately he's a smaller guy. He's 125 pounds, flyweight champion. He's one of the greatest expressions of mixed martial arts I've ever seen. I think to this day.
And Khabib? What about
Khabib's
Khabib?
fantastic. But if you looked at like accomplishments in terms of championship fights, Khabib retired 29-0, but he didn't have as
And
many
probably
world
never
championship
lost a
fights.
round. They say
He might have lost to Gleison Tebow. He might have lost to him.
A round.
He might have lost a round. And that was a controversial fight.
This part isn't so bad because they're kind of just talking about a UFC. So, it's not about how, Trump is basically amazing and everybody's against him. He's actually a good guy that never pushes unhinged conspiracy theories like Obama's not an American. So
people think that Gleison Tebow could have even got the decision in that fight. I'd have to go back and watch it again to make a decision. But
they're great athletes.
Oh, the best athletes in the world, and the most dangerous sport in terms of I always call it high level problem solving with dire physical consequences.
Yeah, it's just brutal.
That's what fighting is.
I never forget. So there was a fighter named James Toney.
Oh yeah, I love
And
James Toney.
He fought as a very light fighter, and he ended up as a heavyweight. This guy went through everything. He was almost like a lightweight.
He went from middleweight all the way up to heavyweight. Yeah, and Peter Vander Holyfield is a heavyweight.
And he was a real fighter.
Oh yeah.
So James Toney, and I think it was George
St. Pierre.
St. Pierre. I think it was him. Who did he fight? James Toney.
No, James Toney didn't fight George St.
He
Pierre.
fought a UFC fighter.
Yeah, Randy Couture fought James Toney.
Was it
But
Randy
that was like an
Couture,
easy
maybe?
fight. That was a very easy fight. Randy Couture just took him down and
It was the
strangled
most, and he's half the size. And he just, once he got to the ankles, in fact, the
Yeah.
announcer said, "It's over."
Yeah,
and
he
he put him to
picked him,
sleep.
took him down, mounted him, strangled him. It was
And
pretty
James,
quick.
he was, but he was talking big because he was much bigger. He was a pretty
I
big
think
guy.
James just wanted to make some money. In
You
that
think
fight.
so?
Yeah.
But I never forgot it.
I don't think he knew what he
was
was
over
doing.
very quickly. And
Yeah.
he was lying, sleeping on the mat, and he was talking. He was doing the Muhammad Ali stuff, but it didn't work out. But I remember.
sold the fight.
Yeah, that was Couture probably.
Yeah,
wasn't
it was Couture. George never fought a boxer in an MMA fight. If he did, he would kill them.
Was he one of the greatest?
Yes, unquestionably. That's the argument. There's like a handful of guys you can make the argument is the greatest of all time. People forget about Anderson Silva. In his prime, he was unstoppable. But that's
Anderson
the thing is,
Silva?
and then there's Fedor Emelianenko, who fought
Yeah,
Pride.
yeah.
In his prime, he was unstoppable. There's this.
And you have a couple now that are pretty
Yes.
good.
Oh, we've got so many now. Alex Pereira.
Correct.
There's an argument that he's the
He's
top
looking-
pound for pound
he's
fighter in the world
looking
right
very
now.
good, yeah.
It's unbelievable. But it's like fighters can only compete at that level for so many years. And so, in my opinion, you have to judge them at their very peak. You can't judge them when they're hanging on and still fighting. You can't judge them when they're coming up. You got to judge them in that championship peak. In that championship peak, there's a handful of guys that you would consider at the very top.
If they stopped a little bit sooner,
Yeah.
some of them would have had, there are a couple of that you just mentioned without mentioning names. If they stopped, they had the perfect, they were unbelievable. And then at a certain age, they start
yeah.
getting,
Is there anything more interesting here?
America Healthy Again
Yep.
idea, because there are chemicals and ingredients in our food that
nobody does this better. Without the enthusiasm, forget it.
well, it has to be authentic. Like that. I mean, the only reason why I do MMA commentary is because I'm
All right.
very interested in it for real. I don't have to manufacture it. I'm very interested. So
And you love
think
going in there
that's
after
see if
the
we
fight
can
and
get
they're sweating all
something
over you, they're
interesting
slapping all over
here.
you,
Fucking around.
they're bleeding.
Sometimes the nose
Does that bother you a little
bleeding.
bit? Yeah, like
No.
2 weeks ago with the guy I never saw.
Brown Street, yeah.
He more stuff came out of his nose.
Yes, it was pretty nasty, but no, I'm very used to it. I just want
That's
him to be
great.
able to express
You've
himself.
done a great job.
Thank you.
You've
Thank
done a
you.
great job.
So back to you, and back to what are you? And first of all, I love this idea of you teaming up with Robert Kennedy,
Right.
and I love this Make America
Great. We got the cool Robert Kennedy.
Healthy
Gotcha.
Again idea, because
Yeah, didn't conservatives bitch about that though? Like there was this whole fucking entire thing where they were like, "Hey, what if we had healthy school lunches for kids?" And we were like, "No, that's not a good idea. I don't like that."
there are chemicals and ingredients in our food that are illegal in other countries because they've been
Sure.
shown to be toxic. There's pesticides and herbicides, and there's a lot of shit that's been sprayed on our food that really is unnecessary. And there's a lot of health consequences that people are suffering from a lot of these things.
I
And
brought this chart for you.
Beautiful.
Because I had a feeling you'd be asking me.
Thank
Look
you.
at this chart. These are healthier countries. Look where the United States is. I'm going to send this to RFK Jr. Look
so
at
this
that.
is
Cool.
well,
That's a great initiative. Unfortunately, Trump is unfit to be president because he's a felon that's tried to insurrect the government. But okay.
something along the. I was actually talking to RFK today, and he told me that more than 70% of young men are ineligible for the military because of their health.
I could see it.
That's
a lot
crazy.
Of a lot of it's
So
obesity.
here's the life expectancy.
Yeah, a lot of that has to do less with chemicals and more with people, being very sedentary because we have technology and we kind of have to figure out how do we want to interact with that as well. That's also a factor. But
Let's see versus health expenditure.
Same chart.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
USA.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's pretty good.
Jamie's the best.
He's very good.
He's the best.
But no, but look at that. Look where the USA is.
It's not
And
good. And
they
that's our
spend all that
food.
money.
That's our diet. That's sedentary lifestyle. That's our diet. That's the chemicals we ingest. That's what that is.
But RFK is going to be very. I think he's a great guy.
I
think
love
he's
the
great.
fact that you guys teamed up.
Yeah, it's
and
a
are you
good
guys
combination.
completely committed to have him a part of your administration?
Oh, I am. But the only
yeah, well, since RFK teamed up with Trump, obviously he's a fucking loser scumbag that can never be trusted. So it's an unfortunate reality.
thing I want to be a little careful about with him is the environmental, because he doesn't like oil. I love oil and gas. I think
Just keep him out of that.
To fire. So I'm going to sort of keep him out of it. I said, focus on health. Focus.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want, but I got to be a little bit careful with the liquid gold.
I understand. But listen, there's plenty of good work that could be done if you focus on health.
Here's
So,
the one that my all-time favorite. Though.
what is that?
See the arrow right here? That's what I love
do
today.
you
I
have
love-
anyone that is pressuring you to not work with him? Have there been
To not work with who?
RFK Jr.?
Yes.
Yes, I would imagine. Because
I would
financially,
say
he could put a dent.
I would say that, and I think in many ways they've done a good job. In many ways they've done a bad job. But I would say that the big pharma wasn't thrilled when they heard that I have a relation. I've actually always gotten along very well with him. I've known him a long time. He's a different kind of a guy. He's very smart, great guy. And he's very sincere about this. I mean, he really is. He thinks we spend a fortune on pesticides and all this stuff, and then you end up with that chart is a terrible chart. The one previous, it's such a bad chart when you look at where we are compared to other countries that don't spend 10 cents.
Right.
So and you save a lot of money. But yeah, I've had some people that aren't exactly thrilled. You can imagine, right?
Sure.
It's a good question, actually.
Well,
So what is it that they would do about this? I wonder. Because there's still no Trump policies in play at all. He doesn't have a single policy other than like, hey, what if we just tariff the fuck out of everything constantly? Wouldn't that be cool? I mean, there's not really a policy. It's just kind of like an idea. He doesn't really have any policies. So is there like something meaningful that we could like look at, or is it just going to be more of like, more platitudes? I don't know.
certainly, if there
it
have
doesn't
been
affect me.
some pharmaceutical drugs that have been prescribed that have negative consequences that these people have been profiting off of, and then you have a guy like RFK Jr. who spends an enormous amount of time highlighting those things, you could say how they'd be very reluctant to have you support him.
I would say that's an understatement. Yes.
Yeah. So what do you do to stop that from getting in the way?
Well, look, they've come up with some amazing things. I mean, I don't know how you feel. I know you're against certain vaccines, but like the polio vaccine, people had polio. It was like a disaster. And they came up, Dr. Salk, and he came up with...
COVID was a disaster, too. It's a good thing we had a vaccine. It was made quickly. I understand the apprehension, but it was a good thing to have. Like, it was overall good. But okay.
The vaccine, and there's no polio. Now, very interesting, there hasn't been polio, but now in the Gaza Strip, can you believe that? Have you heard that? There's been a big strain of polio coming out in the Gaza Strip.
Is it vaccine-derived polio? Because, there's a strain of polio that comes directly from the vaccine, because unfortunately sometimes...
I don't know.
Bro, dude, what is up with this anti-vax shit? Like, I understand that there can be negative impacts of, like, the vaccine, but holy fuck, this guy's, like, big, pure conspiracy brain fucking vaccine shit.
Polio,
I haven't heard that,
Yeah.
I mean, all I can do is I sit down and I listen to him, and I'll give it a total... I would love him to be right. Because if he's right, it's a lot less expensive generally.
There's two things that people point to when they point to the dangers of the pharmaceutical drug industry. One thing is when pharmaceutical drugs were allowed to advertise on television. We're only one of two countries in the world that allow pharmaceutical drugs to advertise on TV. The other one's New Zealand, but they're more restrictive than we are.
But those ads, when you hear like, take a certain drug,
and then you hear all the consequences.
Say it causes cancer and baldness. We don't like baldness.
Suicidal
and
ideation.
this and that and eyesight, and you can lose your vision.
Yeah.
And I actually asked one of these guys.
Well, so just to be clear, just because a drug may have like negative outcomes when it comes to like cancer doesn't necessarily mean we shouldn't have the drug in its existence. The issue is that a pharmaceutical company can like actually advertise on television, which is not a particularly good or smart idea. That is the part that is not really good. People, like a doctor, should be the one saying like, "Hey, this is the best drug out there," not like, "Hey, do you want to try this out?" It's ridiculous, but.
I would never take. I mean, of course, there's things that are so bad. They go through a whole list. I guess they save some liability, but man, I said, does that affect the purchase? And they say it really does. When there's something you have and you read, and then they go through the list of
side effects,
the potential side. It's not even the potential side effects.
Right.
I mean, a lot of people are just. I asked that question. People hear that. When I hear it, I'm going to take a pass. It says may affect your vision, may cause blindness.
Yeah, all medications have like side effects. Like this isn't like the hot take. This isn't the problem. As long as they're upfront about them, like it's okay. It's okay to have medications with side effects. That's really not the issue. Like all medications have side effects. The issue is that they're advertising on TV, which is like a ridiculous thing to do. You shouldn't be advertising medications on television like this. That's like preposterous. So yeah.
Yes. Well, I know you're aware of Callie and Casey means, right?
Yes.
Well, one of the things that they pointed out, and this is a very important thing for people to understand, is what a lot of these drugs do is they act to somehow or another mitigate the effects of poor metabolic health. But most of these problems that these people are suffering from wouldn't exist if we put an emphasis on metabolic health.
Yes, it would be good if people were healthy. But here's the thing about getting healthier. It takes a long time. Here's the thing about medications. It doesn't take a long time. This concept that like, yeah, we should get healthier, but like you need to take the medications until you get healthier. That's just a fact. That this is like, okay, cool. Yeah. But what? Okay.
People got healthier. They started eating nutritious food and taking vitamins.
True, but you need medications for short term until you can get back into a healthier position. It's like, wow, what a hot take. Thanks, Joe.
A whole host of these problems that people are having would go away. And the problem with that from the pharmaceutical drug standpoint is they wouldn't be able to sell drugs to these people.
Right. So again, I just want to be clear. This is a conspiracy theory that pharmaceutical companies are trying to keep people fat when people being lazy is keeping them fat. We need to have an emphasis on that. This is really something that would happen in the education aspect. I don't know if you guys know this, but in the school area. But there's no magical conspiracy that's keeping people fat. We have an introduction of technology, and we have people who are kind of lazy. We need to deal with that. I agree, but yeah, you need medication and drugs for that short-term positive impact.
And this is a
And
fear
the
that a lot of people
pesticides
have.
and things like that on the plants. And
Yeah.
what do you think of that?
It's terrible. Well, I think regenerative agriculture, unfortunately, is very difficult to scale to a point where you got a Jack in the Box in every corner.
Right, that's right.
If everybody
That's
wants
right.
food, and we have food deserts, and we have places like Los Angeles where no one's growing anything, and everything has to be shipped in, and it's very difficult to feed that many people. We've created this incredible society where we have these enormous cities, but it's very difficult to get food to these people. And then for a lot of these people in low-income areas, the only food that's available is cheap, unhealthy food.
That's right.
And we could fix that. That's if we could send
Wow.
$175 billion to Ukraine, we could do something to fix.
We don't. Yeah. So what do we do to fix that? Because nobody's proposed anything. Trump didn't do anything to fix that. Like, what do you do to fix that? What's your solution? I don't understand.
A lot of the health problems that the United States has, and I think it would help us as a nation overall. If you just put it out there that, hey, as a nation, we're going to make a concerted effort to get people healthier. Just put it out there,
yeah.
and people start making better choices.
Well, when you look at that chart, I was
It's crazy.
They just gave me that chart because they said you may want to.
So, like, what if you were like, "Hey, Trump, what would you do about that?" Hey, Trump, what would you do about that one?
Discuss this topic, which I know is a big topic
Yes.
for you. And when I looked at that chart and I looked at how unhealthy we are as a nation, that's a pretty big thing.
How are you so healthy? Is it golf?
No, it's genetics. I believe. You know, I'm a big
Genetics
believer.
is a big factor.
I really am. I mean, my father was.
Unfortunately, it is a big factor for health. Some people are just way more robust. But you did
Yeah.
play golf a lot, and that is
both
exercise.
of my parents. For me, it's good.
Fresh air,
It really is. It's fresh when you're outside.
exercise. Yeah.
Even mentally, you're focused on that
Right.
3-footer, and
Yes.
for a couple of hours, you're not. And I go quick. I play fast, real fast, and I'm in, I'm out. But you know, it gives me. I was never one that could like run on a treadmill. And I can do it. You know, when passing a physical, they asked me to run on a treadmill, and then they make it steeper and steeper and steeper. And the doctor said it was at Walter Reed. They said, "It's unbelievable. I could have gone. I'm telling you, I felt I could have gone all day. But I said, Doc, I can do this all day long. I have no problem. But it's boring to me. Do you understand?
Right.
It's just boring.
Golf's exciting.
But I did it for
Yeah.
so long. They couldn't believe it that I did it. And I never did. You know, I don't do it. I don't really, I have friends that run in this stuff all day long, but I had no problem doing it. But it's really boring. So with golf or something, you know, or tennis or whatever.
Right.
But golf, as you get older, there's something really good about it. And you have competition with your friends.
Competition,
You know, there's
concentration,
something- And it's a great
focus.
handicap sport.
And it's also a thing, I think, it cleans your mind because when you're looking at a shot, that's all you can think of when you're executing.
It gives you a couple of hours. You know, it's interesting. Like with tennis, if you're much better than somebody, you can't really play with somebody. You know, it doesn't work. You can give them sort of the equivalent of strokes, right? But it's not this. With golf, you can play with a lousy guy and give him a stroke a hole or 2 strokes a hole or something. You know, it's a good handicapping sport.
Right.
A lot of stroke in here.
But it gives me a little exercise. But I haven't played in a long time. I won a lot. I won 32 club championships.
Didn't you play right after you got shot?
No. What I did is I played with Bryson DeChambeau. Do you know Bryson?
Yes.
The pro.
Uh-huh.
He's a great player. And we played. It was a certain thing that we played, I guess, called breaking 50 or something. 50 would play from a certain tee, and if you can break 50. And it got tremendous ratings. It was sort of like a crazy thing. It got. He's a great guy.
But wasn't that like a
great
couple of days after you got shot?
I don't know. I know I
think
haven't.
that was one of the funniest things you were on the golf course.
I think I did. Yeah, maybe I did. But I view it very interestingly. I'm running for president of the United States. To me, it's such a big deal. It's so important. So
Well,
I've
it's
gone
the
now.
biggest deal in the free world.
It's 100 times bigger than the Super Bowl, and it's one person.
Yeah.
So you're down to 2 people, and we start off at 9 billion, because you have 9 billion, they say, in the world. Who knows what that number is? But you get down
They say it's like 7, but okay.
to 350 million. Sadly, we have no idea what we have in this country, but let's assume it's 325, 350. And you're down to 2 people. It's the biggest thing in the world. And when I heard she took off yesterday and she took off the day before and she's going to take off tomorrow or the next day, I haven't taken a day off in 56 days. That's a long time.
Trump took the most days off out of like any modern president, I'm pretty sure. I don't know what he's talking about. What?
haven't taken one day off. I don't want to play golf. This is too exciting. Golf is great, but this is too exciting. This is more exciting than anything you can do. And the
Also,
thing
it's the home stretch.
It's the home stretch. Who would take a day off? So we have 11 days left now. And
Oh, is he
Think
just
of it.
talking about take a day off from campaigning? I don't know what he's talking about. Is that what he means?
so I think I've gone 54, 55 days in a row. No days off. And I make speeches oftentimes, sometimes not, but I make speeches. And when you make a speech, and my speeches last a long time because of the weave, I weave stories into it. And if you just read a teleprompter, nobody's going to be very exciting.
Yeah, because Trump got criticized for like ridiculous expenses when it came to him taking vacation.
You got to weave it out. So but you always have to, as you say, you always have to get right back to it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's no good. But the weave is very, very important. Very few weavers around, but it's a big strain on your. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. You got to be careful with the voice. You can lose that voice. The voice wasn't designed. I said today. So I made a big one last night. I was in Las Vegas. A big one the night before in Arizona.
Yeah, he hasn't taken a day off from doing podcasts, guys. Just like me, bro. He's just built different. It works too hard.
Big one. They're all big. There's never been anything like it in terms of crowd. Never been close. Never been close. They say, he talks about crowds. Says, what's very interesting? So we get crowds that are really big. And I say, I've never had a story, because I don't get good press. I don't think I've had a good story in years. I really don't. I swear, I don't think you were talking about it a little bit with Oprah. Everybody loved me. I don't think, I became president of the United States. I did great the second time. I did much better. I don't want to get you in any disputes, but I won that second election so easy. And not just because
He lost so bad. He's just constantly fucking lying.
But let me get
wait,
to that. I want to talk to you
but
about
here's
that.
the thing. I did that, and now I've gotten the nomination again. And don't forget, to get these nominations, you go against very smart people. Ron DeSantis was hot. Got to go through him.
Not really, but okay.
Nikki Haley was hot. Got to go through her. I went through everybody. Record time, right? Record time. I got 3 nominations in a row. Won the first time, did much better the second time. You know, I got millions of votes more the second time, and now I'm doing it a third time. And it's an incredible thing. I never get a good story. I only get bad press. Now,
Literally, Fox News, the biggest, news organization, guzzles your cum every day. What are you talking about? Even when you're lying, they guzzle your cum. What?
it's a lot easier if you're a Democrat. If I were a Democrat,
You get a lot of positive press.
I would get a lot of positive
Yeah.
press.
No, it's a creepy, corrupt business. And
He's acting like Fox News isn't constantly fucking like gulp down Trump's fucking load. What are you talking about?
the media, to a large extent, acts as a propaganda arm for the Democratic
Oh,
Party.
it's not even
The media, dude, the biggest media organization is Fox News. What are you talking about? The biggest online media organization is fucking Twitter. These things are up Trump's fucking, like, they crawl into his fucking penis hole.
Yeah, it's bizarre to watch, and
Oh my God.
most young people I think are aware of it. I think most boomers still, unfortunately, read the newspapers and believe in CNN.
So just to be clear, opposite, I think is really what it comes down to. The only people keeping Trump in office or anywhere close to fucking irrelevant are old people, old fucking morons that have no connection to anything, that are afraid of every piece of technology. We'll say, be careful what you read on the internet, but then like fucking just starts drinking Twitter. Oh my God, everything is true here. And Fox News. I mean, what are you talking about? Trump is what?
But it's getting younger. Let me
yes.
tell you, it's getting for us, for a conservative.
Yes.
And you know, I
But
don't
you know
even,
why
I
that
consider
is?
myself
It's
a
the
person.
internet. It's because the internet's
think
giving
so.
people information that they're not getting from anywhere else. And they get
Yeah, I mean, disinformation.
like the Very Fine People hoax, the Russiagate hoax, all these different things that they've done. They tried to pin on
It wasn't a hoax. Russia absolutely was involved in our election and tried to get Trump elected. I'm not saying Trump worked with them, but that's like a fact.
you. That's like, it's a clear distortion of what you actually
The
said.
bloodbath hoax.
Yes.
I was talking about
Yes.
the auto industry.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
a bloodbath because Japan and
course.
China are taking our auto
What about the hoax where you were constantly talking about how Obama wasn't an American, it was from another country, or the hoax that you actually won the election when you got fucking absolutely plastered, or the hoax that there was no relief money for the hurricane, even though it was instantaneous before you had said anything, or everything over and over again that you constantly lie about.
And
Yes.
I said, it's a bloodbath. They said, oh, he used the word bloodbath.
He said,
know,
if you
think
don't
of
win,
somebody-
it's going to be a bloodbath
That's
because
right.
they're going to
That's
take over.
right.
That's
It's
exactly
a
what you
terrible
said.
thing they do.
But that's the problem with propagandists, because they take things out of context, and ultimately what they do is they diminish their own credibility, because people don't want to listen to them anymore, because they see that they've done that and they recognize what's going on and they feel insulted. Their intelligence.
Well,
is
look at the
getting
ratings.
Yes.
You know, shows like yours. So I have a son who's very smart and tall, Barron, right? And he knows all about you. He knows about guys I never heard of. He said, Dad, you don't know how big they are. They're big. You know, he told me how big. I said, who the hell is he? Like Ross. I did. He said, Dad, he's a great guy. I mean, guys that are doing, it's a whole new world out there.
It's a different world. And
But, you know,
I think,
I'm on TikTok now.
congratulations.
And I've done really well. No, but you know the crazy, have you seen the numbers? I've billions of hits. It's crazy.
I'm sure TikTok's a wild application.
And I've
though.
gone up 30 points. A Republican is always down 30 with young people. I'm plus 30. And I'm on TikTok.
I think young
it's out of
people-
YouTube.
Did we just go on this whole thing about how you can't trust any polls, but now we're trusting polls? I don't understand.
Young people are rejecting a lot of this woke bullshit.
Yeah,
Young
they
people
are.
are tired of being yelled at and scolded. They're tired of these people that they think are mentally ill telling them what the moral standards
Yeah,
of
right.
society should be today. People are upset.
There's a big difference now, but even in just a couple of years, I was shaking hands with people. They're young people.
The rebels are Republicans now. They're like, you want
Yeah,
to be
I
a
never thought
rebel,
of
you
it
want
that
to
way.
be
I think
punk
you're
rock, you want to like
Yeah.
buck the system. You're a conservative now. That's how crazy.
Okay.
And then the liberals are now pro silencing criticism. They're pro censorship online. They're talking
Then
about
come after
regulating free speech and now regulating the First Amendment. But
I love it because what they're referring to is when it was a Tim Walz speech that they intentionally cut out of context, where Tim Walz is talking about how you should punish people for lying about where to vote in the election, which is illegal, by the way, and it should be illegal. And this is, they're talking about censoring people's free speech. No, they're not. Nobody is. Like, you guys take people out of context constantly, all the time. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah, Elon's constantly saying the news. Twitter is the number one news platform around the world. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. A news app. Like, they what are you talking about? The media is very favorable to Trump. The two biggest media organizations, I would say, like online, is Twitter and then fucking Fox News on traditional media. Nobody's trying to censor your free speech. They're talking about like getting arrested if you're lying about where to go and vote, because that is like unconstitutional. They're just making shit up.
bananas to watch.
Joe, they come after their political opponent.
Well, they
I
do.
got more
This
guys.
is the guy who's talking about fucking putting Hillary in jail for nothing. By the way, for like with fucking emails, which amounts to nothing. When this guy, what did this guy do? He had like fucking classified information in his house for like a year and never turned it over. Like, what he's talking about? Oh my god!
I always say, I kid, but I'm not kidding. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the meanest of them all. He'd kill you in 2 seconds if he didn't like you, right? I've been under investigation more than Alphonse Capone, only because it's political opponent stuff. And I
Oh, really? You literally try to overthrow the government. What are you talking about?
won. I won the big case in Florida. I'm winning the other stuff. You win. But
You've lost like everything. What are you talking about? Like you've pretty much lost every single thing. Like you were ordered to pay a bunch of money for like a sexual assault, for using campaign money to fuck prostitutes. Like what are you talking about?
you know what they did? They did something that's only done in third world countries. They came after their political opponent.
Yes.
I could have put crooked Hillary in jail.
Well, not only that, but
You could not have because okay.
they're weaponizing it by saying that that's what you're going to do once you get in office.
Isn't it great?
By
Well, he tried to overthrow the government, so
ignoring
He
what
is-
they're doing
he
right
stacked the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said they're not going to punish him for it. So it's pretty great.
now. It's crazy.
I heard it. Somebody was defending me today. They said, no, they say that's what you're doing to him. They're going, he's going to put us in jail. He's going to invest. They
That's
said,
what you're
that's
doing.
what you're doing to him.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, will you do that? Will you do that to him? To them, if you win, the presidency has tremendous power. I could have put crooked Hillary.
I
in
respected
jail.
that you didn't because what you said was it would be bad for the country.
No,
You couldn't have. He could not have put Hillary in jail. Like that's what he's trying to pretend like he could have done anything.
I couldn't even imagine. You have, first of all,
Okay.
Secretary of State, but more importantly, the wife of the President of the United States of America going into jail. And if you ever saw, when I'd say something about her, they'd all say, I didn't say it. I never said it. They say, lock her up, lock her up. And I'd always go,
You would constantly say, "Lock her up."
take it easy, just relax. We're going to win this thing.
He's like lying right now.
Take it easy, take it easy. And I'm telling you, I kept it down, just the opposite. Now they say, oh, Trump wanted to put her in jail. No, I saved her from going to jail. They had more stuff on her. And Comey had it, because when Comey got up, and he stupidly, because he's a stupid guy too, he's a stupid son of a bitch. He got up, Joe, and instead of saying she's innocent of all charges, he went over each charge. And each charge was a killer. And he'd go, and as far as her doing this, she's innocent. And this, and then she's only an unfair prosecutor for it. We go, but every time you heard these charges, they sounded so bad. They
Right.
were bad. And all it was is he wanted more airtime. If he would have gone up and said, I've thoroughly investigated Hillary Clinton.
I love how he's admitting that this is one of the reasons why he won the election, because this happened like right before the voting day, and so Hillary got fucked on this, and he's like, now he's admitting like that was another reason why he won, was really just like the timing of this. But it's at the same time the system is against him, but this is what happened. This is what got Hillary to lose. So
and she's done nothing that we feel is wrong, it would have ended. Instead, he wanted to be up there because he's a PR hound. He's a hog. And he starts going through and you know what he had? They had a huge problem because FBI is great. The people there, not the top people, the real people, the people that work there. It's like the real generals that I told you about
Right.
that defeated ISIS in record time. The FBI guys are great. I'd be at 95% in the FBI.
I bet that's right.
Underneath.
Yeah.
And so here's the thing. So he goes with Hillary, and instead of just saying, he goes through each charge.
Right.
And
Which
even
looks
I was saying,
damning.
man,
Yeah.
those are bad charges.
Sounds terrible because
And
it's
this is before I
her
got
with those
yeah,
charges.
Don't
Yeah.
forget, this is before I got there.
Right.
Now, he was trying to protect her, but he did her a great disservice.
Because he wanted attention.
He was stupid.
So I want to talk about 2020 because you said over and over again that you were robbed in 2020.
Yeah, totally.
How do you think you were robbed? Everybody always cuts you off. I'm going to
They
allow.
do. Well, they not only cut you off. Well, what I'd rather do is we'll do it another time.
cuts him off. He won't stop talking about it. What?
And I would bring in papers that you would not believe. So many different papers. That election was so crooked. It was the most crooked election.
Okay, but give me some examples of how.
Well, let's
He can't, because there's no evidence of any of this.
start with
Okay.
the top and the easy ones.
Okay.
They were supposed to get legislative approval to do the things they did, and they didn't get it in many cases.
So what he's talking about is COVID, which killed 3 million people in the United States alone over the course of 3 years, was so negatively impactful despite everything that we tried to do, even though Trump continued to push the conspiracy theory that it was not real. We need to implement certain things to make it easier for people to, exercise their constitutional right to vote. One of those was voting the entire week, and one of those was increasing mail-in ballots. This was legal to do, and we did it. It's nothing. There is nothing here at all.
They didn't get it.
what things?
Anything.
Legislative approval
like
of-
for extensions of the voting, for voting earlier, for this,
Right.
all different things. By law, they had to get legislative approvals. You don't have to go
They obviously got the approval.
any further than that. If you take a look at Wisconsin, they virtually admitted that the election was rigged,
No, they
robbed,
didn't.
and stolen. They wouldn't give access in certain areas to the ballots because the ballots weren't signed. They weren't originals. We could go into this stuff. We could go into the ballots, or we could go into the overall. I'll give you another
Are
one.
you going to present this ever?
Yeah, present it online. Present all your evidence online, since it's like such a fucking conspiracy theory. Present all this proof online. Let's see it.
Do you think like
Let me just give you one
okay,
more
go ahead.
before.
The answer is no, because he doesn't have any actual evidence or proof of any of this. So the answer is obviously no.
51 intelligence agents come up that the laptop was from Russia. It
He's going on the little laptop. Who gives a fuck about this laptop?
turned out to be totally false. It
51
wasn't.
former intelligence agents, right?
They say that made I don't believe it's this much, but it doesn't matter. I won by
Dude, what was on the laptop was Hunter Biden's dick, that he did coke and he fucked prostitutes. There was really nothing on that laptop that meant anything. The whole conspiracy centralized around that Hunter Biden got like a job for whatever fucking business in some country because his dad was president. Yeah, no shit. It's called nepotism. Trump's entire every existence is because of nepotism.
like I lost by like I didn't lose, but they say I lost, Joe. They say I lost by 22,000 votes. That's like 1/10 of 1%, less than that. It's a tiny little thing. 22,000 votes spread over. That's spread over this period. So, 51 intelligence agents lied. They lied. They lied. They knew it was.
Hey, what do you mean? So all the agents lied?
It was
Wow.
Hunter's. It was from his bed. It was Hunter's laptop.
What the
They
fuck
said
are
it
you
was
talking
created by
about?
Russia. It was the Russia hoax. The Russia hoax was a big hoax. It was all a big hoax. So
Well, that's
they
clear.
get Mueller.
That's one example. That is a good
Well, so just be clear, there was a ton of information that came out of Russia, the Russian investigation. The Mueller investigation was necessary because there was some form of Russian interference. Okay, the biggest problem here was that every single day CNN was like, hey guys, Trump did it again. And like they were sensationalizing. Absolutely. So I understand why people would be skeptical in some instances, 100%. And then when it came out that like Trump was generally innocent of like colluding with Russia, they looked really stupid. I will agree with that. Absolutely. But there was still massive objective proof that this motherfucker worked with, or excuse me, not worked with, massive proof that there were massive disinformation campaigns from Russia to get Trump to become president. Like, this is a fact. I'm pretty sure like 12 or 14 of the people around Trump got indicted. So if anything, they just couldn't link it to Trump. He's full of shit. There wasn't a hoax. What are you talking about?
That's a big example. They say it made a 17-point difference. That's a big example, but that's only one. And you could go into the ballots where they wouldn't give you access to the ballots. You could go into the ballot harvesting. You could go into $500 million for the lock boxes.
But just in terms of narrative, so there's two things, right?
None of these things are true. He's just making things up.
There's the Russia hoax. There's the collusion with Russia that was never proven, right? That's
Well,
one.
no, it's proven it didn't happen.
Right.
Yeah.
But they talked about it on
But it took
television.
2.5 years to prove.
But not only that, but it was a constant narrative on television. So
Sure.
that's a
And-
constant
and-
narrative.
Yeah, the narrative on television was not a good idea.
That gets into people's minds, especially low information people that just watch the news,
Sure.
that you're in collusion with Russia. So that's one.
Sure.
So that changes
But
the
Russia
narrative.
wanted
And then
him.
you have
Russia
the
wanted him president.
51 former intelligence agents that work with the original Twitter and get them to remove links. You can't share it on DMs. You cannot share that story. They swept that story because they said it was Russian disinformation, even though they knew it was not.
100%.
So that's two
I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure there was no request to take things down.
examples that are real examples. Now, anyone who considers himself a legitimate, objective observer of American politics, if you really want the best person to win, you would want people to not lie. And the only reason why they got away with this lie was because they continually labeled you as this horrible threat to democracy and Hitler. They kept saying you're going to be a dictator, ignoring the fact that you weren't a dictator for the 4
Correct.
years where you were
The
actually the
opposite.
president.
I was actually the opposite of a dictator. I was a very straight guy. But look, those three
He tried to overthrow the government.
things, you take those three things. Each one of them by themselves causes the result to be different. Okay?
It does.
And then you can go into 100 other things. There's so many. We can't have corrupt elections, and we can't have open borders. You need to have a country. You need borders. You need fair
Then why did you knock down the border bill?
elections. And I'll tell you the other thing you need is you need a free and fair press. One of the things I like about doing a show like this, can you imagine Kamala doing this show?
I could imagine her
she'd
doing
be
the show.
laying,
I
she'd
would
be
try
laying
to-
on the floor.
She was supposed to do it, and she might
She
still do
wasn't
it,
gonna
and I
do it.
hope she does.
She's not gonna
I
do
will
it.
talk to her like a human being. I will
If
try
she
to have a
did this kind
conversation
of an
with her.
interview with you, I hope she does because it would be a mess. She'd be laying on the floor comatose. You'd be saying, call in the medics.
I think we'd have a fine conversation. I think I'd be able to talk to her. I wouldn't try to interview her. I just try to have a conversation with her and hopefully get to know her as a human being. That was my goal, having her.
Wait, so the whole thing that I'm looking at is that Twitter at the time, I guess, wasn't owned by Elon Musk. They decided to suppress the story as misinformation. This had nothing to do with any pressure from any government institution. What are we talking about here? Where are these 51 people coming from?
On trying to get her to express herself just as I don't know if I don't think these formats are good. I don't think that two people, first of all, I hate the idea of the presidential debates because I hate the idea of a time limitation on complex ideas. Also, you have to break
I think you have to have the debates.
Where does this 51 agent thing coming from?
right, but the way they do the debates, I think, is the wrong way to do it. I think they should have a conversation. I think you and Kamala, you sit across the table with no one in the room but the two of you. Of course, you're not going to shout at each other. Of course, you're not
Well,
going to
you
insult
may.
each other.
Well, Trump would definitely shout at him.
I mean, it may get. They used to do it
Hopefully
that
it
way.
wouldn't, but that would be the way to do it.
They
And
used to
just
do it that way,
To
the old
put
days.
cameras on you with no one interfering with press.
This sounds like a kind of a stupid idea to do. Like, it's going to be an absolute disaster area mess. I don't really see how this is going to be productive. It makes sense to have rules in a conversation.
with checking whether or not it's factual, especially when it's biased, because they checked you all those times and they didn't check her with clearly things that were inaccurate, right? So have two people just have a conversation with us without a time constraint. And also this idea they cut off the microphone.
Well, and no crowd. How
No
about
crowd. Crazy too, because you're good at working a crowd.
I would rather have a crowd. but
Of course
I
you
would
would. You're
rather.
good at crowds.
But I had no. So they gave me an alternative. I don't think he wanted to debate.
Why did they want no crowd? What was
Because
the
I think
argument?
they thought I wasn't going to accept it. So I believe what they wanted to do is have me not accept. So they gave me a deal I couldn't refuse, and I said, I'll do it. Okay? It's like
So they had no crowd for you? Then what? I don't understand. Oh, okay.
the mob.
Right.
I'll take it. So they came to me. They said, will debate Joe Biden. I think
Well, he was afraid to debate Kamala because his entire strategy centralized around Joe Biden not being able to speak anymore.
got tremendous ratings too. That was crazy. But we'll debate Joe Biden, but you can't have a crowd. They also wanted
Oh, so the story was that FBI was pressuring Facebook and Twitter to suppress it? Oh, okay.
sitting down. I said, that's the only thing. I said, look, you got to stand up. You can't really sit down.
Right.
In the old days, they did sit down a little bit, but
He gets tired.
You got to stand up. And they agreed to it. It was a very tough thing. It almost killed it. They wanted to have like desks. We said. I said, I think we should stand up. And that was the only thing I asked for. I said, we got to stand up. I thought it looked bad for like the public, but they said no crowd and cut off the mic. And I said, I can live with it. I mean, I can live with it. And they thought I was going to reject it. And then they would say he didn't want to debate Sleepy Joe.
Right.
That's
right.
what they thought was
Well,
going
they
to
tried to say that with you and Kamala as well. They tried to say that
Because he was afraid to debate her. Like, he literally was afraid to debate her. What are you talking about?
you didn't want to debate her as well.
No,
But
by the way,
that's-
with her, number one, I'm leading. Number two, I didn't. They also said it with the primary.
He's leading in the polls that he doesn't think are real, just to be clear.
So I had like 10, 12 guys, right, in the primary. No stupid guys. I mean, they're governors in the Senate. They're not stupid people. Some are stupid, but not all of them. And all my guys said, you have to be in the debate. I said, why? I'm leading by 74 points. The closest guy to me, I'm like 60 points, 70 points higher. Why would I stand there like an idiot for 2 hours and let every one of them scream at me? I'm going to be the focus. What?
Right.
And I said, I'm not debating. And it was a very smart thing because, they just killed themselves.
The Republican primaries.
Yeah, the
yes.
Republican primaries. I like debating. I think you have to debate. But I like
it has to be
debating.
fair.
I like debating like the Rosie O'Donnell debate. I like debating when you have a great. Remember the Rosie
Yeah,
O'Donnell?
it was very funny.
That
Megyn
crazy
Kelly.
thing, Megan. That was a hell of a question, man. If I didn't come up with that answer,
great
I was
line.
done. Well, what it was is, we had 28,000 people. That was the Cleveland Arena where the Cavaliers played.
Right.
LeBron James. I'm not a big fan of LeBron James, but he is a good basketball player. But that was and when I said that, the place went crazy. And she
'Cause it's
kept
funny.
talking. No, she had like 10 other.
Yeah, well,
the
Megan
names.
said you said it to other people and you admitted you did. But it was funny. It was a comedic timing moment.
It was fun.
That's what they wanted
It was
to avoid.
lucky I did it because she was drowned. She wasn't finished that question, but she
Right.
kept talking,
Right,
but you
right,
couldn't hear.
right.
To this day, they don't know what she said, but it wasn't positive. So anyway, but we had a good time.
Well, it's
I
comedic
think
timing,
it's
and that's the
important.
reason why to have a debate in front of a large audience. And then they
Well, how
probably
did I do with
thought you
the Al
had stacked
Smith
deck.
dinner? I got very
That was
good
great.
reviews on that.
That was great. It was very funny.
got
It's
good
very funny
reviews.
stuff. The Tim Wall stuff was very funny.
Tim Walsh, yeah.
It's funny.
That's a real beauty.
That's a crazy one. She said that she had picked him, and this is one of the questions I want to ask her, when she was sleep deprived. She said she was suffering from sleep deprivation when she picked him, which is just like,
I was.
hey, maybe take a nap.
So I was okay. Look, let's see how it all turns out. I think we're going to win. I think we're way ahead now. I think we're way ahead. But
Based on those polls, by the way, that are all fake.
But,
that's what what he says. I don't understand.
Back to
if they
2020.
lose,
Can I bring you
I think they're going to look at two things. They're going to say they should have had a primary, even if it was a short primary.
Yes.
They shouldn't have picked her. And then she's going
No,
to.
she was probably like optically the best choice based on the circumstances, for sure. Hopefully she doesn't lose because that would be insane. I mean, the only people that'll vote for Trump at this point are either like conspiracy theorists or like ignorant to like the reality of the world here.
I shouldn't have picked this guy.
She shouldn't have picked that guy.
That guy's a
Just
disaster.
the lying about Tiananmen Square.
Everything.
Admitting that, the military record,
But
assistant
she
coach
lied too.
versus
She
head
lied
coach.
too.
Yes.
Little thing. So I did McDonald's last week.
Trump lies about like quite literally every little thing that happened. I don't understand. Like, you're comparing such like weird, like the Tiananmen Square thing was bad. That was 30 years ago. I don't really care. Versus like Trump quite literally lying like 2 weeks ago about fucking FEMA shit. What?
I saw that.
And I actually got a call from your friends at Google, from Sundar. That's pretty good, right? He said, this is the biggest thing we've had in years.
You
The
at
hits.
McDonald's?
At McDonald's. Did you know that? It was one of the,
It was funny.
who's a great guy, by the way, but he said, this McDonald's thing, I want to tell you, it's one of the biggest things we've ever had on Google. It just hit. But the reason I did, and I actually, you never know about this stuff. I thought it was a throwaway.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think our conversation was a throwaway, but I thought I'd walk in, and that was only to highlight the fact. And I have a friend, he owns like 56 of these McDonald's, and he said, do you want to use one? I said, yeah, I love it. So we went there, and the crowd was crazy. They had 28,000 people around it, the whole thing. Did you see the outside? It was crazy. The cars couldn't get through. Secret Service was not exactly thrilled. We had no idea what the hell. But I went into the place, and I did the French fry thing. And it just hit. But that's like in life. Sometimes you do. I thought it was like a quick throwaway. We're going to be there for 15 minutes. Then I said, I've worked here for 15 minutes, which is 15 minutes more than she worked here. She lied about McDonald's. And
Well, I don't understand this whole like lie about McDonald's thing. Because she said she worked for McDonald's, and then he's like, oh, well, I couldn't find an explicit record of it. And it's like, what? What record would you find? I don't understand.
Is that proven that she never worked at
100%
McDonald's?
she,
No, it wasn't proven. He's just saying things. He just lies. He just says anything that he needs to say. What are you talking about?
well, McDonald's has no information. No, she has no information. There's nobody. The manager said she never worked there. It was a certain place, and he said they never. No,
What manager are you talking about?
she lied. She's a liar. You know what they do?
Okay.
They'll say, like, on any one of the questions, take any, they'll say, it's the exact opposite of what I say. IVF. He's against IVF, fertilization.
Right.
And it's the exact opposite. I came
This
out
is a fucking horrible drag. I wish this was shorter.
immediately strongly in favor. And they do ads. I'm against it. It's wrong. On every single topic. And, she changed policies on 15. I've never seen anybody change on more than one. You can maybe get away with one. Her whole life, fracking, every single thing that she was for.
Well, I mean, she was originally against fracking as an environmental protocol, and then she changed her mind at this point because I think to increase our stores or something. I forget the exact reason why. I wish she was more honest about it, but it made sense why she changed her position on fracking.
Confiscation of guns. She wants a confiscation. Now she's saying everybody should have a gun. In fact, we're going to get her a MAGA cap. I'm going to send her a MAGA cap. But she's changed.
I don't think she said take away everybody's guns. I'm pretty sure she just wants common sense gun control.
And I don't think people are buying it.
Well, some people are buying it because they want to buy it because it's blue no matter who. There's a certain percentage of our population that's going to vote Democrat no matter what.
That's true.
I mean, that's what you are, except for a Republican, even though even though he wants to insurrect the government.
They're pressured. There's their community, their ideology. It's
I don't
left is good,
understand.
right is evil.
I don't understand why. Okay, you have a wall, or you have I built 570 miles of wall. Everyone says I built a lot of wall, exactly the stuff. But you have a border. What I don't understand is who would want people to come into our country from places unknown, like sometimes they'll say about a fighter, from parts unknown, right? Remember Haystacks Calhoun, from parts, from parts unknown, the oldest, those are the oldest, that's even before you. But who would want people to come in, pouring into our country? We don't know anything about them.
But I want to ask you this. Why do you think they're doing that?
I think
what is it that they think that we're doing? I don't really understand. I don't understand. Trump literally knocked down a border, like a really positive border bill. I don't understand. Like, I don't. I mean, I couldn't tell you why. I mean, I know that Biden finally was firmer about the border, and he should have been firmer sooner. I absolutely agree with that. But I think a big part of that had to do with the fact that there was a huge backlog of people who couldn't come through during COVID because of how restricted we were, and now they're coming through, and it's like it's kind of an issue for sure. And I think that's it. I imagine that they don't want to necessarily impede people's legal right to seek asylum in some capacity.
because
do you think they're trying to buy votes? Do you think they just
I
want
think-
cheap labor?
Buy votes.
Like, what's the idea?
There's a couple
I
of
mean, Republicans want cheap labor too. So.
they hate our country. They're still
Not to say there's been no meaningful from either party of trying to implement something that would make it more difficult for illegal immigrants to get jobs coming over here.
good, or they want to buy votes. It's one of those three things.
Yeah.
They want.
So there's just not legal immigrants cannot vote. They can vote in some local election depending on the state that they're in. They cannot vote on federal elections. It's
No,
not
they are
happening. It's just not happening.
and to get people registered who don't even know what the country
And they're
is.
trying to give people
No, they're not.
amnesty. People that live
They
here,
wanna
they're trying to give them
amnesty,
path
they
to
wanna give them
citizenship.
Yeah, it makes sense for people who live here to have a path to citizenship because they're already ingrained in our society, and it makes we're economically dependent on them in some capacity, whether it's them working jobs that other people won't work, or them being on welfare programs and being here, and them still supporting the local economy. People don't understand the whole reason why we have welfare programs is because it's good for the economy. Instead of people crashing through the floor and bottoming out, and there being less people to consume in the market, which causes even more job loss, we implemented welfare services. So when people get welfare and they buy food and this and that, and they buy a bunch of different things, they're supporting local economic infrastructure there, right? So it makes sense. For the people that are here to say okay, we're already dependent onto them. They are here, but let's get other people out that don't let's not let a bunch of people in. That makes perfect sense. That's not a bad thing. I don't understand.
citizenship, and they want to. Well, how
And
about what
if you
happened?
think about the amount of money that they've given them when they've come here, the food stamps, the benefits that even our poor people aren't getting.
$200 billion, and that's a way low number. That's a way.
But conservatives are constantly trying to cut welfare services. You don't care about this.
It's interesting. New York has always been sort of always looking for money. They've spent $100 billion on this stuff. I don't know where and they're not getting the money from the federal government. It's crazy. And because the mayor came out and said, we can't live like this.
They investigated them.
He gets it. By the way, I called it. I said, he just got
Oh yeah, I remember that guy. Yeah, he's a fucking scumbag. Absolutely.
himself indicted. This group is stupid, but they're vicious. They're stupid people, but they're vicious people.
The
which is a bad
2020
government.
elections, you say you have all this evidence that
Yep.
it was rigged. Why haven't you put this evidence in a consumable
I did.
form? In what?
Oh, I
He didn't because it doesn't exist, and Joe knows this.
did. I have books on it. And by the way,
What book do you have on it? What are you talking about?
books have been written on it.
What are you talking about? What is he saying?
We have an author named Hemingway, who is a great writer. She wrote a book on it, but many books have
What? What is he talking about?
been written on it. There are books that are. What's happened is judges don't want to touch it. They would say you don't have standing. They didn't
Because you don't have any evidence.
rule on the merits. They ruled. The merits never got there. The judges didn't have what it took to turn over an election.
Let's talk about the potential vulnerabilities for elections and election fraud. One of them is mail-in ballots. The other one is if someone can break into voting machines, if someone can
Both-
hack
both are
voting
big
machines.
trouble.
Those are two huge ones.
So
And
Elon
what can be
Musk,
done?
Elon Musk I think he said it publicly. I hope he did because I wouldn't want to be the one. But he's a really smart guy, and he's a very good guy with computers, right? You'd say he's
one of the smartest people alive.
Anybody that can land that.
So I just want to be clear, like Elon Musk bought all of his businesses from other people and then claims that he like founded them. I don't know why we pretend that that's not true.
20-story building and perfect. And
while he's doing Starlink, while he's doing Tesla, while he owns Twitter.
And then he agrees to Starlink.
And tweets 100 times a day.
Like I remember the fucking Bill Burr joke about like Steve Jobs. Like what has he ever really done? It's a bunch of like other people doing everything for him and then they get the credit for it.
An amazing guy. Right?
Yeah.
He said to me that unless you have paper ballots, it can never be an honest election. That's a big
that's
statement.
It's a big statement.
We should go to
yes, that's true, but we didn't. That's why yes, this is true. You don't want to have like electronic voting. We don't have electronic voting, so I don't really understand what they're talking about right now.
paper ballots. France did. They went to mail-in voting, and it was all messed up.
Mail-in votes are paper ballots, just to be clear.
What can
the amazing thing with the machines? So we have the machines. They cost 10 times more. Paper ballot would cost 8%. And they make paper ballots, they're all watermarked and everything else. They're very sophisticated. But if you take a look, paper ballots, 8% the cost, and you're done by 9 o'clock in the evening, right?
What the fuck is he talking about?
Now we have these sophisticated machine. It goes up to heaven. It goes all over the place and down.
Are you talking about Scantrons? What are you talking about?
And around. And they say, we'll need 2 weeks to figure out who the hell won the election.
Do you think that's by design?
Yeah, I do. I think it's very quick. That's
What
my
is he even referring to? They still use paper ballots.
You're allowed to have an opinion. Let's say you win in November. What can be done to mitigate these problems? What could be done
There's no problem to mitigate, so nothing.
at the level that the president has power?
Well, if I win, this will be my last election. But I think I owe it to the country. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think I owe it to the country. We have to have fair elections.
So how can you fix that?
Jimmy Carter was in charge of a commission, that many years ago. And they put him and Scoop Jackson and various senators, distinguished people that were retired. And they came up with a report. And the report's primary finding was you cannot have mail-in ballots. Because if it's a mail-in ballot, I went to the voting booth the last...
Mail-in ballots aren't that big of an issue. I don't really understand. He's pretending that mail-in ballots are a bigger issue than they actually are. There are people who've always qualified for mail-in ballots. We had COVID. Like, it made sense that we had an implementation of mail-in ballots. There was no actual evidence of widespread voter fraud that had any impact on the election in any capacity.
Whatever it was. And I walked in Palm Beach, and I walk in, and they know me. They say, Mr. President, could I see your identification? Yes, boom, here's this, here's that, everything. And then you sit, and they watch you sign, and there's not a lot you can do. I mean, if you wanted to be dishonest, it's sort of beautiful.
Right.
If instead of that, I'm going to send them a ballot,
Right.
it has to go through the post.
Yeah, but like there's only so many people registered to vote. So if you're registered to vote and they receive 2 votes, they go, oh, there's a fraudulent issue here. That didn't happen. Like I don't understand. Like what? How do you think that these things work? Right? Like you register yourself to vote, which you need like your social security card and a number to do. You register to vote, and then you show up to vote, or you send in your vote in. Right? So like that's the reason why you generally don't need an identification. You still have to, I mean, it's fine if you wanted to do an ID. The whole idea is that there are poor areas that they can't afford IDs. Just make them free. Make IDs free for everybody, and then we wouldn't have this problem. But conservatives don't really care about that. They use voter ID laws to try to restrict people's ability to vote. They don't use them because they actually want people to have IDs. Like this is or else they would have just been like, yeah, sure, you know what, to make IDs free for everybody. There's a specific reason why they won't do that. So you register to vote, and then if you vote twice, then something would be flagged up in the system. So
it has to go through a lot of people. They mail you houses that, the house was demolished.
I'd like to correct something you said about censorship. Kamala recently said you can't have Twitter have different rules than Facebook and that she will regulate it. Just thought I'd correct it. What is it that you're correcting me on? I don't really understand what you're correcting me on.
So the people have left, and it's so bad. The one thing with Jimmy Carter, he had a very strong commission. It was no mail-in ballots. And we're the only one that does elections this way anymore. They've gotten away from
And
them.
it ticked up in a big way after COVID. It used to be like soldiers serving overseas.
They use COVID
People
to cheat.
Yeah. Well, they use COVID to certainly push this mail-in ballot.
What is it that you're saying that she did? I don't understand what you're saying.
Another thing
but they use COVID to cheat.
But here's another.
And the last election was a little bit of a, you couldn't even get security guys, big, strong guys to watch. You know what? You'd call them, they'd call them, and they were afraid to go out. We were in the middle of COVID. Mm-hmm. We were in the middle of COVID, right smack in the middle. And they didn't want to die. They didn't want to catch it. It was like, in a way, it was like a ghost town. And the whole thing, but mail-in ballots are a bad thing.
That certainly is a problem. Mail-in ballots are a problem.
But every
Another
other country,
problem is
other
voter
countries,
ID.
Yeah, a voter ID.
Voter ID is the most bizarre argument that I've never seen anybody articulate in a way that's convincing.
Because they want.
It's not a really difficult argument. The reality is that the only reason that conservatives want to implement voter ID laws is specifically to restrict people in like low-income areas from voting. That's literally it. And they typically are black, right? Because if they actually did care about this, then they would be like, yeah, you know what? Because the biggest argument is like, well, they might not be able to afford it. Okay, so then what you would do is be like, okay, well, if you can't afford it, then we will make you afford. We will give it to you for free, so you have to use it. There's a reason why they won't do that, and the reason is because they know that they're using it as an excuse to try to like restrict people from being able to vote. That's literally all it is. You said earlier that he was talking about Tim Walz, but recently I saw a video a week ago of Kamala talking about it. So I think they were talking about Kamala's video. What is it that you're talking about? What video did you see? You're being so vague. What is it that Kamala said? You're just saying things without actually saying anything, articulating anything. You said you disagree with me because Kamala said something. What are you fucking talking about? Regulate what?
Voter. Well, it doesn't make sense any other way. I've tried to straw man it, or I tried to steel man it rather. I've tried to like look at it from a position like, why would you not want people to have ID? And a lot of the ideas are just ridiculous. You need an ID to get a driver's license.
Okay, but here's now the next step. Gavin Newsom,
one
of the worst governors in the world.
Notice how he's not going to say what the ideas are.
And I used to get along, but I don't get along with him now because he's just too, it's just a whole con job. But Gavin Newsom, the other day signed a bill that you are not allowed to ask a person, even ask them whether or not they have voter ID.
Now, what could be a charitable reason why anybody
because they
would
want
want
to cheat?
that? That would be the only thing that makes sense.
But that's taking it to the next level.
Right.
Now, you have ID. The Democrat National Convention.
So I'll look into that really quick with this voter ID thing. But the reason that they're going to say that is specifically because that's state elections, and it has nothing to do with federal elections. You can't vote if you're an illegal citizen on a fucking federal election. There are areas like California that let you vote if you are an illegal immigrant, depending on why. Most of the people that are illegal in like California or New York are going to be people who are here on expired visas, and they are part of the economy, and that's why they're going to protect them. That's literally the only reason why.
When they had it the last time I saw, they had a sign, like a billboard, on the name of the person, where they live, how they live, who the hell their boyfriends are. Every single, and a big picture. That's for they have an ID, a big ID. It was hanging like you were a prisoner. They had these massive cards, everything. And yet when it comes to the vote, in theory, the most important thing we do, okay, when you go to a grocery store, you give ID. But for a vote, it's supposed to be a sacred thing, and it should be a sacred thing. No voter ID because they want to cheat.
Well, it doesn't make sense in any other way. I've tried to look at
There's no other way.
There's no argument that anybody's presented that makes any sense why.
You know the funny thing, Joe? The Democrats, the people, they all think you should have it. In other words, you should have it. If you go to the people, Mrs. Schwartz, Mrs. Smith, Mr. and Mrs. Jones.
Sure.
They say, of course, yeah. The Democrats, they say yes. It's the politicians that don't want it, like Schumer and these guys, they don't want it.
Made your new WAF sub. Very cool, man.
Because they want to be able to cheat. Because you know what? If they didn't have it, okay, who is going to vote for somebody that wants open borders? Who's going to vote for somebody that wants to have...
You're the one that wants open borders, so you can run on it. So, I mean, you're kind of asking, your own people that question.
Men playing in women's sports.
It's so funny with this whole trans shit because nobody fucking cares about this trans shit. Like men playing it, like trans people playing in sports is not an issue that we have in any meaningful capacity. It's not something that you need to fucking run on. It's nothing. It's conservatives' constant hyper obsession with trans people because they have no other actual policy. That's pretty much it.
I have never had one person come up to me and say, President, you got to do something to allow men to play in women's sports. Have you ever? Just like I've never been called by a pollster. I told you my little theory on pollsters, okay? I'm getting myself in trouble with some of these things, but I don't really care. Nobody's ever come up to me and said,
I just got a new ID. It's not expensive. It takes 20 minutes, so they just don't want the poorest argument is both bullshit and bigotry. So just to be absolutely clear, you're a fucking moron for saying what you're saying. You're too confidently fucking stupid. So first and foremost, getting an identification is relatively expensive. It costs you at least like $50, and you have to go to a DMV to typically get your identification. That's like the whole idea of this. So we're talking about really poor areas that don't have a lot of infrastructure. Like they lack buses. They have like one DMV. It's run down. It takes a long time to get there, and they don't have money because they're dependent on welfare services, which we absolutely know is a problem because we're constantly talking about reforming welfare and about the fact that there are huge towns that are like economically centered around factories that are getting closed because of technology. So these people don't have the money to go get to the DMV and get like an identification card. What are you talking about? Like, this is a real thing. This isn't a bullshit argument. If it was a bullshit argument, why the fuck aren't conservatives saying, okay, fine, we'll give you the ID for free? That's literally it. They don't give you why wouldn't they just give you the ID for free? Why would they say, oh, if that's your argument, let's give it to them for free? Because they're specifically trying to isolate poor people so that they can't vote. It's not bullshit. It's like literally the reality of the situation. That's what they're trying to do. Like, why wouldn't they just say, okay, then fine, your ID's free, you have nothing? Because they know that that's a good argument. They know that that's a good argument. That's what it comes down to. That's why they're doing it. Or else they would just say, like, okay, it's free. If it's so cheap, why aren't they just making it free? Why doesn't the government just make it free?
We want to have men playing women's sports. And, I had a funny thing.
So why don't they just make it free? If it's so cheap, why don't they just make it free? Why aren't they just making it free? I don't understand the argument.
at a property I own in California. I have a woman who's a very good athlete, and she works there as a manager. And Brian Urlacher, the big Chicago Bears great player, 10-time All-Star, I guess Hall of Famer, great guy, big strong guy. And she said, "Oh, he's one of my favorite athletes. Can I have a picture?" And I took a picture and I sent it. And I noticed she was the size of his leg. His leg was bigger than she was. And I put it out. Should men play in women's? But it was just so ridiculous.
What's one of the most
If all it takes is if making it free is all it takes, and why doesn't Kamala and her ilk suggest it? Why would they have to suggest it? It's conservatives that want to engage in voter ID laws. Why wouldn't conservatives say, okay, let's make it free? It doesn't make any sense. Why would Democrats who don't really have this issue, because there is no widespread voter fraud happening in federal elections in any capacity, why wouldn't they engage in this? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Why wouldn't they just make it for free? Why do Democrats have to suggest this? It's because conservatives know that this is like some kind of a block. This is why conservatives are also trying to restrict voting times for people, like taking away the ability to do it on Sundays and shit like that. Not allowing people to hand out water on lines, because like in a lot of these poor areas, it's like very difficult to even go to voting areas because it's so difficult. If you look into it, what are you talking about? Why wouldn't they propose these ideas? Thank you for the $5 from Jackass. When I was in the Middle East, me and many other service members had to vote in our election through mail-in ballots. It's how we made our voices heard. Like, yeah, people do this shit all the time.
most bizarre and polarizing ideas that's promoted by the left?
But who wants it? Now, unless you're going to cheat in elections, you're never going to get. Nobody wants it.
Right.
I don't think anybody wants it. I've been told everything. You can. Some people want this. I don't know of anybody that wants open borders. Nobody's ever come up to me and said, President, you got to let the world come into our country.
Right.
Now, if they won, so they have 21 million, I think it's much higher than that because you have gotaways. Gotaways where they just walk in, they walk
Right.
in. But, and the other thing you have is human traffickers. You have traffickers, and they traffic in women, and they're going wild now. We used to, where you have to look, the trunk of cars. Can you believe it? They put women in trunks. They put 3 women in a trunk. These people are savages. They're horrible. The worst people. And they're making the kind of money they make on drugs. They're almost making on trafficking now. And the thing that's made it hot is the internet. That's what. But you think of it almost as an ancient thing.
Also, just keep in mind that when you want to get an ID, especially like your first ID, you cannot do this online. Like, it's a pretend fucking reality that you guys are living in. You can't get a new identification online. You have to go down to the DMV, which again, in these poor areas can be very difficult to get to. The DMV is still an absolute mess. And then you need different forms of identification, like a birth certificate and other things to get your ID, which if you don't have this birth certificate, a social security card, that's going to cost you money too, money that these people don't have. It's much more than like, yeah, guys, I renewed my ID online. Like, no shit, because you have a fucking ID. A lot of these people don't necessarily have IDs. Why wouldn't you, if you think that this is something that should be implemented, then provide the infrastructure for free for these people to get their shit? But that's what the intentionality is to restrict people's ability to vote. That is why it exists. That is why these things exist. It is to restrict people in poor areas, their ability to vote. That's what it comes down to. You have to go in person for your first time. You have to bring, I'm pretty sure, your social security card, your birth certificate, things that'll cost you more money and go through more infrastructure to get. If you don't have them already, you have to go to overburdened DMVs with under-accessible public transportation. What are you talking about? Like, it's like, what are you talking about?
But it's the internet. But who would want to have these things? Who would want to have, there's so many, the transgender operations, where they're allowed to take your
Fuck is talking about transgender operations.
child when he goes to school and turn him into a male, to a female, without
What the fuck are you talking about?
parental consent. Who wants this? Does
This isn't like a thing happening. This is like insane that we're even talking about this.
anybody want this? I've never heard of anyone, and I can go into 10 different things. The only way they get them is by no voter ID. You can't have voter ID. They don't want any. They want to cheat. There's only one reason, because the voter ID is so basic. It's the most basic thing.
It's
there
very
is.
basic.
Who would want this? They want it so they can cheat because their policies are no good. I'll tell you, they're very smart when it comes to that. They're very smart, although they're not smart in terms of politics in a way, because what do they have that people want? They really don't have. They give away a lot of health care, a lot of stuff. But for the most part, their policies are terrible. Their policy on military, she's running on a tax hike. She's going to raise your taxes. You got to hear this. We are going to raise your taxes. And the people clap. But who is going to win with her? All my life, I grew up with politicians, lower taxes. She's politicking that we are going to raise your taxes.
Well, they want to raise the idea is you want to raise the taxes to the highest earners.
I know, but
they
it
think
really
that
doesn't work that
millionaires
way.
and billionaires are not paying their fair
I know,
share.
but it doesn't work that way.
Well, it's a narrative, right? And it's a narrative that appeals to people that are.
Well, it's not just a narrative. It's true. They're not paying their fair share of taxes. There are massive tax cut, like loopholes that Trump has acknowledged that exist because he says that he uses them. And one of his biggest criticisms of Hillary Clinton is, well, how come you didn't change them if it's a problem? and that he'd be stupid to not engage in those loopholes. So what are you talking about? This is obviously very real. Thank you for the $2 from Music Books Explained. Screw ID. What about having an IQ test? Well, I don't think that's necessarily a good idea to have an IQ test to vote. I mean, like, people are stupid because they lack fucking resources to be able to get a proper education.
Not doing well. And they're like, yeah, our problems are that these rich people are not paying taxes.
Well, the problems are the rich people are going to leave and they're going to close up their companies. And then
Rich people aren't going to leave and close up their companies because you increase their taxes. That's fucking absolute idiot speech. That's the dumbest fucking thing you'd ever say. They're not going to close their doors to the entire United States market because they have to pay more taxes. This is not even true. This is like idiot fear mongering.
the other people aren't going to have jobs. That's what happens.
It does happen in other countries.
But the whole, because you brought it up. I'll tell you what, we just, he's doing a very good job in Virginia. Glenn Youngkin. I don't know if you like him, not like him.
I don't know him.
But you don't know the governor of Virginia? So we have a case where they found thousands of illegal ballots. A judge just ruled that they have to be able to vote. Just happened today.
What?
Just before I walked in here, I heard. A judge just ruled
What is he talking
that
about?
you have to keep those people in. They're illegal. They're illegal votes.
What is he talking about? Voting for what? Like, what is he being so vague for?
Now, I think they'll be overturned at the next court. One thing I found, because I had a
What is it that he's specifically referring to? That they'd be forced to. This is, if this is even real, because he lies all the time. This is about federal local elections. You cannot vote in a federal election as an illegal immigrant.
couple of things that they get overturned a little bit. The system, because the system, you have to hope that the appellate judges are honest. Otherwise, we don't have a country anymore. It's very important. But the whole thing with illegal ballots, it's got to be looked at. You have to have voter ID, and you have to have additional ID. You have to have an ID that shows that you're a citizen of the country.
I agree.
They don't want that either.
I agree. One of the things that I want to talk to you about is the JFK files. And one of the things that you said was that if they showed you what they showed me, this was your quote, you wouldn't want people to know it either.
So I opened them up partially. I was met from good people. I mean, good people. People that were well-meaning. Mike Pompeo was one of them. He's a good person. They called me. They said, "Sir, would rather have you not." And I did open them. But I was asked by some people not to open them. There's a Martin Luther King file, too, by the way, that they'd like to see. I don't know if you know, but there is that. But JFK in particular. So they called me. A lot of good people called me. People that that you would find reasonable people. And they asked me not to do it. So I said, well, we'll close it for another time. But if I win, I'm going to open them up. I'm just going to open enough.
Why
time.
didn't you open it up the first time?
Because
What
a lot
was-
of times,
what was the hesitation, though?
Addresses, people that are still living. There are people that are affected. And there could be some national security reason that that I don't have to necessarily know about. But some very good, talented people asked me not to do it. I opened it up, and then they said, would it be possible for us to do that a different day?
How much of it did you read into?
I think it's going to be just fine to open it. Let me put it that way. I think it's fine. It's going to be time. It's a cleansing. It's really a cleansing. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it immediately, almost immediately upon entering office.
Well, the thing, when people look at it from the outside and you sort of imagine what could be a reason why they would not release those files, it would be there's people that were implicated
That's why
in
I'm
the
gonna
assassination.
Yeah. Well, when there are living people, you generally tend not to want to do it. When people are still living.
Living people that formerly worked for the government.
For the government and living people that were somehow involved in it, and you tend not to do that. But it's time to open them. I can't tell you whether or not they're going to find anything of interest. And I did partially open. I think I've opened 50%, but I was asked not to do it, and I thought that was a reasonable ask. But now I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it very soon.
Why did you think it was a reasonable ask, though? I don't understand. I mean, it probably was, but why did you think that?
I'm interested in it.
One of the things that
There's a lot of interest in the people coming from space,
Yes.
And I know you're interested in
Oh,
that.
very interested in that. How much did they tell you about that?
A lot.
Really?
Yeah.
What did they tell you?
About people coming from space? Okay, let's hear it.
How much can you tell?
So
How's that work? Is it like super
I think
top
I can
secret?
Tell
me.
Well, based on Hunter Biden, I can say whatever the hell I
Yes.
want, right? But I interviewed a few people. It's never been my thing, I have to be honest. I have never been a believer. I have people that Area 51 or whatever it is. I think it's the number one tourist attraction in the whole country or something. Area 51 in Las Vegas. Do you know that, right?
Sure, I know what it is.
So anyway, but it's a big tourist thing. So I interviewed jet pilots that say they saw something. If you saw them, you'd love to have them.
I've had a couple in here. Commander David Fravor,
Yeah.
I had him in, who had that sighting in 2004. Very, very compelling with video
compelling.
evidence, radar evidence.
I interviewed
Ryan Graves.
I don't believe his name.
I mean, maybe this just seems like an irrelevant thing. Who cares about? But okay.
But I interviewed jet pilots that were solid people, perfect. I mean, great pilots, great everything. And they said, we saw things, sir, that were very strange. Like a round ball, but it wasn't a comet or a meteor. It was something. And it was going 4 times faster than an F-22, which is a very fast plane, And it was round, which is, in theory, a great shape.
So when you were talking to these people, was this something that you were compelled to have conversations
No.
about? Was this your personal interest?
A little bit. It's not a great interest for me, but it's a little interest. I get that question as much as almost any question. Do you think that we have aliens coming, flying around or whatever?
What do you think?
There's no reason not to. I mean, there's no reason not to think that Mars and all these planets don't have life, because...
I mean, Well, there's a reason to not think Mars has life because we've been able to go there with like robots, but there could be life out there. I guess it's an interesting idea. There's never been a confirmation that they exist.
Well, Mars, we've had probes there and
Well,
rovers,
yeah,
and
but-
I don't think there's any life there.
Well, maybe it's life that we don't know. But maybe
Well,
it's
maybe
a
there was
different-
life
Okay.
there at one point in time. This is a speculation
Okay.
about Mars. That Mars.
How
had-
does Trump simultaneously appeal to fucking like insane conspiracy theorists that believe aliens are like manipulating us, but then also the people who believe the Earth is flat because aliens wouldn't exist in that world? No, I don't understand how this works.
had
Maybe I just don't know anything.
an atmosphere at one point in time, a long time ago, that could support life. It also had large bodies of water, but we've had no evidence of even bacterial life that exists on Mars. But the
It's
universe
not
is
been a
pretty
big
vast.
thing for me. I mean, when I looked at what China did to this, they would have never done it with me, where they put the balloon up, and a lot of people thought for a little while that was
Right.
one of these things. So,
Well, that's
you
a
know,
lot of the speculation too. That some of these drones that hover
be.
over battleships, that these are Chinese drones, and that they're not UFOs.
They could be also.
There's some super
But I
sophisticated.
did interview, let's say 3 or 4 guys that, and without tremendous interest, if you had them, as I said, you'd love to have them as your children. Solid, beautiful people. They said, "Sir, there's something there." You know,
There's something there.
They said it, yeah.
Yeah, I've talked to quite a few of
They're
them.
not
that have-
conspiracy guys.
Well, I mean, just the Commander David Fravor thing in 2004 off the coast of San Diego. They clocked that thing going
Yeah.
from 50,000 feet above sea level to 50 in a second.
Yeah.
They don't know what it is.
That's tough to beat.
Yeah, they saw something in the water. It was hovering over that something that was making a disturbance in the water. They got video evidence of this thing. The 2 different fighter jets with pilots in them saw it. There's visual evidence, photographic evidence, video evidence, radar evidence, whatever the hell it is. It moves in a way that would turn a human being into jello if you were inside of it. The G-force, no one would survive.
Oh,
so like,
the
what is
G-force.
that? And we don't. It doesn't have a heat signature. They don't know what their propulsion system was. But
When you fly in some of these jets, these pilots have to be in great shape.
oh yeah, I flew with
When
the
you
Blue
talk
Angels
about-
once.
Yeah,
yeah,
as
I
an
got to
example.
fly. I guess
and
it's
those
an
are older,
F/A-18.
and those are older machines.
And they're crazy.
When you fly in some of these things,
Oh my
it's
God!
amazing. Yeah, but
yeah,
you
I can imagine.
You got to be special.
But these things that these people are encountering are far superior to what we know of.
Yeah.
Is it possible that there's some military or government program that you weren't?
So what's like the actual evidence other than like, hey, somebody said they saw a thing? I mean, it could be real. What's the actual evidence?
That they didn't tell you about?
I think I had a great relationship with the military, basically. But I didn't like certain people. I would have gotten them out if the election was different. I would have fired all of them quickly. Most of them I did fire. Biden should have fired every military person involved with Afghanistan. He should have had a lot of firings. If you look at him, he told Israel not to do anything, and at least Israel's not going to look at a bomb the way they would
Well, again, like the reason Israel was such a mess is because Trump decided not to include Palestinians on the fucking peace talks about their area.
have been. Think if they listened to Biden, they'd be waiting for a bomb to drop on their head right now. He's been wrong about so much. I guess you'd have to say that she's been wrong too, because she always said they made the decision together. But
Who says that?
Israel didn't follow his advice, and I think it was a very, the Middle East is rapidly changing. There are prophets that say the world will come to an end in the Middle East. You know that, right?
Oh yeah.
And we have weapons today that are so scary. When you look, I rebuilt them all. And when you look at the weapons we have today, the biggest threat we have in the world today is nuclear weapons. And we have other weapons too that are devastating. But the nuclear weapons, the biggest threat we have in the world today, and that's what I was talking about de-escalation with both China and Russia. I'm telling you, we were going to de-escalate. They were going to de-escalate. You got to be careful. It's a little tricky playing with them because they say we're going to do it and they don't do it maybe. But they understood the curse too. It's a curse. It's China's way behind us, but they'll catch us within 5 years.
So let's imagine. Let's say you win in November. What do you do differently, and how do you change this course that it seems we are on for World War III? How do you get us out of
What course are we on for World War III in any meaningful capacity? What are you talking about?
Ukraine? How do you stop what's going on in the Middle East? How do you put a stop to this?
Well, it's a very to me it's an easy question because I think I can do it easily, but it's a complex question in the sense that the times change, every day changes. Who's winning? Who's not winning? I mean, Russia's a war machine. Whether you like it
Not really. Russia's the weakest superpower that exists. I don't know what you're talking about.
or not, it just grinds along. You speak to people like Viktor Orban, and he'll tell you it's just a big, fat war machine. And that's what's happening. You look at what's happened to Ukraine.
So you got people saying that they're a big war machine, but somehow you would have been able to stop them. Like I don't really understand what's happening right now.
If I were there, it would have never happened.
But what could you do
And just
now?
think,
If you get
well,
into office in
right
January,
now,
what
right
could you do now?
Right now, you would get both of them. I know both very well. And again, I do not want to tell you, for the purpose of looking smart to fight people that, that say, oh, he was great. Because if I told you exactly what I do, I could never make the deal. All I can tell you is that I would meet with Putin and I would meet with him, and I know exactly what I'd say to each one of them. And I believe that as president-elect, I would get that war stopped and stopped fast. We have tremendous power in the United States if you know how to use the power. I stopped other wars just by the use of tariffs. I got Macron of France. Good guy, like a friend of mine, but he's a wise guy. And he's a person that likes France, and he was going to tax our companies. I sent all the smartest guys. I sent Mnuchin, and they all failed me. And I said, I'll do it myself. And I called him. I said, Emmanuel, you're taxing American companies. We're not going to allow you to do that. Oh, Donald, I cannot do it. Nothing I can do. It's already been passed. I said, Emmanuel, if you do that,
Oh my God,
I'm going to put
it's so
100% tariff on your wines and champagnes that come into the United States. and you're going to regret that you ever did it. He said, Donald, please, that's not fair. Anyway, within about 2 minutes, he dropped the whole thing, and it was massive amounts of money against American companies. I have to protect American companies.
So why doesn't the Biden administration do this?
Because they're incompetent. They don't know how to talk. Look, they met.
I don't really know what he's talking about in any capacity. We have a strong world economy. I don't really understand what the fuck he's talking about. He just keeps giving up like these random, like, unprovable stories about how, like, maybe he did a thing once, but like, who really knows if it's true? I don't understand.
Met in Alaska.
Why are we taking him at his word for anything that he says? He's an ineffective president who didn't do anything during his presidency.
With the Chinese, and the Chinese lectured them about how badly we treat people, right? Okay, I mean, think of it. You remember that? It was like they didn't talk to me that way. They respected me. They respected our country. They don't respect our country. They don't respect Biden. They don't respect her. They're dreaming about her because she's incompetent. She's not a smart person. Look, she can't put two sentences together. She talks. I watched her 2 nights. I watched her last night too. It was the
Dude, he's been yapping. He gets a question and answers it in 45 minutes. It takes him fucking forever. What is he talking about?
same thing. She's not a smart person. These guys are very smart, and they're very streetwise, and they're very tricky and evil and dangerous. And if she becomes the president of the United States, which I can't believe can happen, I don't think this country is going to make it. I don't think we'll ever be. Yeah. I think just really bad things will happen to our country. And you know what? I look at the outside forces and I say they can all be handled because we have a pot of gold. But we're not going to have that pot of gold to play with anymore. You know, it's a great negotiating thing. I told you I knocked out this massive car company, going to take all of our car business from Detroit. I knocked it out just by my rhetoric. Rhetorically, I said, they'll never sell a car in here. I'll put tariffs. I don't care. They're 2,000%. They're never going to build that plant.
Is it possible to apply that same thing to the electronics that we use? One of the things that disturbs me greatly is that all of our phones are made overseas, and then some of our phones are made in places like and the chips, and some of our phones are made in places like Foxconn, where they have nets around the building to keep people from jumping off the roof because they have so many suicides. Like, wouldn't it be better to have an American-made iPhone where you know people are paid good wages, they have health insurance, they're taken care of, they can live a good life, where you're not buying a piece of electronics that's cheaper because someone has to suffer?
Yeah, that'd be great. Is Trump going to give you any meaningful anything to do any of that? Like,
horrible.
They'll just say, yeah, that's true.
Wait, it's not even legal in the United States. It's not even legal to have them work that way in the United States, so they get these people to build them overseas.
You do it, but let me just say, that chip deal is so bad. We put up billions of dollars for rich companies to come in and
yes, he just deflects. The chip deal was not bad. It was like an actual thing that got passed. So
borrow the money and build chip companies here, and they're not going to give us the good companies anyway. All you had to do is charge them tariffs. If you would have put a tariff on the chips coming in, you would have been able to, just like the auto companies, no different, more sophisticated, but no different. You know, Taiwan, they stole our.
So if you put a tariff on chips coming in, that means it's going to increase the cost to the consumer. If you decide to use money that we've already gotten through taxes to incentivize a chips program in the United States, you're subsidizing it. It doesn't necessarily happen, right? Now that's obviously if the deficit was in more control, it'd be better. But like that's the idea, is that doesn't put an economic burden on people that are here and doesn't increase the price, because like obviously chips are going to go into everything, like my mouth. Also computers. That's why you would make that decision instead of just tariffing everything that would have a negative impact on the economy. So
our chip business. Okay, they want us to protect, and they want protection. They don't pay us money for the protection. You know, the mob makes you pay money, right? But with these countries that we protect, I got hundreds of billions of dollars from NATO countries that were never paying us. And my biggest fan is Stoltenberg, who just left as the, Director General, as the Secretary General. A good guy. He said Bush came, he made a speech. Obama came, he made a speech. Trump came, he said, you guys aren't paying, you got to pay. And they said, will you protect us from Russia if we don't? I said, no, you got to pay if you don't pay. Billions of dollars came in to NATO. When I see us paying a lot of money to have people build the chip, that's not the way. You didn't have to put up 10 cents. You could have done it with a series of tariffs. In other words, you tariff it so high that they will come and build their chip companies for nothing. In other words, Joe, you put a big tariff on the chips coming in. I say, you don't have to pay the tariff. All you have to do is build your plant in the United States. We didn't have to give them the money to build the plant. Besides that, they're very rich companies. These chip companies, they stole 95% of our business. It's in Taiwan right now. They do a great job, but that's only because we have stupid politicians. We lost the chip business, and now we think we're going to pay.
So wouldn't it make sense for us to subsidize, use government money to incentivize chips being built here, like the CHIPS Act would do?
You can't build it that way. You have to make them spend their money in the United States, and those plants would open up all over, and they'll fund it. We don't have to put up 10 cents. And I am in the process of making a huge speech in about a little while. And you and I, how long?
It's funny how he says all these things. He has no actual policies for anything other than maybe we should maybe we could do some tariffs.
Long time.
Let's go.
Probably like 3 hours.
I got a big speech,
Right.
but we'll do it again. I want to do it again with you.
Okay.
You or something. I said, how long will this last? Anywhere from an hour to 3 or 4
How long
hours.
we do, Jamie? 3 hours.
Good. Well, we'll do it again. I thought it was. I think it was
great. It was a lot of
you
fun.
are a fascinating guy, and you've done a great job.
Thank you very
I'm a fan,
much.
and thank you very much. It's been an honor.
It's been an honor
I'm
having
going to
you
make
as
a great speech, and I'm going to say,
been like
and if I'm a
15
little off
minutes.
tonight, I'm going to blame you.
Blame
I
me.
spoke to
Go
this guy
ahead.
for 3 hours. Anyway, it's a great honor to be.
Thanks, sir.
with you. Thank
Good
you.
luck to you.
Thank you very much.
All
Appreciate it.
right.
All right, well, I'm happy Joe Rogan's a fucking loves cum. I didn't realize that he loved slurping cum. If Taiwan is an ally, if they can make it cheaper over there and send it to us, why wouldn't we ever build it here? Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's better for the consumer, no? That was terrible.